system which requires comprehensive reform. As a paediatric neurologist who worked in our public health system for more than 3 decades, I know firsthand the importance of timely access to affordable and effective treatments. I also understand the frustration of patients and clinicians when access to life-threatening therapies is delayed or denied because of outdated, opaque and slow approval processes. The waits are simply too long in our system. The average wait for approval under the Therapeutic Goods Authority, 12 months. For a clinical trial, at least a few months. Long months when you've got patients desperate to get access to an exciting new possible therapeutic. For PBAC approvals, 22 months. For MSAC approvals, 12 to 14 months. And horrifyingly, the average time for approval of a new vaccine under the National Immunisation Program from the time of TGA approval until it is listed on the NIP, 1,375 days. That is 3.8 years. Deputy Speaker, I experienced those timelines at first hand when, after leading world-first clinical trials in children with severe neuromuscular conditions at the Royal Children's Hospital, I had to go cap in hand to the TGA and the PBAC and fight to have new medications and gene therapies approved and funded. It took years of advocacy with families and with pharma to secure access to those treatments for all Australian children. That is a false economy. We are talking about the health of Australians. Just last week, I met with a constituent who recently tried and failed to have an agent fast-tracked under our PBAC. The agent was actually TGA approved years ago. He was just trying to get it funded by the PBAC. He had spent $1 million trying to get that approval. It failed because the government would not negotiate significantly on price. He's been offered the chance to reapply under the standard approval pathways, but he asked the very appropriate question of why he would bother. Why would he spend more of his money doing that with very limited chances of success? We are not rewarding those who are doing their best to bring new treatments to this country. I've also heard recently from constituents whose children have been unable to access proton therapy. This is the best form of radiotherapy for brain tumours and many other forms of cancer. Despite attempts to bring it to our country, and despite failed attempts by the South Australian and Victorian governments, proton therapy is still not available in Australia. That means that our children with brain tumours have to go overseas to access it. After their parents, these are parents who are under stress, who are dealing with the critical illness of their children, have had to jump through the endless hoops of the medical treatment overseas program to get them there. I often hear as well from Deputy Speaker, from constituents who are frustrated that they cannot access the medicines that they need. I've just spoken in this House about the many constituents who would like to access Novavax vaccines for COVID, can't do it. The PBS listings that have announced in this year's budget are a step forward for women's health. We've been hearing ad nauseum from the government about new listings for oral contraceptives, menopause and endometriosis. That's fantastic. But if those women's HRT agents are unavailable, they find themselves having to settle for a poor alternative at a higher price. And they're not alone. Hundreds of medications are in short supply in this country at any one point in time. I've heard from palliative care physicians who can't get hold of the right forms of morphine for patients who are in pain and who are dying. I've heard from parents who can't get their kids' ADHD medications. I've heard of people who can't access the cardiac medications and the antibiotics that they want, need and deserve. Both yesterday and today, I've met in the House with vaccine providers who have discussed their frustration with the barriers to access to approvals and funding in this country, particularly with respect to the mishmash of federal and state support for immunisation programs. I've often heard in Kooyong and in Canberra from constituents and carers frustrated by the variability of vaccine schedules from state to state and the variable funding of administration of vaccines by councils or by community pharmacists in different territories and states. Deputy Speaker, the Health Technology Assessment System is the backbone of how we assess, approve and fund new medicines and new medical technologies in Australia. The Health Technologies Assessment Review was commissioned by the Department of Health in 2021 in response to a report from the Joint Standing Committee into Health, Disability and Ageing. That review was released in 2024 and it exposed critical shortcomings in how Australia evaluates and funds new medicines and technologies. Those issues are the speed and the ease with which Australians can access novel life-saving therapies. The review called for a more transparent, more timely, more patient-centred approach to the evaluation of new treatments. It recognised the need to better incorporate real-world evidence, consumer input and health equity into decision-making. In response to that review, which was released, as you remember, in late 2024, the Health Technology Assessment Review Implementation Advisory Group was established in November 2024. But there has been very limited progress since that time. Patients are still waiting. Their parents, or their people who care for them, are still waiting. Clinicians are still waiting. Researchers and industry are still waiting for action on the HTA review. We cannot afford to wait any longer. The fact is that the PBS system, which we all treasure, has recently come under significant and renewed attack from large international pharmaceutical companies, which have successfully mobilised here they are slow and they are overly administratively burdensome. So this bill, while it is important, does not address the systemic delays that prevent Australians from accessing new therapies. It does not fix the bottlenecks in the TGA, the PBAC or the MSAC. It does not ensure that our health system is ready to evaluate and fund the one which puts patients, not bureaucracy, at its centre. And so I urge the Minister for Health to prioritise the full and urgent implementation of the HTA review's recommendations. Madam Speaker, I do support this bill, but I also call on this parliament to look beyond it. Smarter, fairer and faster, because Australians deserve more than just cheaper medicines. They deserve the best medicines at the right time at a price that they can afford.
I call the member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I am very pleased to rise and speak in support of this bill before the House tonight, the National Health Amendment Cheaper Medicines Bill of 2025, because at its heart, this bill is about something simple but powerful, making sure people can afford the medicines they need. Not in theory, not in a few years, right now, in the middle of cost of living crunch when every dollar matters. And this is a bill that goes to the core of what we value as Australians: fairness, equity, and the belief that no one should have to compromise their health because of what's in their wallet. We know the price of essentials has been creeping up, whether it's at the grocery shop, the electricity bill or the fuel gauge. For far too many Australians, that pressure has been including the pharmacy counter. And for many Australians, medicines are a significant cost of living pressure. affecting women at almost twice the rate of men. In
Order.
fact,
There
in
being 23 ayes
2023-24,
and
nearly
31
1.2
noes,
million
the matter is
Australians
resolved in the
delayed
negative.
or did not fill a script because of the cost.
I'll wait for Senator Still,
That's not
but we
just a
are
number.
moving to
That's
the
real people,
consideration of docs.
mums, dads, grandparents, having to make an impossible choice between their health and their household budget. And I've had countless conversations in Newcastle with people who've told me they've had to delay filling a script or of cutting tablets in half to make them last longer. Imagine being told by a doctor that you
Senators, as the
need a
President
full
stated, I
dose
shall
to
now
stay
proceed to the
healthy
consideration of
and then having to
documents,
take the
and the
risk of
documents are listed on
halving it
page 5 of
because you
today's
simply
order
can't afford the
of
next
business.
box.
Are there any speakers?
That's not how a world-class health system should work.
None.
And we shouldn't have to gamble. You shouldn't have to gamble with
No
your
speakers?
health
Senator
just
Collins?
to keep the lights on.
On
And that's what this
documents
bill is
on
designed
page
to
5
fix.
of the order.
This legislation is
today's order of
practical
business.
and targeted. It
So
will
to ask you,
cut the maximum
Can I
PBS
take note of
co-payment.
item number 2 on page
That's
5?
the
and
most
seek leave
you'll
to continue
pay
my remarks.
for
well,
many
actually on
common
documents
medicines
at the
under the
moment, so to ask
pharmaceutical
you, I haven't
benefit
gone
scheme.
to reports in
And
government
this bill
yet,
will also
so
keep
that's
the
quite all right. There
co-payment
was a bit of
freeze for
talk around the
concession and
chamber.
card
So if there's no
holders
speakers
going
on
even longer.
documents,
So pensioners,
There is
veterans,
someone- sorry, Senator
others
Henderson, are
on
you
those fixed
seeking the floor?
incomes know that
Senator
they're not
Henderson?
going to be
I think,
hit
Acting
with these
Deputy President,
price
I was
hikes.
seeking to table.
And these are practical changes
It's the
that mean
consideration
immediate
committee
savings
reports. I've
for
obviously jumped the
households
gun.
without
Apologies.
undermining the
Well, there's a
pharmacies
bit of conversation going
that are
on
so
around the
critical
chamber as
in our
people,
health
senators were
system.
leaving. So I just
This is
reiterate
smart,
that we're actually
sensible
in
reform
documents.
that
There is one
balances
document on
affordability
page
for more than
government document on
5.1
page
million
5,
patients
and if there's no
with
speakers, the document
sustainability
is Workplace
for
Gender
providers.
Equality Agency Progress Report.
I always like to bring
There's
these
not.
big
Okay.
national reforms
Third
home,
time lucky. We'll
literally,
move on.
and look at what they mean for
Okay,
Newcastle.
we'll now go to item
Since
15,
Labor first reduced the
tabling and
PBS
consideration of committee
co-payment
reports
last year,
and government
Nova
responses.
Castrians
I believe
have saved
Senator
more than
Collins, you seek the
$10
call.
million from more than 1.2 million scripts
On behalf of
under
Senator
Labor's
Hume,
cheaper
I
medicines
present the
bill
report of the
for a
Economics References Committee relating to the
$25
readoption
co-payment
of its
maximum.
inquiry
They'll
into
save
micro-competition
millions more.
opportunities, and I
That's
move the
pensioners in
report
Wallsend
be
who can now
adopted.
afford every script
Adopted.
on the GP's
What
list.
number was that report?
It's
Sorry, I'm
young
trying to
parents
listen
in
to you. I'm
Mayfield
hearing some
who
voices
don't
up the
have to
back.
choose
Which
between
number?
asthma medication for their kids
This one?
and
Okay,
paying
thank
the
you.
water bill.
All right. be
It's
adopted. I'll
people
put that
with
question.
chronic
Is there any
conditions,
speakers? No? I'll put the
diabetes,
question
high
that the
blood
motion
pressure,
moved by
mental
Senator
health
Collins
needs,
that the,
who can stay
motion
on
be
track with
adopted.
their
Those
treatment
opinions say
instead of
aye.
ending up in hospital.
Against no, the ayes have it.
And we know that the flow-on
Are there any
effect,
others?
healthier people, fewer preventable
thank you,
hospital
Acting
visits,
Deputy
and a health
President.
system that works better for everyone.
I
These are
present
the
the
kind of
government
flow-on
response
effects we
to
really
the
want
report
to
of
see.
the Education and Employment
And when you take the
Legislation
financial
Committee on
stress
its
out
inquiry
of
into
filling
the
a
provisions of the
prescription,
Better and
you
Fairer
improve
Schools
lives.
Funding
You
and
take
Reform
the
Bill
pressure
2024
off the
and
hospital
seek
system,
leave to have
something
the
that every
document
government and
incorporated in
every
Hansard.
hospital
Is leave
administrator
granted?
wants to see.
Leave is granted.
It's worth pausing for a moment here to look at the
Senator Grogan.
difference in approach between
I present
the
additional
Albanese Labor
information
government
received by the Education and
and
Employment Legislation
those
Committee,
opposite, the
as listed on
coalition,
today's order of
when
business.
it comes to health. Labor's record over the past 3 years speaks for itself.
Senator Henderson.
More free and cheaper
Acting Deputy
medicines
President,
sooner.
thank you. I
With a
present the report of the
25%
Foreign Affairs,
reduction
Defence and
in
Trade
the number of
References
scripts
Committee
a concessional
relating to the
patient must fill
readoption of its
before
inquiries
the
into the
PBS
National
safety
Volunteer
net kicks in.
Incentive Scheme, Climate
The
Harm,
largest cut
and
to the
compensation
cost of medicines
and
in the
income support
history
for all
of the
for
PBS,
veterans.
with the
And
maximum
I
cost of a
move that the
general
report be
script
adopted.
falling to $30 from
is that the
what was
report be adopted. Those of that opinion say aye.
$42.50, and now with this
Against
bill
no,
going down
the
even
ayes
further
have it.
to just $25.
Senator Alban Payne.
Thank
We've
you,
had
Acting
the
Deputy President.
60-day prescriptions,
I take note of the
saving
government
time
response to the
and money
Education
for
Employment
millions of
Legislation
Australians
Committee,
with
Better and
ongoing
Fairer
health
Schools
conditions.
Funding and Reform
Freezing
Bill
the cost
2024
of
and seek leave
PBS
to continue
medicines
my
with
remarks.
co-payments
Leave granted.
not rising
Leave
with
granted.
inflation for all
Senator
Australians
Collins.
for the first
I wish
time
to take
in
note of
25
item 2
years.
on page 5 and seek leave
Tripling
to
the
continue
bulk
my
billing
remarks.
incentives
Leave
for
granted. Leave
GPs,
is granted.
helping to keep
Are there any
care
further
affordable
speakers?
and accessible, and opening Medicare
if
urgent
not,
care clinics
I
right
shall
across the country,
dutifully
including one
move
near
to
Newcastle at
60,
Charlestown there, so people can
No.
get seen quickly
Okay, I'll move
without
to-
an emergency
Item
department
16,
wait.
are there any ministerial
We are
statements?
expanding
Minister?
access to life-saving scans and tests under
Thank you.
Medicare.
I table
and
documents
now,
relating to
let's
orders
compare
for the
that
production
with
of
the
documents
track
concerning
record of
the
the
review of public sector
coalition
board
parties.
appointments processes.
They froze
and the
Medicare
pesticides
rebates
chemical
for
review.
6 long years, pushing up GP costs
There'd
and
be no
forcing
further
more
any
people
speakers.
into
Senator
emergency
Collins, are you just-
departments.
No,
They
you're
knocked
not seeking
back
the call.
proposals for
If
cheaper
there's not,
medicines when they were in office,
I'm sorry.
keeping prices
I heard-
higher
do I
for
hear someone?
patients. They cut
Oh,
hospital
Senator Roberts, my
funding
apologies.
and picked fights
Are we up
with the
to,
states instead of fixing
Ministerial
them.
statements.
They also,
sorry,
back in my part of the
looking at
world,
tabling of documents. Could I
closed
seek leave to come back to
GP
that?
access after hours
Look, I don't have a
services, the
problem. I'll
only
just seek the guidance
kind of
of
access
the
to bulk
government.
billing that
Yeah,
many
it's the
people
government is
had
very happy
in our
to
region.
accommodate you, Senator Roberts. Now
The
you're just throwing a
difference
spanner in the
is
works. Let's
crystal
just go
clear.
back a bit.
Labor
What
strengthens
document did you want to-
Medicare
I seek to
and
take
makes
note
medicines
of
cheaper.
government response to
The
committee
Liberals
report.
and the National
Community
Party
Number
weakened
2, Community Affairs
Medicare and
references
let
committee.
prices soar.
And seek leave to continue.
And
So
seek
let's
leave
be
to
clear.
continue my
Leave
remarks.
is granted.
When you
Leave is
reduce the
granted.
cost
Thank you,
of
Roberts.
common
Now
medicines
you're throwing me out. What am I
like
doing?
cholesterol
Okay, let's go back to
tablets,
ministerial statements.
antibiotics,
It's
blood
completed.
pressure meds,
Right.
antidepressants, you're delivering relief where people actually feel it.
Oh,
This
okay,
isn't
go straight to
about
this one.
a
No committee
one-off
memberships.
bonus or
We'll
a
go to,
token gesture.
messages from the House
It's
of
money back in
Representatives.
people's pockets every single month. And for concession card holders, pensioners, veterans, people doing it tough, that relief
Sorry,
is
I've got my
locked in
sunnies on,
for
there's a glare on
years.
there.
Every dollar matters,
A message
especially
has
now,
been
and
received from
this
the House of
bill
Representatives
delivers real
forwarding a
practical
resolution
help.
agreed to by that House.
I want to take a
proposing
moment to
variation
shout
to
out
the resolution of appointment
to
of
the incredible
Parliamentary Joint
pharmacists
Committee
and
on the
pharmacy
National
teams that we
Anti-Corruption
have in
Commission
Newcastle.
and requesting the concurrence of the
They
Senate.
are so
Minister.
much more than dispensers
I
of
seek
medicines.
leave to have the message
These are
considered
people who
immediately.
know their
Is that
communities
granted?
inside out.
I move
They
that
know
the
their
Senate-
customers by
Minister.
name.
Thank you.
They notice when
Acting
someone
Deputy
seems
President, I
a
move
little
that the
off
Senate
and they
concurs
check
with the
in.
resolution.
And I put that
They go
question
that
as
extra
didn't say
mile
aye.
for people who
Against
might
no.
be struggling
The ayes have
because
it.
for so many,
Right.
the local pharmacy is the most accessible point of care.
Thank you.
In suburbs right across Newcastle, our pharmacies
The
are
President has
community
received a
health
message from Her
hubs.
Excellency the Governor
They're
General
where people go for
notifying
advice,
assent
for
to
their
4
flu
laws,
shots,
details
for
of which will
wound
be
care, for
incorporated in
emergency
Hansard.
contraception, for support managing chronic conditions. For some people, particularly
you.
those in vulnerable circumstances, the pharmacy might be the only
Messages have been
face-to-face health
received from the House of
professional they
Representatives
see regularly.
informing the Senate that
And
the
let's
House
not
has
forget
agreed
the
to
role they
Universities
played during the
Accord
pandemic,
National
keeping doors
Higher
open,
Education
providing
Code to
vaccines,
prevent and
answering
respond to
questions,
gender-based
calming
violence Bill
fears.
2025
They were a
and a
lifeline
related
then,
bill
and they
without
continue to
amendment.
be now. So when we talk about cheaper medicines,
Thank you.
these are the people that will
I'm
be
gonna call on you,
administering
Clerk.
this important measure.
Clark.
Cheaper medicines only work if there's a trusted pharmacist there to provide them, and in Newcastle we are so lucky to have some
Senator Bragg.
of the very best.
Thank you very much, Acting
This
Deputy
bill is
President.
also part of a bigger
So
picture.
I move this
A vision for a
disallowance
health
motion.
system that is accessible, so
I'm
you
allowed
don't
to
miss
now
out
Yeah,
on
you want to speak
care
to it?
because
Okay,
of
thank you very
cost.
much.
Please,
Acting
please,
Deputy
Sustainable,
the floor is yours, Senator Bragg.
so that
Thank you very much.
Haven't heard
GPs,
much of you.
pharmacists,
Well,
nurses and hospitals
always good to see
can
a
keep
strong supporter in
delivering
the chair.
world-class care
Now,
for generations
the point
to come.
of this contribution
And affordable, so
is
people
that
can afford
the
to stay
country
healthy.
is living through
Labor
probably
believes
its
in
greatest
Medicare
housing
as a
crisis since the end
cornerstone
the Second
of
World War.
universal health care.
And what we
this
have
bill
seen,
strengthens that
I
foundation.
take the interjection, and what we have
We're not
seen
just
is a
responding to
failure
the
of this
immediate
government.
cost of living crisis.
And then we see a moronic
Although that is
repetition
critical, we're
of
also laying the groundwork
slogans,
for a
as
future
if
where people
all
can
these
get the
things
care
that
they
they've
need
announced are going to
when
solve
they
the
need it
nation's
without
housing
worrying
crisis.
about the
And
bill.
in fact,
And that's why that's
you can
what
have your
Labor
own
governments
slogans
do.
in politics,
We strengthen Medicare,
and one of the reasons
we make
people
medicines
don't think very
cheaper,
highly of
and we
politicians
make
is
the health
because
system fairer
they aren't
for
too many
everyone.
slogans, and
So
they
to my colleagues
often
across the
are prone
chamber,
to offering empty
This is a
words. And in
moment
fact,
to
you'll
put
see
politics
if you
aside
watch
and
this
back something
debate
in
this
that will
afternoon,
make
you
a
probably find
tangible
politicians in this
difference
chamber actually reading their
in
speeches
every
because
single
they're actually not really
electorate.
sure what they're supposed to
This
be saying.
bill
But I look
delivers
forward
relief
to
for
seeing- I
families
look
and
forward to seeing
pensioners
that.
under
Look
cost
forward
of
to seeing
living
that.
pressures.
So the main point is
It
that
delivers
the
health
governments
outcomes
have failed
that
on
keep
housing.
people well
That is not
and
in
out of
question. And
hospital.
whilst you can have
It
your own
delivers a
slogans,
stronger,
you
fairer
can't have your own
Medicare
facts.
for the future.
And the facts
This isn't
are
a symbolic
that
vote.
we have never had a bigger population than
This
we have right now
isn't about
in Australia.
securing political
We've had a
points.
massive
It's
surge in
about people
population,
and
the
about
biggest
good
surge
health
since the
outcomes
1950s,
for our communities
and we've had
everywhere. There's 150
massive
of us
collapse
here in this lower house
in completions.
representing millions
So
of
the
Australians.
biggest population
And
we've
I
ever
am
had
pretty certain
simultaneously
there would not be
comes
one
with
seat
the biggest
sitting
collapse in
in
housing
this chamber
construction
that didn't
in
have
decades.
constituents
So
who
the
want to
government says it's
see
done a great job on
affordable,
housing. But the
reliable
scoreboard
access
shows
to high
that
quality
under the
healthcare
last
under a
coalition
Medicare
government,
system.
we saw
People
200,000 houses
who are right
being
now
built across
standing
Australia
at the
a year
pharmacy
on average.
counter wondering if they
200,000.
can afford every
Under this
strip
government,
their doctor
we're down
has
to
prescribed.
170,000
They're
houses
the
a year
people
on
we're
average.
trying to help
So
now.
we've gone from 200,000
People who are
houses a year on
choosing
average
between a
to
blood pressure
170,000
tablet
houses a year
and
on
a
average.
bag of groceries.
Despite all the bluster
People who are
about
cutting their
housing,
tablets in half, hoping
Labor's
it will get them through to
bureaucracies
the next
have
payday.
resulted in fewer houses.
That's the reality
than
for
the former
far
government.
too many Australians.
And the housing minister
and
is fond
every
of
one
saying
of us
that
in this
the
chamber
government
has the
spent
power to
$43 billion.
change that
Well, big deal.
reality
It spent
for the
$43
better
billion
today.
to build fewer houses
Because
than were
health
built
should never be a
under the
luxury.
last
It
coalition
should never
government.
depend
That is
on
the
the
position
size of your pay
that Australia
packet or the
finds itself in.
postcode where you live.
And that is why the housing
It should
squeeze
be
is so severe,
universal,
because
affordable
when
and
you have a bigger
accessible
population,
for every
you
person
need
who
to find
calls
more
Australia
houses.
home.
And when you've had a housing
That's what this
construction
bill is
collapse,
about.
you've got a big problem.
It's about
So all you need to
clearly,
do
it's
is
about
look at the
saying
government's
clearly,
$1 billion
cheaper
in
medicines
its
are not
budget,
just good
and it has
policy,
built,
they're
we
good
think,
economics.
either 0
Keeping
or 17
people well
or
keeps
2,000
them
houses.
out of
Now,
hospital.
we don't know the actual
It
answer
keeps
because,
people
according
at
to
work.
the Centre
It
for Public
keeps
Integrity,
families strong.
this is the
it
most
takes
secretive
pressure
government
off an
since the
already
Keating government.
stretched health
And
system.
this government has gone out of its
More
way to block
importantly, it's the right
access to
course of
information.
action.
So we have
A
no idea
government
actually
is
how many
ultimately
houses
judged
have been built
by
by this
how well
Housing
it
Australia
helps
Future Fund,
those
because the
who need a
government
hand.
has covered it all up.
And
Because
this
this is
bill
the most
does
secretive
exactly
government
that.
since
It
the Keating
makes
government,
life
according to
that
the
little
Public
bit easier.
Integrity Centre.
It makes
What a
life
disgraceful
that bit
record
fairer.
for a
It
government
makes
that
life
campaigned on
healthier.
transparency and integrity.
To those of us
Hypocrisy
that I
is thy
say,
name.
do not
So
block
the government's
this.
flagship program
Do not
has built
delay
either 0,
this.
17 or
And do
2,000
not
houses in
play
2 years.
politics with people's
And then you have the
health.
broader failure to
Support
encourage
this bill.
the builders
Stand
and the
with
tradespeople and the
families
developers
doing it tough.
to get the housing
Stand
sector
with
moving.
the pensioners
And we
and
see there the
veterans.
failure on the housing
Stand
accord. They're
with
supposed to
every
build
Australian who
1.2
deserves
million houses,
access
but
to
they'll
the
be lucky to
medicines
get 2
they
million.
need
So the
without
starting point
breaking
is
the bank.
a massive
That is why
failure
I'm
on
proud to
supply,
support
and
this
that is why
legislation.
people are battling.
It's Labor
because
values in
if you build
action.
fewer houses,
Fairness,
you create problems all the way
compassion,
down
and
the chain.
practical help
And that is
when
why
people need it most.
Homelessness Australia
Thank
says
you.
that homelessness has never been worse than it is right now under this government. Homelessness is a disaster right now under this government, despite
you,
all the bluster.
Deputy Speaker.
And then you've got to think to yourself,
And I
well,
rise to speak on this
you know,
legislation.
if I look at all the
and
social
it's,
media and all the
a great
speeches that the
privilege
housing
to be
minister
able
gives
to
and all
speak
the
on the National Health
press
Amendment
releases, you
to
think that the
Medicines
housing
Bill
problem has been solved.
2025.
And she keeps on talking about the $43
and of course,
billion.
when you think
Yeah, that's
practically
right.
about this
$43 billion
Deputy
bucks for
Speaker,
fewer houses
I think about
and
it
more
through the
homelessness.
lens of
What a
the
shocking
lived
record.
reality of so many
What a
Australians
shocking record
right
for a
now.
government that says
So
it's
many
committed to
Australians
housing.
today
That's
are
a supply
struggling
side.
with the
But
financial
then we get to the
pressure
demand side.
of
We see this
finding
week
the
the
balance
government's
between the
proposed
costs
to
of their
expand the home
housing,
guarantee scheme,
being in a
which
position
it will
to
be
either
able to
afford their
do,
mortgage or
which
their
it will be
rent,
able to do
going to the
without any
supermarket and
parliamentary
being able to
oversight.
fill up a
Again, this is the
basket
most
of
secretive government
groceries
since the Keating
and
government.
make choices about
And
whether
so
they're
they'll
going to
make
be
this
able
change to the home
to
guarantee
pay
scheme.
at the ATM.
There's likely to be
Then
a
go on and, of
$62
course, make
billion
other tough financial
contingent
decisions
liability
from car
in the
payments
budget.
to the cost
But,
of petrol.
you know, when you're already running 10
And,
years
of course,
deficits,
essential
who
items
cares?
like medicines
It's
and
all
being
that
able to
monopoly
afford
money
to go
to
to the
Mr
doctor.
Chalmers.
And every
And so
point
the
along that
expansion of the home
transaction
guarantee
journey,
scheme takes it from a scheme that
people are
was designed
faced
to
with
be
acute choices
about lower income people
about
getting
trade-offs
access to a
and
first
priorities in
home
their life.
where they have no or low deposit.
And nobody
That's
ever wants
the
to
idea,
face a
because the
moment
home
in their
guarantee
life
scheme
where the
is
choices
not about
between their
paying your
health and
mortgage. It's not about
well-being,
servicing your mortgage. It was
the
about helping
longevity of their
people
life,
who have no deposit
and the
or low
fullness of
deposit.
their capacity
So it's gone from a lower income
from being able to
targeted
afford
scheme
access
to a scheme that
to
any
affordable
Australian can
medicines and
use,
healthcare.
including the wealthiest Australians. And as I say,
And that is
when you're running
always the
10 years of
basis in
deficits.
which
Maybe you don't
this
give a
Parliament
rat's
is seeking
about
to
a few
debate
bucks here and there,
health
but I would have thought
legislation.
that a
How we
$62
empower
billion
people,
contingent
one, to
liability
take agency and
would be
responsibility for their
material,
health and well-being,
because the
but also
consequence
to
of that
find the right
is that
balance
the average
so
worker
that we can make
has
sure
to
that no
subsidise
Australian ever faces
potentially
that
the children
tough
of
choice.
billionaires being able
But
to
there is no
access
point
a government
pretending that it's part
program.
of the ongoing
Now,
conversation
we
around what is
believe,
sustainable for the future of the country,
that
there is
take the
always a
objection,
tension
we
in doing so,
believe
because we know there are
in the
medicines that
idea
don't
that
get
government
listed on the
programs
pharmaceutical benefits
should be
scheme.
targeted
Not every medicine that's
for
available
people
is listed by the
that
current
need
government,
it,
despite
that need it.
their commentary,
We do
and
not
nor has it been
believe
by every previous
that
government in the
programs
past.
funded
Nor will
by
everyone
hard-working
or every treatment option into the future.
when you've got a massive
Because some are too
burden on the
expensive
working
for the
Australian,
realities and the costs, and because
maybe the
of the
highest
innovative
that we've ever
impacts
had.
that it may have, and the
you're wanting
experimental nature.
now, and this comes from
we
a
always
government
take a
that
sober,
reintroduced
balanced approach
a tax
to,
bracket in the
turn
last
around
time,
and say
37
to
cents.
Australians,
You've got to be very
we need to
careful
make
with how you
sure
spend
that we're
people's money,
meeting
and
you
subsidising
to
the
achieve the
children
best
of billionaires,
outcome we
I
can
would say,
achieve
is not a
for
good
every
priority.
Australian.
And on priority,
advance
of
Australia
all the
fair,
things
for a better phrase,
for this
without
government to do on
wanting to be
housing,
twee
they
about it.
choose
And so the
something
current
put
government
forward
has
by
said
their
that that
mates,
price
the
is
big
going to be
super funds and the big
$25
investors.
per script
I know.
to be
Let's
able to
give
achieve the best
a tax cut
outcome
to
to
foreign
maximise
fund
choice
managers.
and
Let's
for
give a
people
tax
to be
cut
able
to
to
foreign
access
fund managers.
to the
So
conditions,
they
to
can
medicines they
build
need to
and
manage
own houses in
conditions. And of course,
perpetuity that
the
Australians
demand
will
is
never
real.
own.
Nobody's disputing
And
this.
we'll dress it
They're
up as a
longer,
build-to-rent measure.
healthier,
But in reality, it is
happier
cutting the
lives.
withholding tax rate for
And in
foreign
so
asset
many ways,
managers.
that's a beautiful
What
and
a
wonderful
warped
thing.
and bizarre priority.
The idea that only
when
a
we
few
did the
generations
inquiry
ago that people might be
into
taken
this
out by
bill,
conditions which
we
can
asked the
now
Home
be
Building
managed
Association, people who actually build
with,
houses, or
as a
used to
managed
build
as a
houses
chronic
in Australia.
condition.
Yeah,
with
where would this
support or
priority
access to
sit?
medicines
Where would
that
this
were
priority
innovated
sit? You know what they
that
said?
simply
It
didn't
wouldn't be in
exist
our top
only
20.
years ago, but
It
it
wouldn't
comes
be
at
in our
cost,
top
and we
20.
want
So
to
the
support
Home Building
Australians to manage
Association
that cost.
say that
So,
it would not be in the top
pharmaceutical
20.
benefit scheme,
But there you
which of
go.
course is part of
This
a bulk
issue,
purchasing
a
arrangement
tax
with
cut
government,
for Labor's
helps
big
millions
end-of-town
of
mates
Australians every single year
becomes the priority for
go
the
on
government.
and afford the
And
medicines
so
they
they
need
want to now have this system
to go
where
to a simple
Australians never,
pharmacy
ever,
after
ever,
they've seen
ever
their
own a
doctor
house.
and get a
And anyone who went to
dispensing
the
of a
Economic
medication
Summit last week
so that they can
with
get the
Mr
support and
Chalmers
treatment
would
they
have found that,
need.
in fact, a lot of the
And meet
time
it
was
with the
taken up by the
co-payment
big
so that
super
they can
funds
then go on
trying to get the
and get the
government to
assistance
find
that they need
dodgy
to be able
ways
to
so they
manage
can
their own
own
care
and build
pathway.
more and more houses, because their
And of
Australian
course,
dream is for super
it's
funds to
working
own
with
your house,
pharmacies,
not for you
with
to own your
pharmacists,
house. That's
with
the
their
reality of this
doctors,
government. They
particularly
believe that
through
institutional
primary
investors
healthcare, not
should
just
own
that we get
houses
best health
because they don't
outcomes
give a
for
rat's.
patients, though we do.
That there are cities like Atlanta,
In addition to that, we
Atlanta
manage
and
the
in other
best
parts of
care
the US where you
pathways
have 25 or 30%
patients,
of the houses
but of
owned
course we
by
also
institutional
reduce the
investors.
overall cost
That's
for
what
the
they
health
want for
system
Melbourne, Sydney
and
and
stop
Brisbane.
the
They want
risk
Seabus,
over
BlackRock,
time that people
Australian
graduate
Super
up
to own
to
their
the
houses in
tertiary
Australia.
system and
That's
find
their
themselves in
dream.
hospital. So we
That is
all
their
win
dream.
when
That
people
is the
take
Labor dream.
responsibility for their lives,
The party of
their
organised
healthcare
capital
pathways,
now wants
and
to
get the
impose
best
this
outcome.
disgusting idea
That's why the
on the
coalition
Australian
has
people,
always
because
been
in
such a
fact
strong
they've never
supporter
liked the idea of individual
the
Australians owning their own
pharmaceutical benefit
houses.
scheme.
And if you go back
I remember the
into
time
the
I
annals
was
of time,
last
you'll
in
find
Parliament,
Labor ministers in the
and one of the
post-war
most
period
tragic things
talking
was
about we don't want to
during
have
the previous terms
Australians own their
of
own houses, we
Labor
don't want them to be
governments.
little capitalists.
And
That
they
is the history of the Labor movement.
deprioritised
So this is
listings
just,
of medications
frankly,
on the
more
pharmaceutical
of the same.
benefit scheme
And so we
because
see
they wanted to
here,
prioritise other avenues of the health
so
system.
we see here from the
to do things
ASFA,
like
which is the
boost,
Super Association,
the
saying
pathways for unions to
during-
tax their take,
during-
Senators,
during
order.
the-
but at
Senator
the
Bragg, please
expense
take
of
your
access
seat.
to medicines for vulnerable
Senator
Australians. And one of the
Senators,
proudest things that was
interjections are
done
always
over that
disorderly,
period from
and I
2013
would
through to 2022
ask senators to
was
be
to
mindful
increase
of
the
that,
volume of
particularly given we
medications,
are so
often for
close to
rarer
a maiden
conditions,
speech and we have an
for
audience
people who
we
were
should all be on our
simply
best
left
behaviour.
behind
Senator Ayres.
by previous Labor governments.
Of course,
rarer
absolutely
condition
respect your
that
work.
often
We were
led
provoked
tragically,
by
Deputy Speaker,
Senator Bragg
Senator Ayres,
naming an
you know
association
that
that does not
particular
exist.
types of
He just made it up.
That's not.
He just made it up.
Or
That's
rarer
not in order.
conditions
Under the
that
standing order,
weren't
Senator
traditionally part
Bragg,
of the
I'm giving you the
mainstream. We all
call to
understand the
continue with your
importance of things like
contribution on the
cholesterol
motion.
medication.
Thank you.
take
and other types
I thank you,
of statins
Acting Deputy
and
President.
the like
I
that are
thank
often used
Senator Ayres
by
for his
Australians on
many
an everyday
interjections.
basis.
He likes interjecting when I'm speaking, I've noticed.
But when it's those
And
rarer conditions,
the Housing
where it can
Industry
often be the
Association
difference between not
does
just
a lot of very good home building,
slow
I think you'll
corrosion of
find.
somebody's well-being.
And
but the
I
very
encourage you
difference
to go to their
between life
website.
and
You
death.
might find some facts about home building.
When those medications are able to be listed,
I encourage the
because we
government
have a strong
to get
economy,
better at understanding
a
what
balance
builders,
sheet,
tradies and developers actually
more
need to build
importantly,
the
a
houses
government that
Australians want to live in.
understands
Because
that when you
I have to
have
say
those things in
that
alignment,
Canberra-based
you
bureaucracies
have
like
the
the Housing
capacity
Australia
to be
Future
able
Fund
to provide
that have
the
been
health
going for 2
services
years and have
that
spent
Australians
$10
need
billion
on the
to build 17
margins.
houses haven't been
You
very
built a better
successful.
nation.
So I take the
So
interjection.
this
I
legislation
thank,
is before the Parliament,
Senator Ayres for his many interjections.
and of course,
And
when it gets
I
voted
make the
upon
point
and
here
passed,
that the
it will
Superfund
be a moment
Association,
where
when
we
giving
reduce the
evidence
price of
on this
access
particular
to
bill,
$25
actually
for a
said when
And
I
it will
asked them,
mean that it
do you
will
think
reduce
the
the
Australian
cost of
people
living
want to rent
pressure
their
for
house from a super
millions
fund?
of
The
Australians,
official said,
so they will be able
I
to
think
fill
they
out
would
their
be very
scripts.
happy with
It will mean that
institution-owned
they will
residential
find it
property.
easier in an
Now, I think
environment
that
where
they're
there are
wrong.
less,
I think that is
they'll face less pressure
culturally jarring.
on their
Most
cost of living
Australians
choices
actually
in the
want to
short
own their own
term,
house.
but because
Most
real
Australians want to own
wages,
their own
once
house.
adjusted for
They don't
inflation,
want
have
to
not
own a
risen for
house.
nearly
They don't want to
15
live in a house,
years.
as you say, owned by a super fund. Now, it
So
shows
many
you the
Australians will still not
institutional
be getting further
impact
ahead.
of the Labor movement
This is
today.
just
It
an
is so
adjustment
obsessed with helping the
to
super funds
reflect
and the unions clip the ticket and
reality
become
that
perpetual
Australians are not
landlords,
getting
that
ahead
it
no
now
matter how much
prioritises
and
a
how
policy
hard
of
they
build to
work.
rent over the interests of
So
Australian
yes, it
workers.
gives
So,
hope,
I mean, that is effectively
but it
the
does not give
basis
the
for
long-term
this disallowance.
sustainable
This
hope
is a
that
warped
Australians
priority.
need, so
A warped
that we can
priority.
look to the forward to the
It will
future
cost
with
taxpayers
confidence.
tens of
The
millions of
only
dollars.
basis you will
But
have
of course, the costs that the
long-term
Labor
hope
movement
for
don't
the
want to talk
future
about
is if we
are the
have change
30%
of government,
taxes that the
where we
CFMEU
get
imposed
reckless
onto all the new apartment
spend-a-thon
builds
government
in
out
Australia.
of the government
And in fact,
benches, and you
we saw,
see a return
we saw
of a
one of the first
coalition
acts of this
government
government
that is
when it
prudent,
won election in
responsible
2022 was to
and
abolish
prioritises
the Building
putting
and Construction
service
Commission.
delivery of
And I think
Australians
it's telling
first,
that I've all
that makes
often
the long-term
said, this is
sustainability
a
of the
government for
budget
vested
its
interests,
priority.
Senator Ayres.
All right,
Senator
puts
Ayres, you are
Australia
the
in a
king of
position
vested
of
interests
strength and
in
economic
shoveling
growth
money and
so that it
policy
can
to your
deliver the
mates.
dividends to
And the
Australians
reality is
to be
that
able to
the
afford
first
access
order
to
of business
health, education
for
services, and that
this
includes the
government
pharmaceutical
was to
benefit
abolish
scheme,
the Building and
so
Construction
that
Commission.
those who are
Now, no one thinks
marginalised,
that was a good idea,
vulnerable,
other than the Labor
or,
Party and its
in a
mates.
situation
What it's done
of need
is it
are in
has
a position
imposed
to be able to
a
afford the health
30%
services
tax
that
on
they
all
so
new apartment
desperately need.
builds for younger Australians.
Because
So for
sitting
many younger
behind
Australians,
any
their first
conversation around
house
access
is
to
likely to be a
medicines
small apartment. So imposing that cost
is
on younger people
so
seems
many small
very
businesses.
unfair to me. But again, Labor really
When I
don't
go
care
around
about
the
the
electorate of
vested interests because
Goldstein,
they
I
are
talk
at heart
to many
a
of the
government
electorates,
vested
many of
interest.
the
So
community
general point
pharmacies
here
in
is that
Goldstein.
we believe this is an
When I speak
important
to the community
disallowance because
pharmacies
this
of
is a
Goldstein,
warped
what I
priority
hear is the
that only a
aspirations of so
government
many small
for vested
businesses,
interests
and like
could
all small
conjure up.
businesses
This is not in the
in
interest
the
of the
electorate
Australian
and of
people,
course across Australia,
because we
they're
want to
facing
have a
real
country where
and
individual
significant
Australians can
challenges
own
in the
their own
current
house. We don't
economic
think that
environment.
it's a
They
good,
face
good
problems
idea
around skills and
for big
access to
super
labour.
funds
They face
and
the
foreign
challenge
asset
around cash
managers
flow, and of
to
course
own Australian
they
houses.
pay
No,
energy
we
bills
don't.
too,
And I
and
take all
rising
the
energy
interjections.
costs,
It
and
must
of
be a
course
very
of
sore point.
regulation and of
But we
tax.
don't believe
Yep,
that
all right.
foreign asset
Some
managers and
pharmacists
big
doing
super
okay
funds should
because
be
they've
the
studied hard and they've put themselves in a
perpetual
position
owners
to be able to earn
of
a good
Australian
income.
housing. So
But that
I'm
doesn't
sorry that
change
the
the fact
government's
that they've made a
embarrassed.
huge investment
we
in
don't think
themselves,
this
and
is the
often
right
they're the very
priority.
basis
And so we're
of
moving
their
this-
business, Deputy
we're
Speaker,
moving
and
this
once you remove
disallowance
them, that community
because
pharmacy
we want to
can
see
disappear. So
Australians
they're not just
being
providing a
back in
good
the
service for
vanguard
themselves,
of housing
but for the
policy.
community as
We
well.
accept the election
And the
result,
expectation
and we
increasingly is
understand
not
that
just
the
that they're
government have
providing a
another
service
couple of years to try and get it right
on a
on housing.
commercial basis,
And we
but
want to help the
increasingly a
government be
public
the best
service
they can be.
for the rest of
And
the
the way that will
community,
be measured will be
particularly
on
through
the supply
primary
numbers.
care.
If you can
And
build more
despite
houses,
the boasts of the Prime
the
Minister
Australians
who
can
comes
live
in
in, that's
here
a good
occasionally
thing.
with his
But you've got to get
Medicare
the
card and
priorities
says
right. And so
that no
we
matter who you
encourage
are
the
in this
Senate
country, no matter where
to
you
consider
go, you
carefully
never
whether
need
it's a good
anything
idea
more
for
than
the
that.
Australian taxpayer
I'm afraid
to be giving away
the
money
lived
to
reality
foreign
of
asset managers so they can
Australians
own
in just
houses
about every
in
corner of this
perpetuity
nation
that Australians will never,
is that if you
ever,
turn up to a
ever
doctor's
own.
GP
Think very
clinic
carefully about where
at the
we're heading in
moment,
this
you
country.
definitely need
There is a
your
massive
Medicare
conspiracy
card and
between
your
Mr
credit
Chalmers,
card.
the unions,
Certainly
the
in
big
the
super
electorate of
funds
Goldstein,
to
that's
become
the reality,
perpetual
Deputy
landlords,
Speaker.
and it's not a good idea.
And so therefore,
and the
so
caterwauling
many
and the
people turn to
crying
the
from the
community
Labor Party
pharmacy
on the government
and say,
benches
is there a
really
way you
is a
can provide
testament
me with the
to
assistance
their
and
great
support? And
embarrassment.
increasingly,
This is finally
pharmacies are
going
on
to
the
be
front line
exposed.
of
So
primary
we
care
encourage the
needs.
Senate to vote for this disallowance.
And what they need
and
more
more
than
broadly,
anything else
we want to see the government
is
get
certainty
serious on the supply
and
side.
clarity
Their measures so
for their
far have been
long-term
a disaster. They've had
sustainable
3 years. They've gone
so that
backwards.
they can
They've got another
invest in their
2.5
own
years
future.
or so.
People
and
like
we want to
Simon
see the
Rankin
government
from
get
the
to the
Sandy
250,000
Pharmacy in
50,000 houses that are
Sandringham.
required
He's
for
been a
Australia to hit
long-term
its targets.
provider in the
And while they're
community
doing
and does
that,
an
we want to see
amazing
them
job.
be serious
There's
about
people
the
like
demand
Leah
side.
Bartolotta
Is it
at
really a
Hampton
good
Discount
idea
Chemist,
for the government to be
or
giving
Lily and Avizia
a
Jarowski
program
at
which
Dendy
is
Village
now
Pharmacy,
open
or
to
Rebecca
the
Nguyen
wealthiest
at the
Australians
Chemist
to get
Warehouse in
access to a
Brighton,
government
Eric Upton
insurance
at East
scheme?
Brighton
We
Pharmacy,
would say
Simon Kenny and
it's best
Stephen
to means
Moran
test things.
at Direct Chemist Outlet
Taxpayer dollars
Nelson,
should
who
be
made a
treated
huge
very
investment in
carefully,
their own
and
future.
giving away money
Leah
to the wealthiest
Bartoletta
Australians
and Damien
when they don't
Gantz
need that
from
money
Chemist Warehouse in
is
Elsternwick, or
really
Rebecca Trang
not
Nguyen,
appropriate.
who's from
So
Chemist
I encourage
Warehouse
the
in
Senate to consider
Cheltenham.
this motion
David
carefully,
Wong at McKinn
once
Pharmacy
we get through the formalities of this next
in
speech.
Post Office.
I
Or
thank
Jeffrey
you, Senator
Kirshner,
Roberts. It's
who's from
almost,
Woman MCAL Pharmacy.
at the
Malcolm
hard marker
Cosgrove
for
and
the
David
first speech,
Sislett
so
at
we'll
Beaumorra Pharmacy.
resume,
Andre Beck
with
at
this
Bayside
once
Pharmacy.
we
Yu
are
Chung
back on
Shao
normal
from
business.
Vale Pharmacy. Leon
Pursuant to
Fleischer,
order, to make
Paul
his
Carassus,
first
who's from
speech,
Seaview Pharmacy in
ask
Beaumaris,
senators that the-
Elizabeth Pharmacy in
ask
Beaumaris,
senators that the
Elizabeth and
usual
Francis
courtesies
Fong
be
from
extended to
Bentley
I
Centre
call
Pharmacy,
Senator Dowling.
Alexander Prufus and Richard Needham from Bentley Corner Pharmacy.
President.
Stephen Zakis as Corner Pharmacy.
President.
Stephen Zakis as
Begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and I honour their continuing culture and unbroken connection to this place we now call Parliament. I also acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the first people of my home state.
And John
I don't come
Quinn
here
from
with a
Chemist Warehouse in
remarkable
Bentley.
story,
Stephen
but I
Christopoulos
do
and Connor
stand here
McCanty
with a
from
proudly
Priceline
Tasmanian
Pharmacy
one.
in Bentley.
It's a story of how strong Australian institutions can open doors and give a fair shot for an ordinary kid from Hobart. I was lucky to grow up in a household that believed those things mattered. I never felt limited growing up in Tasmania. A community that cared, public services that did their job, and most of all, my family's love and grounding. We didn't have everything,
and Ben Zhao
but we had
from
what
Priceline
counted.
Pharmacy, Bentley East.
And I paid tribute
Paul
to my mum and
Pham
dad,
from Nelson
Judy and
Pharmacy,
David,
Brighton East. Alan
provided a
Bernhardt
shield
from
to life
Hawthorne Road
struggles
Pharmacy, East
and a
Brighton.
trampoline
And
of
Michael Schapp
opportunity.
from Sol Patterson Chemist, Elstonwick.
Before I go
and what
on,
you hear from
let me thank
these
my wife Georgia,
small businesses
who I
in the
will speak
electorate,
more a
Deputy
bit later,
Speaker,
my family,
people who are
friends,
backing
colleagues,
themselves and investing
and the Labor
in the growth
movement,
of
especially
their
those who
community,
took a chance
and more
on me.
importantly for the primary care services
A Prime
in their
Ministerial
community.
speechwriter
And, of
once
course,
told me,
they're also
avoid lists of names
new
in a
Australian
thank you.
success stories in many cases.
The longer the list,
people who have
the
been
more
part
offensive
of
it is to the
a
person you
migration by the first or second
So I'll
generation
leave
who
it at
invested
that.
in themselves and
To
for the
everyone
future
who helped
of
me
their
reach this
community
place,
and their success. And they just want to
thank
get
you.
ahead and support
You know
others.
who you are.
And we should be wishing and willing them on.
I went to public
And I would have
schools,
thought that
and I
this
was taught by
Parliament
some
wants to provide them
outstanding
with the
teachers
clarity and certainty
who
to be able
nurtured
to
my
do
love
so.
for
Just
knowledge
like patients
and numbers.
need certainty from this Parliament.
My schools weren't polished, but they were decent. They were full of kids who got their hands dirty, who looked out for each other, and who taught me more about fairness than any book ever could. Even though Risdon Prison was just down the road, the neighbourhood never felt unsafe. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name and sometimes your business.
Because when I think about the
but
benefits
they'd also
of
drop
the
everything to help
pharmaceutical
you
benefits
when you
scheme,
needed it.
it goes so much to older
The
patients
so-called
in our
mainland
community as
felt like
well.
a distant land.
So many pensioners I
Melbourne
talk to
may
in
as well have been
Goldstein
the moon.
talk increasingly about the trade-offs they're making around access to medicines as part of their broader
Tasmania
challenge
is often
of
overlooked.
cost of living pressure, particularly
has
managing the
acquired
chronic conditions
strength,
and increasingly managing
a
the
deep
realities of
sense
comorbidities.
of place,
and
a resilience
across
that shapes
increasingly
how we
multiple
see fairness
stages of life,
and community.
where people are taking multiple
But even back
medications
then,
that only
growing
increase as people get
I
older.
could sense where things
Many
were
years ago, the
starting to
Productivity
fray.
Commission did a study which looked and assessed that
When
around
I got
a
to
third
year
of
11,
a person's entire
many
health
of the kids I've
expenditure
grown up
occurs in the
with
last few
weren't
stages
there.
of their life, and it's no
They'd left
surprise.
school early.
So
A culture that's
people
all
need
too
support.
common
They
in
need
Tasmania.
care, and they need care within their
Not because they
community.
didn't want to learn,
And a community
but because
pharmacy
too many of them
provides
didn't
that
see the
care
point.
and support.
That's not a
But it
failure
can
of
only
students.
do so
That's on us.
if it has clarity and certainty to provide the
My
support
first brush
that the
with
community
politics
needs,
came through an old
that they have
ABC
to run a
show
viable
called
business,
Order in the House.
and to build the
weekly
relationship
wrap of
with the
parliamentary
patients
proceedings.
they so desperately need.
I stumbled across it by accident
And, of course, for it to be affordable
and lost a good chunk of
and
my
accessible
childhood watching it.
as part of a long-term
But I was
sustainable
hooked.
solution for our country.
Drama, the characters,
And
the
the only way
consequences.
you're going to achieve that is
What
if we
happened in that
have
building?
a change of
building
government that seeks to achieve
affected
the best
people's
interests
lives
of economic growth,
could change them
long-term
for the
sustainable
better.
budget management to
And
deliver
that's where
the
the
future
fascination
success
began.
of this great nation. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
At uni, I started to fall out of love with politics. The debates
thank you, Deputy
felt
Speaker.
more like
I
performance
dread
than
when I
principle.
pick up my medication and there
More
are just a
karaoke
few
than
tablets
Keating.
left. Because that means
So I
I need
found
to
a new
refill.
love.
And that costs me
The
money.
so-called
I don't
dismal
always
science
have.
of economics.
That's what Jess
I
from
liked
Airport
that it
West
didn't
told me when we were
pretend to
talking
be
about
noble.
Labor's plans to make
It
medicines
tried to explain
cheaper.
how people
Jess
really
lives with a
behave.
chronic condition
not how
and
we
she doesn't
wish
have a
they
choice
did.
about whether she takes
gave
her
me the
medication.
tools
Without
to
it,
understand the
condition
world.
worsens. Without it, her
Initially,
quality of life
I supported my
slips away.
studies by coating
And Jess is
drumsticks
not
with
alone.
Colonel Sanders'
Thousands
secret
of
herbs and
Australians
spices at
live with
KFC.
chronic conditions that demand regular
Partway through
medication.
my studies,
Blood
I
pressure
landed a
tablets,
cadetship
diabetes
at the
treatments,
Treasury
asthma puffers, antidepressants,
and went from the fryer to
medicines that
fiscal
aren't
policy.
luxuries, medicines that aren't optional,
And with that promotion
medicines
came the
that
hefty
save
responsibility
and sustain lives. But for
of
too long,
washing the
medicines have
Treasury
been priced
Secretary's
as if
car.
they were a choice. And too often, people like Jess have had to make impossible choices.
I also learned
do I
that
refill my
responsible-
prescription
that
or do I pay
responsible
the power bill?
economic management
Do I take my
is the
medication today or do I
foundation
stretch it
of
out
any
and hope
good
I can get through the
government.
week? Do I
And
put
a
my
few
health
years
first
after,
or make sure I have food
I became
to
chief
eat?
economist at the Tasmanian
Speaker,
Chamber of
Deputy
Commerce.
Speaker, in a country like Australia,
I was in my
we should
early
not have
20s,
to choose
so I knew a
between-
lot.
People should not have to choose between their health
And I was in the
and their
local
household
media
budget.
a lot.
Now,
talking
we've
about
heard
interest
colleagues
rates,
talk about
exports
2004,
and the dollar.
a year of nostalgia.
There wasn't
blockbuster
an
movies,
economic
iconic
issue
songs and the rise
I wasn't
of new
willing to do an interview
You know what
about.
else was true in 2004? Back then,
On
the
reflection,
maximum cost of PBS,
the Chamber of Commerce
PBS
could have
medicine
stayed
was
neutral on the rising
$25.
price of shoe hire
And
at
here's the
Moona
frustrating
bowling
part,
alley.
though. For the nearly 2 decades after, the costs have kept going up, while wages of everyday Australians barely moved. Medicines went up, bills went
Jokes
up,
aside,
rent went up.
it's fair to say there was a
wages
mixed
stagnated.
reaction to my commentary.
That was the reality before Labor
One
came to
reader
power in
remarked,
2022, and that's why
"Tell
this
that kid
legislation
to give his
matters
dad's
so
suit back."
deeply, because this
Dad, I'll
government
give it
is
back tomorrow.
changing that reality. From January 1 next
Another
year, the
asked,
maximum
"When
cost
is
of
Graph
general
Boy going to
PBS
show us
medicine
another one of his
will
little
fall
charts?"
again from $31.60 to $25.
This is not the usual pathway
For the
for a
first
Labor
time
Senate
since
seat.
2004, medicines
But I
will
kept my
cost
party
no
membership
more
through that
than
time,
$25.
and I never bought into the
That's not
idea
nostalgia.
that in a modern
That's
economy,
real relief.
Labour
That's
and capital
Labor
should
delivering.
be enemies.
And as Gretchen Winters once famously
Maybe that's
said
a
in the
Tasmanian
2004 film
perspective.
Mean Girls,
We're too small
That's so
to be
fetch.
fighting each other. Strong
let's be clear,
industries
this
and
is not a
secure,
minor shift. This
well-paid
is
jobs
20%
go
cut
together.
to the cost of medicines, a reform
Indeed.
that will save people in
After
my
a
electorate
day
of
talking
Maribyrnong
about markets,
$10 million.
I'd often end up in the
For
Australian
families in
Workers'
Maribyrnong,
Union
that's more money for
boardroom
groceries.
After
For
hours,
students, it's less
engaged in
stress,
spirited
balancing
policy
casual
debate.
shifts and study.
Sometimes
For pensioners,
we came at it
it's
from
the
different
difference
angles.
between dignity and despair.
But we cared
If you
about
rely on
the
a script
same
each month,
thing.
or if your household has 2, 3
Dignity
or
at
even
work
4 prescriptions to
and a
manage,
decent
these
future
savings
for
stack
working
up
people.
quickly. This is relief where it counts.
I'm proud to
At
be
the pharmacy
a
counter,
member of the
in people's
AWU
wallets, and
2
in people's
decades
lives.
later.
In
It
Maribyrnong, I think of the
remains one of
families
the
on
unwavering
tight budgets
defenders
in
of
Essendon
traditional
West,
industries,
students working
our
double
export
shifts in Moonee
economy,
Ponds,
and the many
seniors in Avondale
thousands
Heights
of
feeling the
Tasmanian
pressure
and Australian
of fixed
families
incomes.
who rely
And I
upon it.
think of our migrant communities.
And
Communities who often face language
nothing
barriers,
quite like
cultural
being called
barriers,
a
and
comrade
financial barriers to
and a
healthcare.
capitalist
For them, this
by the
is not
same
just
person
about cost.
in the
It's
same
about
sentence.
fairness. It's about dignity. It's about equity. Recently,
Eventually,
my office spoke with Fatima,
I'd
a
said
woman
so
in her
much about
early
the local
30s from Mascot
economy
Vale, living with
that
a
someone in
neurological
government
disorder.
either agreed
Because of
with
her
me
illness,
or
she
wanted me
can't
to stop.
maintain long-term work,
Lara
and the cost of her
Giddings, the
medications
Premier,
have been
offered me
a
a job
constant
as her
strain.
economic advisor.
Alongside this medication, she also
We
takes
joked that she
antidepressants.
hired me just to
and
shut me
together,
up.
these costs add up quickly.
I owe her a lot,
For Fatima,
and I
every
acknowledge Lara
dollar
here in the
counts.
gallery tonight.
This price cut isn't just welcome.
She showed me that
it's
policy
life-changing.
isn't just about numbers and
These
graphs.
medications aren't
about
luxury.
people.
They're essential to her health,
Behind every
her
budget
dignity,
line
and her ability
is
to
a
live
life,
well.
a story,
And this
a community.
legislation recognises that.
Lara showed me what courage
And that's the
looks
truth.
like in
Access to
politics.
affordable healthcare is not
She
a
led through
privilege.
very
it is not a
challenging
luxury.
times.
It's a
And
necessity.
she copped it.
Deputy Speaker,
often in ways
this
that were
legislation
cruel
is
and
another
personal.
chapter in Labor's long
But Lara Giddings
story
never
of
wavered.
building, strengthening
She
and
stayed the
defending
course
Medicare.
At
And
great
undoing
personal and
the
political
damage
cost,
of the decade that came
and
before
I'll
us.
always admire
A decade of cuts, a decade of neglect, a decade of government that never
By a
truly
fortunate twist
understood
of
that
events,
healthcare is not
I
a commodity.
also met my wife,
It
Georgia,
is a human
during
right.
this time.
Since
I was sitting
2022,
in the
Labor has
government
been
advisor's
repairing that
box, a
damage.
bit like the one over there.
On medicines alone, we've
It was a
already
small
delivered
chamber
the
in the
biggest
Tasmanian
price
Parliament,
cut in PBS
and I noticed
history,
a new face in
from
the
$42.50
opposition advisor's
down to
box.
31.
There
Introduced
was a far more interest
60-day
than whatever motion
prescriptions,
was being
saving
debated.
people time, money and
So I
hassle.
leaned over to the
Reduced the
finance
number of
minister and asked if he
concessional
knew
scripts
who she
needed
was.
before hitting the PBS
He
safety net,
subsequently
meaning
leaned to
free
the Premier to ask if
or
she
cheaper
knew.
medicines sooner.
She
and
subsequently
the
tapped the
frozen PBS
Speaker,
co-payments
who
for
subsequently
pensioners
asked the
at just
opposition leader.
$7.70 until 2030.
Finally, the answer travelled back via the
That's
same
Labor's
sequence of
record.
MPs.
And with this legislation, we go
Her name
further.
is Georgia, and she's
Because not
just
only
started
Labor
in the opposition
not only
office.
does Labor protect Medicare,
I eventually
we continue to
manufactured
strengthen
an
it.
excuse to meet her.
Now, some of us will
And over a
stop
decade
pharmacies
later,
from offering discounts
she's
on
still
top of
here
their
with
price cut. The simple answer is no.
Whoever said politics
Discounting
can't
will
bring people
remain.
together?
Pharmacies in Moonee Ponds and on Keilor Road and Military Road all of whom
Georgia,
will keep supporting
you've stood
locals with
with
affordable
me
medicines
through
while being
every
part
storm.
of this bigger solution.
Lifted when I faltered.
Lauren, a local pharmacist
Steady
from
when I
Flemington,
wavered.
welcomed me into her store and proudly
Georgia,
showed me
none of
how
this
her and her
would be
team
possible
are part of the solution.
without
She
you.
spoke with passion and genuine care for her community,
The start we had in
highlighting the
Tasmania
specialist services like
set us up
compounding
to explore
medicines
the
and
world.
delivering vaccination
And I
programs
went on to work
in
at the
aged care
cutting edge
homes.
of healthcare, clean
Lauren
energy and
told
technology.
me how excited she
Having a
is
front
about this
row seat to
legislation,
the voracious
how it will
entrepreneurship
benefit
and
the
innovation
people of
happening
Flemington
around the
and
world
her community, and
showed me
build
that
on the
this
other
country
reforms
could
like
do
the
with a
60-day
dose of
prescriptions
optimism.
and the freezing of the co-payment.
On the whole, most
What
things
struck me
are
most
improving.
is how she has
And
transformed
human ingenuity
a
is
tiny
focused
shop
on
front
solving our
into a
greatest global challenges.
community-focused pharmacy.
I
One
walk
that
the halls
deeply
of Westminster,
cares for the
Washington
people it serves
and Brussels.
and is driven by genuine
And I
desire to
maintain,
improve their health
for all our
in practical,
shortcomings,
everyday ways.
we still do
Lauren,
politics better.
like so many healthcare professionals, is the backbone
Those
of
overseas
Medicare,
experiences
and we must work
reinforce
with Lauren
what's
and all
special about
healthcare
Australia
professionals to keep strengthening
and
it.
about Tasmania.
That's what partnership looks like.
After seeing up
That's
close
what practical
the
reform
abject
looks
poverty
like.
present
Deputy
in some
Speaker,
of the world's
the principle
wealthiest
guiding this
economies
government is clear.
and the indifference to
No
it,
Australian held back.
the
no
value of a
Australian
strong
left
social
behind.
safety net,
Yet for
a
too
more
many,
equal
healthcare
society,
has been a source
and the same
of
fair
stress.
go that I
Too
was
many
raised
people
with
have
were
skipped a
reinforced
script
as
to
core
cover
beliefs
rent.
for me.
Too many parents have delayed refilling a prescription so
President,
they can buy school uniforms.
one area that I believe
Too
would
many
improve
Australians
fairness
have
in our
ignored
economy
chronic
is
conditions
empowering people
because
with
the
better
costs were
financial
just too
skills.
high.
From young people
That's not
trying to
Medicare.
understand credit
That's
cards
not who we are. That is not.
to older people
That is the
vulnerable
Americanisation
to
of
exploitation.
healthcare. That
It's been
is
a
legacy
passion for
of those
me
opposite.
for a long time.
By lowering medicine costs,
Many years
medicine costs,
I met a young
we're not
law
just helping
student
people
named
make
Grace.
ends meet.
She
We're
had
keeping people
incredible
healthier.
prospects,
We're keeping people
but
out
she
of
was
hospital.
distraught.
We're helping
She'd
people
applied
stay
for a
in the
$500
workforce,
credit
support
card.
their families,
The
and
bank,
live longer,
in its
better
wisdom, gave her a
lives.
$10,000
Cheaper
limit,
medicines aren't just good
something
for
no
the
young
household
student
budget.
should ever be
They're
handed.
good for our health system.
Assuming
They're
the
good for
bank
our
knew
economy.
best, she began to
They're
spend,
good for Australia.
only to
Deputy
realise her
Speaker,
payments
this is
weren't
bigger
even
than just
touching the
medicines.
principle. She was
This is about
spiralling into
Medicare.
debt
This is a
without
which is a
understanding
Labor
how she got
creation.
there.
That green and gold promise.
sat down
a universal
together
shield that
and
means
mapped
no
out a
matter your
plan.
income,
She
no
got
matter your
through it.
postcode, no
But I'll
matter your
never forget what
background,
she
you can
said.
see a doctor.
Why
You
don't
can
they
get the
teach
treatment
more
you
of this
need
stuff in
to live
school?
a healthier, happier life.
She was right.
Medicare
Today it's not
is
just
part
credit
of our
cards,
identity.
it's buy
It's
now,
part of our
pay later
story.
schemes,
And this
payday
government
loans,
will never
online
stop
scams
protecting
promising
it,
instant
strengthening
riches.
it and
The
renewing
tools
it.
have changed,
Because that's
but the
what
risks
good
to people's
governments
futures
do. They
are the
listen
same.
and they deliver.
And I don't believe the answer is simply more
So today,
regulation.
this parliament takes another step
Regulation
forward.
and enforcement have their place,
A step
but they
that
will
helps
never
Jess
keep pace
in
with
Airport
technology.
West refill
We
her
have to
medication
empower people
without
to
fear.
protect themselves
A step
and to thrive.
that helps Fatima in Ascot
Because a
Vale
confident,
manage her prescriptions
financially
and pay her
capable
next
citizen
utility bill.
is harder to
A step that
exploit
helps Lauren
and better
in
placed to
Flemington
seize the
continue to
opportunities
deliver
the economy
affordable
offers.
medicines to her proud
Australians
local
are
community.
expected to navigate an
This is
increasingly
Labor
complex
delivering for
financial
all
world,
Australians.
but we
This is
don't
Medicare
teach them
protected
how.
and strengthened.
Budgeting,
This is the
compound
power of
interest,
government working for
mortgages,
everyday
superannuation,
Deputy Speaker,
investing.
I commend the bill.
We still expect people just to figure it out by themselves.
for Barker.
And the result,
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
too many
Well,
young Australians
Madam Deputy
feel
Speaker,
like
the
they're
member
falling behind
for
before
Maribyrnong
they've
just
even
spoke
begun.
about a
Too many older
government that
Australians
is focused
are
on
vulnerable to
strengthening
scams,
universal
predatory products,
healthcare.
or silent
and,
stress about money.
I want to present
This is a
slightly
fairness issue.
different version of what's happening
In well-off households,
in a community not
financial
that
knowledge
far
is
from
often passed
Maribyrnong
down.
in southeast South Australia, my
In
hometown
families doing it tough,
of Mount Gambier. But
where
before
every
I
dollar
do,
counts,
the bill,
there's really time or
commendably,
headspace to pass
and
those
with
lessons on.
bipartisan support,
Nowhere is this more
reduces
important
the cost to
than in places like
clients
Tasmania,
for
where intergenerational disadvantage
prescriptions.
is too
And
often
I
passed
say
down,
commendably,
not just
and,
in income, but
and
in
of course it has
information.
bipartisan support.
That's
in this
why
place,
financial
and
literacy
those
should be
opposite
seen
spent
as a,
much of last
not as a
term telling
private
us it was a
virtue,
real
but as a
cost of
public
living
good.
saving, and it is
Surveys
a cost
show
of living saving.
only half
It's
of
just
adults can correctly answer
perhaps
basic questions about
unfortunate at the
inflation,
same time
interest and
people
risk.
were
And the
being
cost is
told
huge.
about a saving on their prescription.
Research
Their
shows
energy
that
bills
financial
were
stress
doubling
is
and
estimated to
tripling,
cost the nation
not to
over
mention,
$30 billion a year
their mortgages,
in lost
etc.
productivity,
let's park
mental
that
health
for a moment.
impacts, and
Let's
increase
talk
reliance
about
on social
the
services.
community of Mount Gambier.
If we can lift financial capability,
it's in my electorate.
we can cut
of
those
Barker.
costs
It's South
and, more
Australia's
importantly,
second
save
largest
lives.
city, and it's not
It's
that
a tool
far
for dignity, a
from,
tool for economic
Melbourne,
empowerment.
or at
A
least
fair
in
economy
relative
doesn't
terms.
just give people a safety net, it gives them the tools to build
There
a
are 4
future,
clinics.
and it pays
Mr.
off.
Speaker.
Not
I
just
received
saving
a call
health and
this
social
morning
support
from a local
costs.
journalist
It
for the
could lift
ABC
a huge
saying,
emotional burden
Mr.
from
Paston, are you
families.
aware of the
Start
circumstance
early,
where all 4 clinics
even with small habits,
in Mount Gambier
and you change the
have
trajectory
closed their
of
books?
a life.
Now, I don't know
Teach
if
a
those
kid
opposite
to
understand
understand
what closing
compound
their
interest.
books in a medical clinic represents.
And they start to understand
let me give you a real
their
world
own
example.
potential
Your
to
child's
save,
sick,
to grow,
they're new to our
to
community,
thrive.
and thankfully our community is strong and vibrant.
The
and people are
superannuation
coming to our
guarantee
community.
is a
You
great
pick up the
Labor
phone and
initiative.
you ring clinic number 1. The first question is,
It gives working people a much better,
are you a
dignified
client of this
retirement.
practice? No.
Improving financial
Well, we
know-how
can't see
will
you.
grow that nest egg,
We're full.
and it will protect it.
You pick up the
If
phone,
we're
you ring
serious
clinic
about
number
equality
2.
of opportunity,
You're
we
presented with the
can't
same
leave people to
question.
navigate the modern economy without a
Same
map.
response,
We
same
need a
outcome.
national plan to
Clinic
teach
number
people
3.
how money works,
By this stage, you're probably feeling
not just
a bit
once,
stressed.
but
But you
across the school
ultimately get to
years
clinic
and
number 4
beyond.
and they say, look, sorry, we've
Financial
also closed.
education should be as fundamental as literacy
And those
and
opposites
numeracy.
will say, that's fine.
Labor
We've
has
got a
always
solution
been the
for
party
communities like
of
yours,
opportunity.
Mr. Passon.
Now we have a
Urgent
chance
care
to lead
clinic.
again
We opened one of those in
by
Mount
making
Gambier, and
financial
true you
literacy
did those
a core
opposite.
part
True you did.
of how
To
we
much
empower
celebration and
every
acclaim
Australian.
for the relevant minister, who himself is a South Australian, who I'm
President,
sure is aware
we
of
like
the
to
community
think
of Mount
each
Gambier.
generation leaves things a bit better
But you know what
than they
happened
found them.
in June of
But for many
this
young
year?
Australians, that
The urgent
deal
care clinic in Mount
feels
Gambier
broken.
closed.
Housing
currently
seems out of
closed.
work.
You can get
Housing
on your
seems out of
device
reach.
and
Secure
type
work
urgent
is
care
harder
clinic
to
Mount
find.
Gambier, and it says
And until
temporarily
recently,
closed.
student
Now,
debts were
it's been
rising
temporarily
faster than
closed
wages.
since June.
That's
the
why the
operator
Albanese
that
government
goes opposite
acted.
decided
Cutting student debts to
should
give people
run
a
that
fairer start
facility
and
fell
removing
into
barriers to building more homes.
administration.
Too often progress,
and the administrator, after
progress
running
gets
the
blocked
troubled
by
urgent
those
care
who've already
clinic
made
for
it.
4 months.
Opposing
By the way,
new
this
homes,
urgent care clinic
new
was
industries,
never open
even new ideas.
the hours that it was meant to be open.
Not
but
because
that
it
troubled
costs them
care clinic
anything,
was ultimately closed
but
by
because they don't want things to
the
change.
administrator. So in Mount Gambier,
This isn't
if you're
about
looking to see a
intergenerational
GP,
warfare.
you can't go to the 4
It's about an
clinics.
intergenerational
Their books
handshake.
are closed. You can't go to the urgent care clinic.
Renewing
It's
the promise
literally closed.
that effort will still be
So what do you
rewarded,
do?
that each generation will invest in the next.
I don't know.
So each
Because
generation
when I was
can
asked
share
that question
in
by an
prosperity
ABC
and
journalist today,
progress.
I said, I don't know what you do
But a
right
fair
now,
go isn't
but I can
just
tell
about
you how
housing
we've got
education.
here.
It's also
And he said,
about having a
"How?
future
Why?"
in your own state.
Well, obviously there are
with
issues
jobs
with
that
the
are
urgent care
secure,
clinic. But let me
meaningful
take you
and
back
tied to place.
2020.
In Tasmania, that future
A
depends on
newly
strong
crowned
modern industry.
Labor government is
For
elected.
more than a century,
The
sectors
Minister
like
for Health
mining, metal processing, agriculture,
very
aquaculture
first
and advanced
action
manufacturing
as the
have
federal
been the backbone
Minister
of private sector
for Health,
employment. That must continue, not out of nostalgia,
People of Mount Gambier
but
do
because
want
it's
him
the
to help,
foundation
by the way.
of opportunity.
Health was to
Young people
change
deserve careers,
the
not just casual work.
distribution priority
They deserve to help
area
build the state,
for GPs.
even own part of it,
Now,
not just serve those
how is that relevant,
who are
you might
passing
say?
through.
Well, let me put it to you this way.
That's why we
Our
need to
nation
back
has
the
determined
industries
over the
that
course
back Tasmania
of this
and
debate,
back
debate
Australia.
around GP
By
shortages,
training the
and
workers,
the member for Grey who's
building the
joined us, and
infrastructure
I've
and delivering
he would know
clean,
more than most.
reliable and
This issue
affordable
is as
energy
acute.
they
In
need
fact, it's
to grow.
It's more an issue in his electorate than it's mine. But when it's becoming an issue in places like Mount Gambier,
So,
it's an
yes,
issue everywhere across regional
I
South
stand
Australia.
here
Like I said,
as a proud
Mount Gambier is the
Tasmanian
second largest city in
with
South
a deep
Australia.
sense of duty.
But we, over the course
I
of
don't
this
take
debate,
myself
have
too
determined that
seriously.
certain areas in
But I
our
take this job very
country
seriously.
and in the member for Grey
If I
and
can
my
nudge
case,
things,
in our state,
even a little,
are in need
towards
of
economic
special assistance
empowerment,
when it comes to attracting a GP
intergenerational
workforce.
fairness,
And so we've
and a
created
fair
these,
reward for effort,
if you like, special zones.
then maybe
And what that meant
watching
is
all
that
that
foreign
weird
doctors
parliamentary
could be
TV as a kid
encouraged on visas
was
to
worth
come to
it
Australia, but
after
they
all.
would need to practice
Thank you.
inside those zones. So as I said, the very first action for the Minister for Health in 2022 in his his official capacity was to change that priority area distribution list. And what he did was he included Adelaide in that priority list. And on that day, the day that it came into effect, 2 of the 4 clinics I've mentioned earlier in my contribution, their office managers rang me and said, "Tony, we just want to tell you what the real-world impact is on the decision that's just been taken." And I said, "Don't tell me. Doctors have tendered their resignations." Exactly what had occurred. Because, of course, the only thing tying those foreign doctors to our community was the obligation that they practice in those areas. That was the point of the legislative instrument. But if you make it that Mount Gambier, Millicent, any other regional town starting with M that might be in the member for Grey's electorate is treated the same way as Adelaide, then of course the small number of GPs that we have relative to our population size are going to make that decision. Melrose, there we go. And you know where they went, these doctors? They went to Marion. Marion in Adelaide, that very, very disadvantaged local community. I mean, please. But that is the consequence here. Those opposite will get up, as the member for Maribyrnong just did, and give us a fantastic dissertation about universal healthcare and how important it is and how this was a great Labor legacy. What the member for Maribyrnong doesn't say that over the term of the last government, bulk billing rates actually went down. Now, I'm loath to mention bulk billing rates in my contribution because almost no one in my electorate is able to access a bulk billed GP consultation. They're very difficult to get hold of. The reality is the majority of people pay gaps, and in some cases very substantial gaps. And personally, I think it's a real flaw in this system that I could be a well-heeled individual living in a well-heeled suburb of Adelaide and drive 15 minutes to a bulk billing clinic. And I could be one of the poorest South Australians living in a very marginalised community, a long way from services otherwise, in a community like Mount Gambier where the urgent care clinic is closed and I have to fork out a $40, $50, $60, $70 gap. Someone needs to explain to me where the equity of that is, because it doesn't feel that equal or equitable to me. Now, far be it from being that member of parliament who grumpily points out all the problems, I'm going to suggest a solution if I could. And that is to undo what the Minister for Health did in 2022. He stripped Mount Gambier of its special status, and as a result, GPs left that community, a community that, as I've said previously, is the second largest in South Australia.
Senator's moment, and I'll call the clock.
Remove Adelaide from that
Business of Senate order today, resumption of debate on a motion moved by Senator Bragg to disallow the tax assessment
shouldn't
to
be
developments determination 2024.
It's unfair to ask communities
Senator Roberts, you're seeking the call.
to effectively
Thank you, Deputy President. Senator Bragg's disallowance seeks to throw a spanner in the works of the build-to-rent scheme. That's a very good thing, and One Nation will be wholeheartedly supporting.
The Minister for Health can do.
Foreign corporations used to pay a 30% withholding tax on housing investments like build-to-rent.
The reopening
Labor cut that in half to 15%.
Urgent care clinic in Mount Gambier.
Let's be clear.
As I said,
this Labor government said to foreign corporate landlords like BlackRock, State Street,
but
Vanguard,
let's get
First
it done
State,
and get it done quickly.
Labor said
As
to
an
them
aside,
that we'll
I
cut
should
the amount of
tell
tax
you
you
that
pay
the local
in half.
PHN, when they told me that they were
Forget
going
the
to
Australian
allocate
dream
it,
of owning your own
to a
home.
particular individual,
Labor's dream is that you live in a stack and pack shoebox
allocating it to an
paying
existing
rent to
GP practice
forever. While those
with
foreign
limited
corporations
doctor
pay
numbers
less
was
tax
going to lead
than you do.
to challenges. And indeed, that's
what
happened.
build-to-rent means.
But
whenever you hear build-to-rent,
the
remember renting forever
of
to
the
a foreign
urgent care
corporation,
clinic
a foreign
in Mount
corporate
Gambier.
landlord, a foreign global
thing,
wealth investment fund.
And this is
They'll build
directed
homes for
at
sure.
everyone
And Australians
in this
will
place.
never, ever own
There
them.
are so
Never.
many young people
It's build build-to-rent
studying
forever.
in regional South Australia.
From the committee report into the Treasury Laws Amendment Bill to Rent Bill 2024
in his
and Capital Works
communities.
Bill to
I certainly
Rent
know
Misuse
some
Tax
of mine.
Bill 2024.
I know how
from the
passionate they
provisions.
are
The bill
about
provisions
health
would include
and health-related
reducing the
studies.
final withholding tax rate on
But too
eligible
many
fund
of them,
payments,
even
distributions of
with
rental income and capital
high
gains
ATARs,
from eligible managed investment
culled
trusts,
away
trust
from the
investments
process of studying
from 30%
medicine
to 15%
because they're
starting from the 1st of
subjected
July 2024.
to subjective testing.
So there you go. A tax cut in
Interviews
half
in
for those
inverted
global
commas.
corporate predatory investments.
The
Who own
GANSAT
investors who own almost
testing
everything
for
and are determined
aptitude
to own
and these
everything.
things.
I'll say that again. Who own almost everything
Having
and are
grown up in a
determined
regional
to own
community,
everything.
having left
Next,
it to
the draft
study,
legislation was adjusted as a result of
because
this
the
consultation
degree
to ensure the government's
I
policy
wanted to pursue
objective
wasn't
of
available in the
incentivising
community I grew
foreign
up in.
investment in
I can
BTR,
tell
built to
you
rent,
that the
including
strongest
affordable housing
links are those
supply, is
familial
achieved. Objective of incentivising foreign
friend-based
investment in built to
relationships
rent.
that draw you
Foreign
back to a
investment.
community. The member for Grey.
They are admitting
one
that the
example.
objective of the bill is incentivising
I'd
foreign and
suggest to the
predatory
member for
corporations
Barker
into
another.
owning your home.
Having got my degree, I was
The Property
working in
Council
Adelaide.
advised the
All my
15%
friends
tax
were
rate
living
for investment in
the
housing
regions.
is already
At one point,
available
I simply
to
walked
Australian
in,
investors.
to the law firm I was
The managed
working in, sat down
investment
with
trust
the partner I was
withholding tax
working
rate
for,
applies to withholding
and
tax
said,
that
"I'm
goes
off
back
mine."
to overseas
And he
predators,
said, "For how long?"
parasites,
And I
investors.
said, "Forever."
Yet foreign
And he
investors
said,
can also partner,
"Don't be
capital
silly,
partner
you'll
with
be
Australian
a partner of this
investors.
law firm one day."
That
And
is
I
the
said,
most telling part of all.
"That's not
This
where I
bill
wanna
only
go,
changed the tax
Chair.
treatment of
I wanna
foreign,
be home
predatory,
with my
multinational corporations. That's all.
And so I tell that
Nothing for
example,
Australian
not
companies
dissimilar
could do
to
it.
the member for
Foreign
Grey's
companies paid a
experience,
penalty. That's a good
because
thing.
young people who grow up in a regional community
Yet the Labor
are much
Party of
more
Australia
likely
changed that.
to return to
You
it
and the government
after
changed
studies.
that.
So I appreciate
Is Labor the
that
party for
we're
Australia?
doing our best to educate
Or are they
young
the party
people
for
in
global
medicine and
foreign
other
corporations?
health disciplines in
Build to
regional
rent
communities, and that
answers
is
that
admirable.
question clearly.
That is admirable. We should do
Clearly
more
they
of it.
are for the foreign
But the
corporations
very
like
first
BlackRock,
thing you need
Vanguard,
to do,
State Street,
if
First
you
State.
want more
My nation, though,
rural
is for Australians
generalists
owning their own home.
to return to practising in the
I'm
country.
going to do something a little
is
unusual
give
and
the
quote
opportunity
extensively
to
Senator
country
Bragg's
kids.
dissenting report
Give
on the
the
Build to Rent
opportunity
bill,
to
an
more
outstanding
country
report.
kids, because I'm not
I hope you
saying
don't
that
mind,
every
Senator
single
Bragg.
one of them will return.
It goes to the very
and
heart of
become
what's wrong with the
a
new
local
Labour
GP,
Party. Firstly,
or
Build to
even
Rent has had
better,
minimal cut-through
a
in Australia
specialist
because their
living
tax
in
settings are
regional South
designed to
Australia
favour
and
individual
operating,
mum and dad investors,
their
not
practice in
institutions.
regional South Australia.
That's appropriate.
But I'm confident you
This
massively
legislation seeks
increase
to tip the scales in
chances
favour of
that
institutions
taking
through
place.
tax concessions in order
And
to
I
make
think
Build
it's
to Rent
something that
projects
we
profitable
need to
for
do
industry super
more.
funds and foreign fund managers.
And there's
Labor
no
thinks
paucity, can I tell you, of
that
young people
institutions need a
who
leg
are
up
smart,
over Australian
with the right
first-time
attitude
buyers.
and aptitude,
Why?
living in regional communities.
Dr
who
Murray
want
was critical
to
of the
do
bill's attempted
this.
perversion
So it's
of our tax
incumbent on
arrangements.
all of us.
Quote,
We
it's
can't
not clear to me
solve
why
this
local investors
problem
shouldn't be advantaged
long-term
over foreign
without
investors in
more
Australian housing.
GPs.
In Australian housing.
End my contribution
I
by
don't see
saying,
that
as I
there's
said
a good
at the
argument
beginning,
for levelling the playing field
cheaper
there.
medicines
It's not clear to me.
is something
If
that
the
has
intention is to
bipartisan
attract super
support.
funds into this,
I don't want to end up in
why,
a situation
why
where
owning
the
your own
only
home via
healthcare
your super
available
fund
in
and
some
renting your own home
communities is your
from your
local
super fund
pharmacist,
is better
but
than
that
owning
is
your
the
own
case
home and
right
using
now.
that money to
I
buy
began
what is the
that
best asset to own in
new
retirement.
arrival to Mount Gambier,
Just
bringing with a
like
sick
one
child
nation
around
policy.
for 4 clinics and being told there's no
At the public
room
hearing,
in.
the Association
Right
of
now, the only
Superannuation
place they
Funds
can
of
go
Australia,
is their
ASFA,
pharmacy. I'm
suggested
glad
that
they
Australians
can,
would
but
prefer
it's not good
BlackRock
enough.
and CBUS to be the
Member
nation's
for
landlord.
Gilmore.
Really?
Thank you,
You would?
Deputy Speaker. Well, cheaper
And describe
medicines
mum and dad
are
investors as
literally
undertaking a
saving lives.
hobby
Cheaper
activity.
medicines mean Australians doing it tough don't
How
have to
condescending,
choose
how arrogant.
between filling their shopping cart,
Do you
filling
think
up
the
their
Australian
petrol
people want to
tank,
rent their house
or
from a
filling
super fund?
script. The
Mr.
plan
Clare
to make
says,
cheaper medicines
I think that
even
they would
cheaper
be very happy
is a
with
tangible
institutionally
cost
owned
of living
residential
measure
property
being delivered
where there
by
is
the
an option of
Albanese
having
Labor
longer-term
government.
tenancies
We are
rather
delivering
than the
cheaper
more
medicines
typical
for
in-the-market
all Australians
situation
because the size of
where there is
your
a lack
bank
of assurance of
shouldn't
continuity
determine the
of
quality
tenancy
of
because
your
it's a
healthcare.
small-scale hobby
I'm
activity for
delighted to
individual
be part
landlords.
of a government that is delivering the largest cut to the cost of
This
medicines
is the view
in the
of a vested
history
interest.
of the pharmaceutical
Most
benefit
Australians
scheme.
would not
We're
agree with this
winding back the
proposal.
clock 20
Other
years
witnesses did
because
not share
from the
ASFA's
1st of
view.
January next year,
Grounded Community
PBS
Land Trust
prescriptions
Advocacy
will
told the
cost
committee,
Australians no
are you
more than
concerned
$25,
that we are seeing a
which is the
corporatisation
cost
of
of a
housing in
script
Australia?
in
Mr.
2004.
Fitzgerald, quote, absolutely.
I'm proud to be part of a
this is
government that
delivering
has
horrifying
introduced
results in the Northern
60-day
Hemisphere.
prescriptions,
And this
saving
legislation makes
time
no
and
account
money
of that.
for millions of
what's
Australians
actually
with an
happening.
ongoing health
It
condition.
perplexes me
And I'm
that this
so
government,
proud
which
that
purports
this
to be in
government
support of
has
Labor
frozen the cost of PBS
as
medicines
workers,
with
is allowing
co-payments
rent
not rising with
maximisation strategies
inflation
to come
for
through
all Australians
unabated.
for the first time
Yes, he
in
went on to say,
25
I agree.
years.
Pushing mum and
This
dad
means
investors out of the housing
pensioners and
market will
concession
result
card holders
in
in
less
my electorate of
competition,
Gilmore, which has one of
an
the
oligopoly
highest
for the
number
big
of aged
fellas.
pensioners of
What
any
we're seeing in
electorate
the Northern
country,
Hemisphere is a
will
horrific new
continue
software
to
program
benefit
called
with their
Yield
PBS
Star,
medicines
which in
to
Atlanta
cost
coordinates rental
$7.70
increases
until
of
2030.
81%.
Residents on the New South Wales
for
South Coast have
81% of
already
rental
benefited
properties.
from
The Board
Labor's
of
cheaper
Supervisors in San
medicines,
Francisco has
saving
now banned this as a
$12.5
monopolistic
million
practice.
on the
If you
cost
want to
of
bring
their
it in.
scripts during our time
There's
in
just
government.
nothing in this
Our
legislation that even
60-day
prepares us for what's
scripts have been
coming.
a huge
Nothing
success,
in this
with more than
legislation that even prepares us for what is
2.3
coming.
million scripts
End of quote from Mr.
dispensed in
Fitzgerald.
Gilmore. People in
The
my
housing
electorate
next,
and
the
right
Housing
across
Industry
the country
Association pointed
who are
to the
living
importance
with
of Australia's
conditions
housing
like high
market maintaining a
cholesterol,
focus on individual ownership.
osteoporosis, diabetes, epilepsy,
But isn't
glaucoma,
it the case that
and
the character of the housing
Parkinson's
market in
disease
Australia
are
is largely
saving
focused on
money
individuals?
and saving
Do you think that's a
time.
good or a bad
and
design
fewer
feature?
trips to their doctor
Mr.
and
Reardon said,
pharmacist
quote, in
means
answer,
freeing up more GP
I think that is a very
appointments.
positive outcome
And we
with the
know how
association
busy
and
our
connection
health
with
workers
home
are,
and with location and a
especially
sense of
in
place
rural
and purpose,
regional
all
areas
of those
like mine.
dynamics.
Deputy
Reinforcing
Speaker, it's
what we
Aussie
already
families,
know
including
and
children,
what Senator
that
Bragg
are
has already
benefiting
discussed.
from our cheaper medicines.
All the evidence
From
that goes
April
on
1,
shows that people who
children
own their
with
own
brain
home
cancer
are
have
far
had
less
access to
likely to be
affordable
incarcerated
treatment options
and more likely
under
to be
the
gainfully
PBS.
employed.
Glioma
All of the evidence
occurs in the
shows
brain
positive
and spinal
economic, social
cord
and cultural
and is the
outcomes.
most common cancer
Personal
of the central nervous
responsibility,
system in children.
a cornerstone and
Symptoms
foundation
can include
of a safe
seizures,
and
headaches,
productive
vision
society.
changes, memory
Personal
loss, poor balance
responsibility
and difficulty
enables
walking.
and is the basis for a
Around
safe and productive
130
society.
Australian children each
Australians,
year
next
are
quote
expected
from
to
Senator
benefit
Bragg's
from the listing
report.
of Tafanlar
Australians
and
are not
the
interested in
which work
subsidising
together to
institutional
slow
investors.
down or stop
When asked what
cancer cells
organisations
from
would be the key
growing.
beneficiaries of
Without
build-to-rent
the PBS
tax
subsidy,
concessions,
these families
Treasury
could be,
confirmed that
could be
foreign
burdened with paying
fund
more than
managers would be at the centre. Treasury confirmed,
$178,000 for just 1 year of treatment.
quote, there are a lot of foreign
Imagine the
investors using the managed
devastation of
investment
having
trust
your
because of
child
the withholding
diagnosed
tax
with brain
concessions
cancer,
and other
having
benefits
to
from
quit
using that
your
structure.
job, pay medical
But there can
costs,
also be
and
domestic
also
investors
pay
using
for
the managed
travel and
investment trust.
accommodation
They just
if you
get a
live
different
in a
tax
regional
regime.
area like mine.
Those investors will
Then
be
having
working
to
in
find
partnership with
tens of
commercial
thousands of
developers
dollars
to
for
develop these
medicines
buildings.
to save your child's life.
CBA Super has
What an
previously committed to scaling up in the
absolutely
rent and
massive
build-to-rent
help
sector,
these
announcing a
PBS
plan to
listings
scale
are
up
for
its
parents
portfolio
dealing
to
with
approximately
trauma
$2
of
billion
caring
in
for a child
apartments.
undergoing brain cancer
Some of the
treatment.
most alarming evidence from the
From
public
March
hearing
1,
was that the
Australians
passing of this
with
bill could
Cushing's
see
syndrome,
Australian
leukemia,
taxpayers
and women needing
subsidising foreign
contraception
governments
and menopause
in their
support
investment in their housing
also
market.
have access to new and expanded cheaper medicines under the PBS.
Australian taxpayers could be
Previously, there
subsidising
has
foreign
been
governments
no
in their
PBS
investment in our
alternative
housing
for the
market.
treatment of Cushing's
Dr.
syndrome,
Murray again
and the
reborn,
listing is expected to benefit around
I find it
75
interesting because we've already
patients
got
each year.
foreign investment funds
Without this
doing
subsidy,
build-to-rent.
they might pay
That's
around
what's even funnier is that the largest one is a foreign government. We've got the Abu Dhabi Investment Council, who owns the Smith Collective on the Gold Coast, which is 1,251 build-to-rent dwellings, and we're now proposing to offer them a better tax treatment for something they're already doing
were paying around
through a foreign government.
$229,000
I find that a bizarre outcome of this proposed bill.
Osteoporosis
It
is a
bizarre.
chronic disease which makes your bones more likely to break.
Approaches like build-to-rent endeavour to emulate the corporate housing model, which has seen a downturn in the United States housing
will
market.
benefit around 9,000 patients
Fund
each
managers
year.
have become the
Without
predominant
the
landlords in the United
subsidy,
States,
patients
and I'll
may pay
digress from
around
Senator Bragg's
$4,800
dissenting report for a
per
minute.
course of treatment.
The bankers
now, eligible
bankers in
patients
the United
will pay a
States
maximum of $31.60
said in the
per
1920s that their
script,
dream
or
is
just
through a combination
$7.70
of
with a concession
predatory
card.
behaviour and legislation
from January 1,
to get a monopoly
they'll pay no
and
more
own every
than
house that they can in
$25
the
per
country,
script.
to control people.
Omjara,
Once
a cancer
people
drug
have
discovered
their-
by Melbourne
have
scientists,
their
is one of
residents at
only
stake,
a handful
then
of
they are
Australian
easily
drug
controlled.
discoveries to be approved
Fund
for
managers
use
have
in
become
the
the
United
predominant
States
landlords
and
in the
Australia,
US.
and
According
is
to
now
the US
PBS
Government
funded.
General Accounting
It is now
Accountability
available on the
Accounting Office,
PBS for the
Large
first
institutional
time to treat
investors emerged following the global
myelofibrosis,
financial
a rare
crisis,
and debilitating
purchasing
bone
foreclosed
marrow
homes at auction
cancer
in bulk and
patients.
converting them into rental
Around
housing.
1,900 patients
In 2023,
accessed
corporate
a
housing
comparable
funds held
treatment for this
$1
condition
trillion
in 2024.
US dollars in assets.
And before
in Atlanta,
the PBS subsidy,
Charlotte and
they were
Jacksonville,
paying
institutional investors
around
owned 25%, $18% and 21% of the rental
treatment.
stock, respectively.
Deputy Speaker,
That's
after
what you're
losing my
wanting here.
dad to coronary heart
We don't want
disease
it.
when I was just
This
21
corporate
years
housing
old,
model,
I know it is
corporate housing
vitally
model,
important that
in order to
Australians have
generate a
ready
return on
and
investment
affordable
for
access
institutional
to the
investors,
latest
relies on
treatments.
individuals being
Sadly,
locked
heart disease
into a
is
cycle of
Australia's
perpetual
number
renting.
one killer, with one life
Perpetual
claimed
renting, locked
every 12
in.
minutes. Cardiomyopathy
Exactly what we've
covers
been
a
warning
number of
for
diseases
the last
that
5
affect
years.
the heart's ability
There
to
is a
pump
growing
blood around
consensus
the
in the
body,
United States that
and
this model has
if left
failed
undiagnosed
and is hurting
and
prospective
untreated,
first-time
can lead
buyers.
to heart failure.
Lawmakers from
That's
both sides
why
of politics
I'm
are now
so pleased
introducing
that we've added
legislation to
2
limit
new
institutional
treatments,
investment accordingly.
Camzyos and Vindamax,
What's
to
happening?
the PBS, which will
This has
benefit
failed.
around 5,000 people
While the
each
United
year.
States is moving
These
away from
life-changing
corporate housing,
medicines are now
the
more
Australian
affordable
Labor Party
thanks
is
to the
forcing
Albanese
Australians
Labor
into it.
government. I'm so delighted
Well,
also to be part
Senator
of
Bragg,
the first
I'm
majority
not
woman
ashamed to admit we
federal
probably
government
couldn't have
in
written it better
Australia's
ourselves.
history. And proud
Thank
we
you.
are delivering
Build to
more
rent
choice,
is an abomination
lower
that destroys
cost
the
and
Australian
better
dream of owning
healthcare
your
for
own
women.
home.
With new and amended
One
PBS
nation-
listings for women's cancer
One
medicines,
nation raised this cruel
contraception,
reality years ago. This
endometriosis,
cruel reality
menopause,
years ago.
and
One nation
IVF
rejects
treatments.
making Australians
For too
forever
long,
renters to a
women have
cartel of
struggled
greedy
to get
foreign
support
corporations.
in health
Let's see if you
systems that
repeat
were
that.
not built for them.
One nation
The
rejects
Albanese
making
Labor
Australians
government
forever
is
renters to a
changing
cartel
that.
of greedy
Women have asked
foreign
our government to take
corporations,
their healthcare
predatory
seriously,
parasitic corporations,
and we have
parasitic
listened.
predators
We
driving the
know
World
that
Economic
women
Forum
often
and
have
United
complex
Nations agenda
and expensive
on
health
your
needs
conscience.
across different
All
stages
Australians
of
should be
their
able to work
lives.
hard.
These
One day own their own
conditions that
slice of this
impact
great,
on their ability
big,
to
wonderful
work,
country with
raise
so much
a
potential.
family, and even
Only
stay
one
in
nation
relationships.
has the policy to make
a
this
new
real for everyday
contraceptive pill
Australians.
hasn't been listed on the PBS in more than
Order.
30 years.
Senator Whittaker.
From the 1st of March, some of the most
Thank you,
commonly
Deputy
used
President.
contraceptive pills,
I rise
Yaz and
to speak in
Yasmin,
opposition of
means
this
1 in 3
motion
Australian
from
women
Senator
aged 18
Bragg,
to 39 who use the
because what
combined
we have
oral
here is
contraceptive
just
pill
yet
will
another
save hundreds of
housing
dollars each
stunt
year.
from Senator Bragg
On
that
May 1,
attempts to
Slinda,
deny
a progesterone-only
everyday
pill
Australians
that can
the
be
right
used
to
by
safe
women who
and
cannot take
affordable
contraceptives
housing.
with estrogens was
This is
listed
the
on
second
the
time
PBS
in as many
for the
months we've
first
had to
time
come in
as a
here
new
and
contraceptive
remind
option.
those
More than
opposite of
100,000
some basic
Australian
truths
women
about
will
housing
benefit from this
in
listing
Australia.
each year.
Last
who,
month, Senator
without
Bragg told us
subsidy,
that the
might
Australian
pay more
dream
than
of home ownership
$250
is slipping
for a
away.
year of
This
treatment.
week,
And
he's
after more
called
than 20
our
years,
policies
3
on
new
housing
menopausal
crazy
hormone
ideas
therapies
and
will
has
be
vowed
listed on
to
the
stand
PBS,
in the way
which will
of real
benefit
progress
about
to tackle the housing
150,000
challenges we're
women
seeing
who
across the
otherwise
country.
might pay
And now,
between
with this
$400
disallowance,
and
he wants to
$670
raise
a year.
taxes on
We
builders
know
and
about
rip away
1 in 7
incentives that are
Australian
unlocking
women
tens
suffer
of thousands
from
of new rental
endometriosis.
homes.
And it is just fantastic
The Liberals
that they
have
now
no
have
credibility
access to
on housing.
Ryoco, a new treatment option for patients who
Liberals are
cannot get
housing
adequate relief
hypocrites.
from other hormonal
And
treatments
Australians
and
can see
painkillers.
right through it.
Without the
They
subsidy,
know the
women could
facts.
pay more than
Under the Liberals,
$2,700
housing
for a
affordability
year
went
of treatment.
backwards.
For some
They
women, one
slashed
of their
investment,
greatest
left
dreams
supply
is
entirely to
becoming
the
a
market
mother,
and did
to
nothing
face the
meaningful
double
for
burden
renters.
of fertility
They did not
issues
build homes.
and financial
They
barriers
didn't even
to
have a
IVF
housing
can
minister
be
at the cabinet
heartbreaking.
table.
We are changing that.
And since they were booted
Australian
out of
women
government by the
undergoing
Australian
IVF
people
now
in
have access to
2022,
earlier and
they
more
have
affordable
done
fertility
nothing
treatment.
but stand
With the
in the way
Albanese
of
Labor government
meaningful
funding the
action
use
to get
of
more people
Pergoveris from the
into
earliest
homes.
stage of the IVF
They have
journey.
opposed the
Sadly,
Housing Australia
1 in
Future Fund.
7 Australian
They've
women
argued to
will be
scrap our
diagnosed
housing
with breast
target.
cancer
And now
in
they're
their
trying to
lifetime.
stand in the way of
Last
our
year, more than
build-to-rent scheme.
3,000 Australians died
Instead
from
of
breast
working
cancer.
constructively
That's
with
9
us to
people
tackle this
every day.
issue,
It's really great
instead
news that
they
Australians
stand
diagnosed diagnosed with a type of metastatic breast cancer now have access
The matter before us today
to
relates to legislation
life-prolonging
passed
treatment
last
under the
year to
PBS.
boost
And
build-to-rent
HER2 provides
housing.
a new treatment option for patients
New
who
rentals
have this
with 5-year
advanced stage of
leases and
cancer
no-fault
that
evictions.
cannot be removed surgically or has
Ultimately,
spread to
it's
other
about
parts of the
increasing
body.
rental supply
Around
and giving tenants
1,700
more
Australians
certainty.
are expected to benefit
Independent
from this
experts
listing
have said
each year,
it strikes
who
the
without
right balance,
subsidy might pay
and
more than
industry estimates show it will support
$160,000
80,000
for a course
new
of treatment.
homes across the
Ovarian
country.
cancer
Let me
is
say
the
that
sixth
again.
most common cause of death
80,000
from
new
cancer
homes
among women in
for
Australia.
renters.
And tragically, only half
Are
of the
these
women
guys serious?
diagnosed with ovarian cancer will
They
survive
sta-
5
they
years
propose
after
to
diagnosis.
stand in the way
Symptoms
of
can often be
80,000
confused with other health
homes
conditions,
for
so many
Australians.
women are diagnosed with advanced disease
To
when the
stand in the
cancer has
way
spread and can be
of
difficult to
affordable
treat.
rental
The listing
housing
of
for
Lynparza on the
Australians who need it.
PBS has proved an additional
It's really
treatment
no
option
wonder that the
for around
coalition went
200
backwards
women
at the
each
election
year.
in May.
Without subsidy, Naira
Senator Bragg
would cost
claims our
patients
build-to-rent
around
reforms are a foreign investor tax cut,
$130,000
promote
per
the
course of
Australian
treatment.
nightmare of
These
lifelong
listings build on
renting.
Labor's record $573
That's
million
pure fear-mongering.
investment in women's health
We
and will
know
improve the
that in
quality
order
of
to
life
tackle
for
this
hundreds of
housing
thousands of
challenge, we
Australian
have to pull
women.
every lever.
Adding these
We
medicines
must
to the
do
PBS
everything
will
we
provide
can.
doctors with more options
Build-to-rent
care
doesn't
for their
stop anyone
patients
buying
and ensure
a home.
Australians can
It
access
builds
the
new
latest
rental
treatments.
supply,
Reducing
which
the general
we
patient
desperately
co-payment
need.
from
And after a
$31.60
decade of
to
liberal
$25
neglect on
will
housing,
benefit
threatening to
Australians
rip
now
away
and
the
into the
incentives
future.
to drive
This is more than 20%
80,000
cut in the
rental
maximum
homes
cost of
is
PBS
the
medicines,
real
which
nightmare.
will save Australians more than
To qualify for these
$200
tax
million
settings,
each
developments
year.
must meet
4 out of
strict
5
conditions.
PBS medicines will become
At least
cheaper
50 dwellings
because of
under
our
single
government's
ownership for 15 years,
$689
minimum
million
5-year leases as the
investment.
default,
Pensioners
at
and
least
concession card
10%
holders
of dwellings
will continue
offered at
to benefit
affordable
from the freeze
rental rates
to the
capped
cost
below
of their
market,
PBS medicines,
stronger
with the
renter
cost
protections
frozen
and
at
including bans
$7.70
on
until
no-fault evictions.
2030. The Albanese
Its
Labor
targeted
government has
policy
committed
to
to keeping
deliver
medicines cheaper for
long-term rental
Australians,
supply and
helping to
stability.
ease the cost of living burden
And this
on
is just one
households
part
and
of
helping
Labor's
people live
$43
healthier
billion
lives for
Homes
longer.
for Australia
I
plan,
support
because
this
we
bill
know
because
to
there's
tackle
no
the housing
doubt
crisis,
for many years,
a
meeting the
crisis that's
healthcare
come
needs
from a
of people
decade of
in
neglect from
my
those
electorate of
opposite,
Gilmore
takes
has been a real
work
challenge.
from every
I know that,
angle.
and that's why I've been working really
And
hard
that's
to improve
just
our
what we're
local
doing.
health services
Building
as
more
part of our
homes,
wider commitment
getting more
to
people
strengthening
into their
Medicare.
first homes,
I'm proud to have
getting more
lobbied
people into
for and
affordable
opened the doors
homes,
of the Batemans
making
Bay
renting
Medicare
more
Urgent
affordable,
Care Clinic,
making
which has
renting
provided more than
fairer,
17,000
the most
patients
comprehensive
with free,
housing
urgent
agenda
but
in a
non-life-threatening care
generation.
over the past 20 months.
We
We're
are
extending the
investing at
hours
every
of the Batemans
stage.
Bay Clinic.
Just
and tomorrow,
yesterday, the Prime
tenders, or
Minister
this
announced
afternoon,
we will
actually, I think
bring
it's just gone
forward
out,
our
tenders are being
plan
called for the
to
operation
deliver
of the new
5%
federally funded
first
Medicare
home
Urgent Care
buyers
Clinic
deposits
in Nowra.
to the 1st
It's
of October.
so important to provide
We're
free
delivering the
access to
biggest
healthcare
boost
for
to
people
rental
with
assistance
just their
in
Medicare
3
card.
decades.
The urgent care
Building
clinics take so much pressure
55,000
off our
social
busy
and
hospital,
affordable homes
emergency
and
departments
record
and local
investment in
GPs.
crisis
We've opened a
accommodation,
walk-in
setting
free
an
Medicare
ambitious
mental health
target
centre
of
at Maria,
1.2
and we're elevating the
million
Nowra
new,
mental health
well-located
hub to a
homes
full
in 5
Medicare
years,
mental health centre,
training
which
more
will provide
tradies in
locals in the
construction
Shoalhaven
and attracting
with the
more
free
of
mental
them too,
health
with our
care they or
$10,000
their family
incentive
need.
payment.
And it's so important that
We're
we have
streamlining
headspace to support
planning,
our young
cutting
people
red tape,
at Nowra, Batemans
and we're
Bay,
supporting
and most
modern
recently
methods
at
like
Kiama.
prefab
As a
construction
woman and
to
a
speed
mum,
up
I was
builds
so
where we
pleased to
can.
have secured funding for the
All
new
of this is
Southeastern
about one thing:
Endometriosis and
more
pelvic
homes
pain clinic
for
at Milton,
Australians.
which is really
Easier
helping
to
women
buy,
from right around the
easier to
South
rent,
Coast access the care
easier
they
to
need
build
with
more
just their
homes.
Medicare card.
Because
I'm really
finding
proud
an
to see
affordable
this
place to
clinic
live
helping
should
women
not
in our
be
community,
a struggle.
and it's paving the way
Whether
for an
you're a
additional
renter,
32 clinics
whether you're a
opening
homeowner,
across the
we
country
are
that will
standing
provide specialist
with you to
support
make
for conditions
housing
like
more
endometriosis,
available and more
IBS,
affordable.
prolapse, and heavy or painful periods.
Senator
In other
Bragg has brought
exciting
2
news,
motions
construction is
on
underway
housing to this
on
chamber in 2
Australia's
months.
first Aboriginal-owned
He spends a lot of
birthing on
time
country
talking
facility, which will
about
provide a
our
culturally safe
housing
midwifery
agenda.
service on
But
the
not
South
once
Coast. As the
Senator
member for
Bragg put
Gilmore,
forward
I
a
am certainly
credible
proud to
plan
have
to
delivered
build a
many health
single
services for my
home.
region, because healthcare
And
is
his colleagues
something
are much
that
the
I've
same.
always been passionate about.
All we get
and will
is
continue
negativity
to fight
and
for.
obstruction.
And I call
But
the member for
Australians
line.
deserve better than that.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Australians who are
I rise
renting
today to speak in
or
favour
looking
of
to
the
rent
National
deserve
Health
better than
Amendment,
that.
Cheaper Medicines Medicines Bill
Australians who want to buy their first
As I've said
home
many
deserve
times during the
better
election
than
campaign,
that.
And since I
better
was
than
elected,
the negativity
there are more
that we're
instances
seeing
than not
from
where
those
this
opposite.
place comes together
Only Labor
to agree
has
on
the
good
plan,
policy
the
and good
commitment
initiatives.
and the determination
Too often
to
our
deliver
work in this
more
place is judged
homes, and
on
that
the
is why I
argy-bargy
urge
of
the
question
chamber to
time.
defeat this motion.
This breeds cynicism, a chasm that this parliament must try
Thank
and
you,
bridge.
Deputy President.
This bill
Deputy
and
President,
this
the
policy
Liberals and
initiative
Nationals
is one of
say
those
that they
occasions
want more
where
homes, but they
MPs from
keep
across the
standing
chamber
in the way.
are coming together,
And they
I'm
have
pleased to be
form.
able to
I was
lend
here
my
in the
support
first term of
for
government
cheaper
in the other
medicines for
place,
Australians.
and I recall
We are
distinctly
fortunate in this
how
country to have the
the Liberals,
pharmaceutical benefit
Nationals
scheme
and the Greens political
and,
party
for the most
paired
part,
up
the means
and
to pay
delayed
for it,
the Housing
something I hope
Australia Future Fund.
Australians
They
never
delayed
take for granted.
that fund, $10
There are
billion
many
to
places in the
build
world where the cost of
social
medicines
and affordable
is
homes.
out of
They
reach for
delayed
their
it for a
citizenry
year. Now,
and
Senator
out of
Bragg
reach for their
stood up
governments
here
to
in this
afford to
chamber
pay
and
for
said
it.
that it's
Here
only
in
it's been
Australia,
operating for 2
over
years and hasn't built a single home.
5,200
In
medicines
fact,
are subsidised
the Housing Australia
by the
Future Fund
Australian
went
government
live in
to
September
make them
24.
affordable and
September
accessible
24. That was
when
the first
and
round
where
of
they are
funding.
needed.
It has had
Under the
2 rounds of
PBS,
funding,
patients
and right now
contribute a general
there are
co-payment
28,000
towards
homes
the cost of their
that are
PBS
either in planning
subsidised
or in
medicine,
construction.
with the Commonwealth paying
Not just
the
due to that,
remainder
but due
of
to
the
other
cost.
measures as
This
well.
year, the co-payment is currently $31.60
The second
for general
important
patients,
housing
with this
program
bill
that they
seeking
delayed,
to reduce the
in the same sort of
PBS
strategy,
general
they
co-payment
palled
to
up with their new best
$25.
buddies, the Greens political
The
party,
amendments
was
contained
the
in this
Help to
bill
Buy
are in
scheme.
line
Help
with
to
the
Buy.
commitment of the coalition
Help
at the
to Buy
last
was
election
that
to
can was kicked down the road.
guarantee
I
cheaper
remember it
medicines
distinctly because
and
I told
lower
my
the
entire
PBS
electorate about
co-payment
it,
to $25.
and they weren't happy.
It
So
will ensure
you are
Australians have
gifting
more
me
affordable
another
access
one.
to medicines
Thank you,
and
because
treatments
I
they
will be
need
telling
at a time when
everyone in Victoria
healthcare has never
about
been
this
more
little
expensive.
stunt.
As a 54-year-old woman experiencing
you kicked
menopause,
that can down the
my
road. Help to
hormone
Buy was
replacement
designed
treatment
for
medicine
the people
has
really
become a
at the bottom of
godsend
the
to
pile.
function
People
like
with
a
the most
normal
modest
person.
incomes.
Before I went on
Cleaners.
HRT,
People
night
who
sweats
have
and
never
hot
ever
flushes were
dreamt
the
of
bane
having
of my
a
existence,
home over their heads.
keeping me awake through the
And
night,
Help to Buy was designed
tired
for
during
them.
the day,
And
and a little panicked
the Liberals, the Nationals
as
and
when
the
the
Greens
heat
took
would
it upon
rise through my
themselves
body,
to delay
distracting
that
me
scheme.
from the work at hand. It was embarrassing
Help to Buy
and at times
enables
debilitating,
homeowners
but
to
with
enter
my
the market with as
medication,
little as a 2%
these symptoms
deposit,
no
with the
longer
government
haunt
stumping
me.
up 30 to
Around
40%
3 million
of
women
the
are in
equity.
the
So you need a
age
very
bracket
low
to be in menopause.
deposit,
So
as
the
well as very
menopause
low
medicines
monthly
listed on the
payments.
PBS,
Now,
including
we're
the
getting the
2 I
states to sign
take,
on
which
to
were
Help to
only
Buy,
added to
and
the
that will
PBS
also
in
go
February
live,
this year,
providing
now to
another
become even
plank
cheaper,
in
will
our
hopefully make a
housing
big difference
program.
to them as they
But
have
that's
to
not
me.
all.
Deputy Speaker,
Build to rent
of
is a
course,
really
the reduction in the
important pillar in
co-payment
our housing
has to be
program.
taken within the broader context
Build to rent,
of the cost
for
of
those
living
who aren't
crisis
sure about it,
facing
has
Australians.
actually been operating in the
While
UK
the government
for
is
the
giving
last
with one
13
hand,
years.
is
It
taking
is
from
well
the pockets of
established
everyday
in the
Australians
UK.
in so many ways.
And the
This
UK
government's policies
has
have
around
seen electricity
300,000
prices up by 32%,
built-to-rent properties,
gas
either in
prices up by
construction
30%,
or already
rents
built.
up by 20%,
Well established.
insurance up by 35%,
And yes, they are
food up by 14%,
supported
health
by
costs
the
up by
likes of pension
15%,
funds.
and education costs
Now,
up
given
by
the
17%.
scale of the problem that we are
Anglicare
facing in
reports
Australia, which is
full-time
essentially
minimum wage
market
workers
failure
are
staring
left
us
with
in
just
the face,
$33 a week after
we have to
essentials
pull
to get by.
multiple levers.
That's not
This is
a cost of
complex
living
problem.
crisis.
And
It's
with
a cost
complex
of survival
problems,
crisis.
just like in medicine,
With the oldest
you've got to tackle
electorate
them
and
on
one of the
multiple
poorest
fronts.
electorates in
You
this
don't
country,
do one thing,
these
you do
statistics
everything.
are very real
So build
and
to
felt
rent is a
acutely in my
welcome tool
electorate.
in our armament.
I know so many people are having
and
to
it
make
means
difficult choices
that
they simply
we
shouldn't have to
deepen
make.
our access
Putting
to
food on the
capital
table,
markets.
putting the heater on during
Increasingly
the day during
building
winter,
property
which medicines are absolutely
needs
necessary,
a mix of
which ones
domestic
are
capital
not.
as well as
More
offshore
families
capital.
are being
And that
forced to
offshore
delay
capital
or
may come
avoid
in the
refilling
form
their
of
scripts
pension
or
funds from
seeking health
overseas
advice
or
because they
sovereign
just
wealth
can't
funds.
afford it under this
And if they want to
government.
build homes
In
for
fact,
Australians,
8% of Australians
great.
delayed
We
or
welcome
went
it.
without their prescription
And that was the
medication
whole point of
in
this.
2023,
Often that capital is
2024
mixing
due to
with
cost
capital
concerns.
domestically as well to build
We
these,
all want this
these
initiative
homes.
to land in the pockets of hard-working
80,000
Australians.
homes is what is
but my
estimated
concern
will be
is that
built
it will
over the
be
next
washed away by
5 to 10
other
years by the Property
ever-increasing
Council,
price rises
of which 10%
created by this
will be
government's
ring-fenced
policies.
for social affordability.
Policies like its pursuit of intermittent
These
power
properties
that will
will
cost
have
trillions, do nothing to
5-year
deal with climate
tenure
change, damage our
and
natural
no fault
environment, and
evictions.
only make
Again,
our country
speaking
weaker and
to
poorer.
the work we have done
Deputy
with the
Speaker,
states in
the
protecting
PBS forms a
and
critical
improving
component
renters'
of
rights.
Australia's health system. It has been a scheme
It
that
does
has
mean
largely had
that,
bipartisan
Australians
support.
now
Both
will have
Labor and the
options.
Coalition have made
So
improvements
just like
to
on
it
the
over
1st
time.
of October,
In government, the coalition made 2,900 new or amendment listings on the PBS to provide more Australians with affordable access to potentially life-saving or life-changing medicines or treatments. This was at an overall investment of around $16.5 billion.
But there's a presumption in this
By
chamber
listing
that
these
build
medications
to
on the
rent stops
PBS,
there,
we ensured that
lifelong
Australians
renting.
have access to
That's not the
affordable
case.
life-saving
People often start
medications
renting
that would have
at some
otherwise
point in their
cost them
life, and they may
thousands,
transition out
if not hundreds
into
of
home
thousands of
ownership.
dollars
And we're
without
creating
the
those
subsidy.
pathways for them.
The coalition was
through the
committed
Home
to our
Guarantee
long-held
Scheme
policy
by
of listing
expanding
all
that.
medicines on the PBS
But there are
that were
also
recommended
newer
by the
products that are
Pharmaceutical
emerging in
Benefits
Australia.
Advisory
It's not
Committee
just
when
build
we
to
were in
rent
government.
anymore.
This is in stark
Speaking to
contrast to
super
the
funds here in
Albanese
Australia,
government, who stopped
I
listing
know
new medicines on the
there
PBS
is
last
now
time they were in government
a new
because
product,
they simply
build
ran
to
out of
rent
money.
to buy.
This government's poor
which
economic
actually
management meant they
enables
did
people
not
to
list
first
new
enter
medicines
into a
for
build-to-rent
severe asthma,
model,
chronic
and
pain,
then subsequently
schizophrenia,
have
blood
the
clots,
option
IVS,
to purchase
IVF,
that
endometriosis and
apartment or
prostate
unit,
conditions
whatever the case
on the
may be.
PBS. The Albanese
can
government
see
has
by
now repeated
creating
history
an
by
ecosystem
imposing a cap on the number of
of a
medicines
variety
that
of
can be
different
considered for
products
listing
out
on the
there
PBS,
that the market
leading to
starts
harmful
to shift
delays.
and change to meet
In
the
November
needs
last year,
of
almost 50 medicines were deferred
consumer.
from consideration
And
for
that's what
listing
we're
on the
trying to
PBS
facilitate
under the
as
watch
a
of the
government.
government, creating
We're
further
not trying to
delays for
dictate,
patients
we're trying
waiting
to
for
provide
affordable
Australians,
access. This is because
particularly
the
young
Pharmaceutical
Australians,
Benefits
a
Advisory
choice.
Committee, the expert
if
body
they
that
want to
recommends
enter the
medicines for
housing
listing
market,
on the
they can
PBS,
put their hand up,
implemented a cap on the
line up their
number of
ducks,
medicines they
go
could
see the
consider
bank,
for
get
listing
their
at
finances
each
in
meeting.
order,
They did this because
and
they have
delve
not been
into home
adequately
ownership.
resourced
The 1st
under
of
this
October,
government. There is
Home
no
Guarantee
doubt that this
Scheme
mess
will
has
open
caused
up
delays
to
for
all
patients
first home
waiting to
buyers.
access
It will
potentially
not be
life-saving
means
or
tested. We have
life-changing
removed
new
the income
medicines
or
caps.
treatments
at an affordable price.
There will be caps.
We're also
on
seeing some concerning
properties.
delays
So, for example,
in the
in
listing
Victoria,
of new medicines on the
in
PBS
Melbourne and
under
Geelong,
the government, including for women's
properties
health.
will be capped at
Before
around
the election, the
950,000.
government
Everywhere
announced the
else in
listing
Victoria, it'll
of an
be
important
around
medicine for
650,000.
endometriosis,
It's hardly the case
Ryoco, on
that
the
the
PBS,
children of
which
billionaires,
was
as
good news
Senator
for women
Bragg
suffering from this
asserts,
chronic condition
will be purchasing
across
these
the country.
properties.
However,
What a
Ryoco had been recommended for
over-exaggeration,
listing
complete
on the
hyperbole.
PBS more than a year before the government made this announcement.
We are also
This means that the government
interested
waited more than a year
in
to list a
accelerating
potentially
the
life-changing
building
treatment
process
for women
by
suffering from
slashing red tape.
endometriosis. That's
And
just
we're
not
doing
good
that
enough. It's
by
absolutely critical that Australian
taking
women
the
have
National
affordable access to
Construction
the
Code, for
medications
example,
and treatments they
pausing
need,
it for a
especially
period
right
of
now
4
as
to
they
5
face
years
record high
and simplifying it
healthcare
in
costs.
that interim period.
Deputy
we heard
Speaker,
feedback from
health is one of the major
construction
concerns
industry.
on the mind of line
And
residents.
I'll take
in my
that
discussions on
contribution. It was a
doorsteps and at
suggestion
my
by the
weekly
coalition,
mobile
but we're
offices,
improving upon
it is
that,
one of
which
the
is-
most
which is
often raised
worth
issues.
doing.
Next to the
And
state
I'll
of the
also
roads
take-
across the
I'll also
Hastings,
note that the Home
Mid-North
Guarantee
Coast
Scheme
and Hunter
was a
regions,
coalition
and more
legacy.
recently the impact
And
of the
what
May
we
flood
did in our
and
first
help
term of
with the
government was
recovery.
actually expand eligibility
I'm very
of that
concerned
scheme.
about
And
the
what we
level of
found
access to health
and tune
services
it up, and
across
what we
the line
found
electorate.
was that
From
it
access
was
to a
widely
GP to
successful.
services
Over
offered at
100,000
local hospitals,
households
it's clear that we
took
need
up
more
the
investment by the New South
modifications
Wales
that we
state
made.
government and the
And
Australian
so
government in
we
local
have
health
now-
services.
And so
During
we
the
have
election,
now gone
after
further.
listening to the concerns of my electorate,
We've gone further
I
by
called for an
opening
urgent
it up
care
further
clinic in
to first-home
Taree.
buyers,
Sadly,
irrespective
the
of their
government
income. And that has
refused
been
to match it.
so,
It was
that
no
has
easy
garnered
decision
so
to
much
single out
interest that the
Taree,
website
given the
crashed
demand for
yesterday.
such a
The
facility
website crashed,
from a number of
Deputy
line
President.
communities. Prior
So,
to making my public
Deputy
commitment
President,
for an urgent care clinic
I
in
think
Taree,
it
I
is
spoke at length with a
genuinely
member from Mole
perplexing,
Lakes,
given the
Mrs.
scale of
Kayla
the
Thompson
problem,
MP,
and we see it
about
every day
her
in our
work in
streets in
securing
Australia.
funding
We see it
for
on
a
the
New South Wales
footpaths,
government-funded
people sleeping on our
urgent care clinic
footpaths,
in Foster.
even in
Now, I fully back the
wealthy
community's
electorates
call
like
for a public
mine was
hospital
in
in
Higgins.
Foster, but it's
There it
clear that while
was.
ever there
I
is a
also knew
Labor
that
government in New
families
South
were
Wales, Foster
living
will never
in,
see it.
cars in
An
council
urgent
car
care
parks
clinic
in
for
Higgins,
Foster and
in Higgins,
Tuncurry communities
one of the
under
wealthiest
either the
electorates in
state or
Australia.
federal model of delivery
So if
could
it's
be a
bad there,
stopgap
imagine what
until
it's
a
like
change of
elsewhere.
government. moment. My
We
view
have
was that I would
not
seek
just
Commonwealth
people living in
funding
tents,
for
but
it
we now
if
have
the member
people
for
living in
Mile
tent
Lakes had been
cities.
unable to secure
There are
state
around
government support.
122,000
I knew she was
Australians who
working
are
hard to
homeless
do
every
so,
night, based
and
on
it's
data
great
from 4
news for
years
our
ago, the
area
census.
that she
We think that number
she
is
was
much worse
successful.
now.
with her persistent
then,
lobbying and
around 8,000
advocacy
people slept
for
rough,
the funding of the
including
Foster
around 200
Tuncurry
children
Health
under the
Facility.
age of 12.
I note the
Those
member has
numbers
today
may
called
well
for the
be
Minns
worse now.
government to
This is
provide
an
more
emergency.
details
Start
on
treating
when
it
will
like
be
an
delivered.
emergency, the Liberals and
Dollars
Nationals,
in the budget don't
and
deliver
stop
services in a
blocking
community.
our housing
At
agenda.
this juncture, however,
This
me
is an
doubling up
emergency.
on
You don't do
funding,
one thing,
a
you do
funding commitment
everything.
would be unfair
And
to other
at the end of the
locations
day,
in my
the
electorate
only thing
in
that matters
desperate
is the
need.
outcome. And the
I also
outcome
explored
is
the
more homes
potential
for
for a
Australia,
federal urgent
more
care clinic for
homes
Bulahdelah.
for Australians.
Through my work with the
Thank
former
you,
member for Lyme,
Chair.
the Honourable Dr David
Thank you.
Gillespie,
Senator Kavassi.
I was well aware of the
Deputy
community's
President,
push
well, I'm
for a
going to change the
multi-purpose
start of
centre
my speech
over many years.
because I
know
won't
that
be
Bulahdelah
lectured
needs
to
additional
here in
primary
this
care
chamber
services with its
by
elderly
a party
population,
that
and
has
through the work of the Bulahdelah and District
facilitated
Health
the worst
Action
housing
Group,
crisis
led by
our
the
country
amazing
has
Anne-Marie
ever
Barry,
seen.
it had
And to
been actively
lecture us on
advocating
what
for
we
an
should and
MPS
could
facility.
do when
But
you
with the
have
sale of the
stood
old
by
nursing
and
home to the
allowed
Strauss
this to
Community
occur.
Lodge and
For the
its
best
commitment
part
to
of
reopen
20
it,
years,
the MPS model
I
became much
assisted
harder to
young
fund.
people and everyday
Further, the
Australians
federal government's
to
urgent
purchase
care
their
clinic
own
model
homes.
requires
And
a
not
larger
once did
population
anybody
base
walk up
as
to
compared
me
to
or
those
sit down
delivered
with me
by the
and
New South
desperately
Wales
say,
state
I
government.
want to be
As
a forever
such,
renter.
I support the delivery of a
They came to me and
state-funded
said,
urgent care facility
can you
in
please
Bulahdelah.
help me buy
This led me
a
ultimately
home?
to my decision
Can
about
you
Taree.
please help me
Bulk
find
billing
a way
rates over the last 3
to
years
have
have fallen by
a
10%.
roof over the head of
It's
my
becoming harder
family
to see a
that
doctor
belongs
urgently,
to us.
and Manning-based hospital needs
The
respite
problem
to focus
with
on more critical
the
care,
build to
particularly
rent
with the
scheme
disruption from the
is that it
redevelopment.
focuses
An urgent care clinic
too
could provide
much
urgent
on
relief
build to
and
rent.
better support
This
the urgent
government
primary care
focuses
needs of
far
locals
too much
with the
on
added
build to rent
benefit
as
of
a
bulk
solution.
billing.
A number
I've
of
spoken
times
with the
today
Hunter
in
New
this
England and
chamber in
Central
different
Coast
speeches,
Primary Health
I
Network
have heard
regarding
people from
the
the
urgent
other
care clinic
side
in
say
Taree, and they've
that
confirmed
build
to me that
rent
Taree
is a
is a
supply
location
side solution.
they support. I called
Build
for
to
the
rent
urgent
is
care
not
clinic in
a
Taree as part of my
supply-side
first speech,
solution
imploring
for
the
people who
government
need
to work
to
with
buy
me to
their own
deliver one.
homes.
And I followed
It is a
up with a
solution
request
for
to the
people
Minister
who
for
need
Health
to
in
rent,
writing
but
to
it
seek
is
his
not a
support in
solution
obtaining an urgent
for
care
people who
clinic
wish
for the
to
Manning.
buy. It
The
is in
response
no
from the
way
Minister
a supply-side
was
solution
disappointing,
to the
with the
5%
Albanese
deposit
government
scheme.
committing $1.4
They are
billion
not
over 7
connected.
years to establish
The
and operate a
5%
total of
deposit
137
scheme,
Medicare
Senator
urgent care
Henderson
clinics,
correctly
while leaving
stated,
a
which
gaping
was,
hole
a
between Coffs
coalition
Harbour and
policy.
Newcastle, a healthcare
And a
chasm that my
coalition,
electorate
measure in
sits
a previous
squarely in the middle
government
of and undoubtedly must bear
is
the brunt.
something that you
Now, the letter
require
from the Minister,
supply
which I
side
have here,
mechanisms for.
details a phone line
On October the
that's meant
1st,
to
this will be
replace
opened up to
the urgent
everybody.
care
And
clinic.
guess what?
Hardly the
We
sort
don't
of
have the
service
houses for
that
the
the
people to
government
buy.
has been spruiking
So,
in this
newsflash,
parliament
that's
since
not
we
helping
returned.
anybody. What
Whilst
it
the
will do
response
is
from
artificially
the
increase
Minister's office was
prices
disappointing,
because
I am
the
hopeful,
supply-side
and I look
mechanisms
forward to
have not
working
been
with the
put into
Minister
place.
to bring about this goal
That is the
and
reality of
welcome
what
any
we're dealing with
opportunity
here.
for collaboration
This
in order to see
disallowance
the
motion from
realisation
Senator
of
Bragg
an urgent care
intends to
clinic
stop
for the people
the government
of
handing
Lyme.
out a tax cut
I
to
recently
foreign
met with
investors,
representatives of the
which
Great Lakes
promotes
Carer Support
renting
Group
rather
to
than
discuss the
home
potential
ownership.
for a Medicare mental health
coalition
centre
is not
in the Lyme
against
electorate.
foreign
The
investors.
volunteer group
The
supports
coalition is
parents,
not
family
against
members
business
and
making
friends
money.
dealing
What
with
we
people
are
with mental
against
health challenges
is the
and the lack of
falsehood
services in the Great Lakes
that build
area.
to rent
The stories
is
they shared with
somehow
me about the lack of support was
a fair
heartbreaking.
and reasonable
People in desperate need of
alternative to
support,
people
but
owning
turned
their
away
own
from the
homes.
base hospital
It
with
is
nowhere
not.
to go to get
We
the urgent
want
care they
Australians
need.
to own their own
So many
homes.
families are
This
struggling to
government
deal with their
wants
loved ones'
super
mental health
funds to
issues
own those
or
homes
suicide
and for
attempts
Australians
without
to
support.
rent those homes.
A person has
And
to
that
reach
is what
crisis
we have a
point
problem with.
before there is any support
Somebody
available.
actually made a comment
There are
to
now
me
no
today about
permanent
master planned
psychiatrists at Manning
communities
Base Hospital
you know,
mental
how
health unit.
important they
Namula
are in the
House doesn't have the
construction
resources
sector.
it
And
need
made me realise
to provide
this is
community-based
actually
care.
a master
The group
planned
believes that a
rental
Medicare
cycle
mental
from the
health
government.
centre could bridge the gap in
super funds
services.
will own the
But just
homes,
like with the urgent
the
care
CFMEU
clinics,
will
the
build
government
the
seems to have
homes,
missed our
and then
area on the map,
Australians will
with
rent
no
the
centre
homes.
between Coffs
Well, we're
Harbour
here to tell you
and the
that we're
Central
not okay
Coast.
with that.
Again, I
We
hope the government will
absolutely want
engage with me to
see
work towards a
fair and
service
reasonable
on the
rentals
Mid-North
available
Coast.
to Australians
Deputy
that want to
Speaker,
rent or need to
a
rent.
great deal more than this single
But
piece
we
of
must
legislation
make sure that
is
there
required
is
to improve
adequate
the health
housing
outcomes
stock,
for the people of my
adequate
electorate.
supply,
Indeed,
and
a great deal
proper
more than
focus
this
from this
legislation is
government to
required
ensure that
to
people
ease
that
the
want
immense
to buy
economic
their own
pressures
home
that burdens
can.
Australians. But I recognise that this is an important measure that will be of benefit for a great many people, and I therefore commend it to the House.
No additional supply, no additional houses for young people to buy them. I mean, how disheartening is that?
For the Hunter.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you,
that.
Speaker.
What am I going to
I rise
buy?
to contribute to
Where
the
is
debate
it?
on the National
Where
Health
are the
Amendment Cheaper
houses?
Medicines Bill 2025.
The House has built 17
As members
houses.
of Parliament, our job is pretty simple
17
when you strip
houses.
it back, Speaker.
That is
We are
extraordinary.
here to improve the lives of people that we represent.
Supercharging foreign institutional
One of the
investment
most direct,
and
practical and
ownership of
effective
Australia's
ways to do that
housing
is to
stock
make it easier
in a
for people to
perpetual
get by,
rent forever cycle is
to make life
absolutely
cheaper.
not acceptable.
And that's exactly what this bill does,
And while
Speaker.
build to rent absolutely can be
We are a
part of the
country
mix,
that takes pride in our healthcare
it should
system.
not require a tax
We love the
cut,
fact that no matter
tax
where you
concession
live, no matter how
for
much money
foreign
you earn,
investors
you can get
to
the care you
own the
need.
homes that Australians live in.
We are
That
proud,
is unacceptable.
proud to the point of patriotism.
While we support
that
foreign
when you
investment,
walk into
as
a
I said
pharmacy
earlier,
to
it
pick up your
must fit
script,
within the
you can get the
culture
medicine
of
you rely on
fairness.
without being sent
And
broke.
that doesn't meet
Because access
the
to
context.
medicines should
That's just not
never,
on.
ever be a
This
choice between
government
going broke and staying
has got their
alive.
priorities completely
The reason we've been able to do
confused.
that and the
They
reason
should be
Australians can
focusing
access
on
medicines
people, on
cheaper
Australians,
than almost
young
anywhere else in the
Australians.
world
We've
is
heard
because
today
of
a
the
great
pharmaceutical
deal about
benefit scheme, the
intergenerational
PBS.
fairness. Well, that
It
would
puts
be
a cap
to
on the cost of
facilitate
listed medicines
young people
so
to
they
buy
stay
their own
affordable,
homes,
reliable
not to give
and within reach
potential
of every
handouts to
Australian.
foreign
Right now, the cap is
investors to own those
$31.60.
homes that young Australians will rent.
If you have a
That
script
is not okay.
for the PBS listed medicine, that is
The
the most that
construction
you will
code
pay.
is another significant issue.
It is already a great
that,
system,
that
Speaker,
feeds into
but we can
the
do
problem
better.
of housing in this country.
And this bill
a
reduces the
document
cap
that's
down to
almost some
$25.
2,000 pages long.
That
is
means
nothing
when you
but
pick up a
obstructive
PBS medicine,
in terms
you will not
of
pay any more than
facilitating
$25,
greater
Speaker.
supply.
Now,
We
$6.60 might
articulated
not
that
sound like a
before
lot
the
at first
last
glance,
election.
Speaker.
We took that as a policy
but let me
to
put
the
it
last
into
election.
perspective for
And
everybody
what
here.
did this government do? This
If your
government said
six-pack
that we
of
were
beer
bad,
dropped
that
down
it was
from
dangerous, that we
$31.60
wanted dodgy
to
housing,
$25
that we wanted
overnight,
Australians
the whole
to
country
live
would be
in dodgy
rejoicing, wouldn't
housing.
they?
Another
See you over
falsehood.
there.
Completely untrue.
People would be
And what
lining
has
up around the
happened
block.
Now
Or
they've adopted
take
the
it
same
another way,
policy.
Speaker.
Well, they've changed it a little bit.
If you need 3 scripts a month, under the current cap, you'll be paying $95
and now
a
the
month.
narrative is not
Under
that
this
it's
new
bad
cap,
or
it
promoting
drops to
dodgy
$75.
housing. Now the narrative
That's
is
almost
when we
$25
see
of
good ideas,
savings
we'll
every
acknowledge
single
it.
month. Over a year, that's more than
There you go.
$230
I'll leave you
back
to
in
think
your
about
back pocket. That's $230 you can put towards your electricity bill,
I think
your rego, your
probably
groceries,
the thing
or just
that
have a bit of
bothers
breathing
me
space, Speaker.
the most about
And that's just for one
this
person.
whole scenario
Across the country,
is the
this adds up to
suggestion
more than
that
$200
we on
million
this side
saved by Australians every year.
blocking the supply
And that
of
is not a
housing.
small thing. That $6.60
We've done
really does make a
nothing
big difference.
But fight for fairness for young
That's what a real
Australians
difference looks
and
like.
everyday Australians to
Think
own
about
their
it this
own
way.
homes. We talk about
This
that
is a 20%
constantly.
cut
I've
to the
talked
maximum
about it for a
cost of a
long time.
PBS medicine.
Senator Bragg raises it.
We all know what happens when
very
there's 20%
regularly
off at a
as
sale
well
at the
as,
shop,
you know,
Speaker.
there's been some mirth
I
about
know my
that
wife
from the
does.
other side.
Try
We
finding a
talk
park on the
about
Boxing
this
Day
because We
sales.
hear about this
People
all
will
the
battle
time.
traffic, wait in lines and
people
fight
talk
over
to
car
us
spots
about
to save
this
20% on
every
clothes and
day.
TVs.
And we are
Well,
totally
unlike the
cognizant
Boxing
of the
Day
fact that there
sales,
is a housing crisis
this is not just
in
a
this
one-day
country.
special.
But we need
This is
this
a
government
permanent
to
20%
do something
saving
that facilitates
on something
the
that you
supply
actually
of
need,
housing,
your health.
so that people who wish to
And
own
Speaker,
their own homes
in some ways,
can
this is
buy
the
their own
closest
homes.
thing to time
and the
travel
thing that
we
I'm
can
going
give
to finish
Australians.
on, and I've said it many
The last
times, and I'm
PBS
going to
medicine
say it
costs
again, I
no
have
more than
a massive
$25
problem
was
with
back
the
in
fact
2024.
that
the year
this
Facebook
government
launched.
thinks it's okay
Back when most of us were walking
for a
around with
super
flip
fund to
phones
own my
and the
own home.
indestructible Nokia 3310s.
But I am not able to access my own super,
Back when
my
I didn't have
own
this
money
luscious beard, Speaker.
to purchase that home.
We've come a long way since 2020,
That is
since
entirely
2004,
unfair.
and it's about
That is
time medicine
entirely
prices went back there
unreasonable.
too. This bill
Today, there
builds
was
on
a
the work
mention
that we've
in
been
one of the
doing since
speeches around
2022
homelessness
to make
and the
medicines
prevalence
cheaper.
of homelessness.
In 2023, we
The
delivered
largest
the
growing
largest
cohort
cut
of homeless
to
in
the
this
cost of
country
medicines in the history of the
is women
PBS,
over the
slashing
age
the
of
maximum
55.
cost of a general script from $42.50
A woman over 55 55
$30.
can access
I know
her super
firsthand
under
how much
special
that
provisions
change meant,
as
because
an
people tell me
emergency
about it when I'm in
to
and
pay
around
rent
the
to
Hunter,
someone.
and I'm sure you do in your seat
But
too.
she can't access
Speaker.
it to
Take
buy
Henry,
her
one
own
of my
home.
constituents. Henry
You explain that to
is
me
on 6 regular
and tell me
PBS,
that you are focused
PBS
on Australians
medications for
owning their own
diabetes,
home.
cholesterol, blood pressure,
Thank you, Deputy
arthritis,
President.
pain and stomach issues.
Senator Scarr.
Before
Thank you,
2023, Henry was paying
Mr.
$42
Deputy President,
per
it's
script.
a real delight to
That added up to
follow the remarks of my
$255
colleague.
per month, every
There's a lot of
month,
common
just on
sense and wisdom,
medications.
in that presentation.
This is not
I've got here
a
the
great
State of the
spend.
Housing
This is not
System
a
2025
luxury.
report from the National Housing
This is
Supply
the
and
cost of
Affordability
managing his
Council.
health and staying
If you were to
alive.
listen to those opposite, they would say to
When
you
we dropped the price to $30
that all
per
the
script,
issues in
Henry's
relation to housing
monthly bill
supply
fell by
occurred under the previous
$180.
government. But this
that was a saving
actually
of
tells the
$75
truth.
every month.
This tells the
or
truth. This is the
$800
government's own
every single
agency.
year.
The government's own
And he
agency
completely changed the way he
giving
managed
its
his
report
health
with
and
respect
also
to
his
what's
finances
the
as well.
reality in terms of housing
He told
supply.
me in the past, when
And
money
I want
was
to quote
tight,
a number of
he would
the
skip the pain
key
medication to
findings
save on a
in
bit,
this
putting
report.
himself
A
through
quote
way
from
more
page
pain than he ever had to.
of the report.
That meant
Quote, the
flare-ups,
supply of new
less
housing
mobility
is near
and
its
more
lowest
stress.
level in a decade.
Now, because of that change, he doesn't have to skip his meds.
177,000 dwellings
He can
were
afford to
completed in
take the treatment
2024,
his doctor
falling
prescribes to him.
significantly short of underlying demand
In fact,
for housing,
with the money he
which
saves,
was
he's even
estimated at
started
around
paying a fortnightly physio session
223,000
to help
for
him
the
manage his
same period.
arthritis.
So this
He
is
tells
under
me he's
Labor.
walking most days
This is
now,
under
feeling
Labor.
better than he has in
Record
years.
lows
That is the
through
power
the
of cheaper
decade, over the
medicine, Speaker.
decade, in relation to new housing.
It did not cure Henry's
construction.
condition and never will, but it did give him
Quote,
the tools to manage
this shortfall added to
it.
already
Gave him dignity.
significant unmet
It gave him
demand in the
independence.
system. End
It
quote.
gave him a better quality of life.
And then I quote further.
And when this
from the
$25
first
cap
page.
comes in, Henry will save even more.
938,000 dwellings are
Who knows,
forecast
he
to be
might be able to
completed
start
during the
at the
housing
line of a
accord
marathon
period,
before
which
long.
falls short
Speaker,
of the
let
1.2
me
million
bring this
target.
home to the Hunter.
Scenario
We have
analysis
families in
indicates that
Cessnock
even under
who are already
optimistic
making tough
economic
choices
scenarios,
about which bills
the target
to pay
will
first.
not be
We have
achieved.
pensioners in Curry Curry
Will not
who are
be
stretching
achieved,
every
even
dollar
under the
of
most
their fortnightly
optimistic
pay.
scenarios.
We have young families in
I
Singo
continue. No
juggling
state
mortgage
or
repayments and
territory
childcare
is
costs.
forecast to meet the share
And across Lake
of the
Macquarie,
target
into
implied by its
Morisset
population.
and Toronto, I meet people
So you're not
every
going to
week
meet the target
who tell me the cost
on a
of
national level,
medication is one
and
of their
no
biggest
state
worries.
or territory is going to meet the target of its share.
When the price
of the
of a script
1.2
drops from
million target.
$31.60 to $25, that is genuine
continue.
relief for these families.
When
It means a
factoring in
mum in Dora Creek
demolitions,
can afford
the net
both
new
her
supply is
asthma
expected
inhaler
to total
and her kids' new school shoes.
825,000 over the housing
means a
accord
retiree
period,
in
which
YE
is
doesn't
79,000
have to skip
dwellings
blood
fewer
pressure medication
than
to keep the lights
expected
on.
new underlying demand.
It means a young tradie in
End quote.
Brankston can pay for his pain meds
And then I go to
he needs to keep turning up on the tools every
page
day of the
5.
week. This is not abstract.
Quote,
This is not numbers
over the
on a
housing
page,
accord
Speaker.
period that
This
commenced
is
from
real
1 July
money
2024
in the hands of real
under
people
Labor.
in our communities.
The council
And it makes a
forecasts that
massive
gross new
difference.
housing supply
But
will be
we have not stopped there,
938,000 under
Speaker.
baseline macroeconomic
We have introduced
conditions
60-day
and
prescriptions,
current policy
cutting
settings,
the number of trips to
or
the
around
pharmacy
188,000 per
in half for people
year
with chronic
on average.
conditions.
This
That
implies a
saves money
shortfall of
and very, very
262,000
importantly, saves
relative
them
to
time
the
as well,
1.2
because we're all
million
time
housing
poor,
accord
Speaker, we all
target,
know that,
which
and
is a little
that's
more
why
than
that is so
256,900 shortfall
We have frozen the
forecast
cost of PBS
in state of the
medicines,
housing system
so that
2024.
co-payments will not rise with inflation. For the this is the first time that that has happened in
So
25
2024
years.
to 2025,
We have delivered more free
the
and
shortfall
cheaper
actually went
medicines
up.
sooner. And we've
that's what the
reduced the
independent
number of
analysis
scripts
is telling us.
concessional
And then if
parents need to fill
senators
before the
representing
safety
various
net kicks
states and
in
territories want
by
to look at the position
25%.
in their own state or
We've locked in a
territory,
freeze on
they can do so at a table
medicines
on page
costs.
7.
So pensioners
And this
and
indicates
concessions
the
card
following in
holders
terms of
will not pay
gross
more than
new housing
$7.70
supply
a script
and
until
its
2030.
ratio to share of target.
And this makes a huge difference
New
to
South
the
Wales,
households that are already
65%.
stretched by the cost of living.
So the government's own
Because we're
agency
committed to
is
cheaper
saying that
medicines,
New South Wales
4
will
out of
only
5
meet
PBS
65%
medicines are
of
now
its share of the
cheaper.
new housing target.
That's
Victoria
thanks to
doing,
the
doing much better,
$689
98%.
million
My home state of
investment from
Queensland,
our government.
79%.
An investment that goes directly
Western
into the
Australia,
lives and the pockets
Western Australia,
of ordinary
81%.
Australians.
South Australia,
It's important to note
71%.
that this bill also protects discounting pharmacies
Tasmania, 51%.
that currently offer discounts will still be able to do
ACT,
that, so
78%.
even with the
Northern
new $25
Territory
cap.
at
That means consumers can
extraordinarily
still
low
shop around and benefit from
31%.
competition, and pharmacies can continue to offer better deals for their communities.
The report goes on, after
So
accounting
this is
for
not
the
just a win
expected
for
demolition of
patients.
around
It's also a win
113,000
for
dwellings,
pharmacies
net
who
new
play
housing
such a
supply
vital
is
role
projected
in our local
to
communities,
be
especially in regional and rural areas like
825,000
mine
over the
and
housing
Hunter.
accord period, or just over
Speaker,
165,000
we have heard the phrase,
dwellings
new
per
year, new me.
on average.
I know I've said
in
it a few
comparison,
times.
new underlying
Ignored it
housing
many
demand
times too,
is
Speaker,
forecast
but I'm
to
trying
be
to do better here. So
904,000,
in 2026, it's going to be a new year
compared
and
to
a new
housing demand
PBS.
of 904,000.
Because on the 1st of January
Houston, we have a
2026,
problem.
this change comes
We
into
have a
effect.
problem. And that's
no
what
more than $25
the government's
for
own
a PBS script.
national housing supply
And unlike
and
most
affordability
New Year's
council
resolutions,
standards,
and I'll put my hand up
there's
for
a real
this
issue.
one is guaranteed to stick.
During the
because with
contributions
the support of
made
this House,
by those opposite,
it will be the new
they
law of the land.
failed
Speaker,
to refer
this
to the
is
positive
Australia.
policies the coalition took
In this
the last
country, we
election,
believe in
which would have
affordable
made a
access
real
to
difference
healthcare
in
and
relation to
affordable
housing
medicines
supply.
are a vital part of that.
And I want to refer to some of
If you
those
rely on
policies to
medication
correct
to
the
manage
record in
a
this
condition,
place.
you live your best life.
I think one of the
Your ability
best
to access
policies
it should never depend
the
on how much
coalition
money is
took
in
to
your
the
bank
last
account.
election
It should
was to
depend
provide
on
a
the
$5
fact
billion
that
fund
you are an Australian
for road,
and you have a
sewerage
government
and
that puts
power
people
works,
first,
infrastructure works,
not the profits
that
of
could
big
be applied
pharmaceutical
by state
companies.
governments and local
This bill
governments
makes
to
medicines
actually
cheaper,
open up new
eases the cost of living
land for
pressures.
development, to
It
actually
helps
provide the
people
infrastructure
live longer,
for new land to be opened up.
live better, and
There
just
was
be around for
also
our families and our
a
loved
very
ones. And that's why
good policy, in my view,
commend this
with
bill to the
respect to
House, Speaker.
processing
Thank you.
environmental approvals
I thank the member
through
for Hunter. The
under
question
the
is that
EPBC
the
Act.
amendment be agreed to.
Now,
and I call the
my
member for
office
Moreton.
is in a
Thank
place
you,
called
Deputy
Springfield,
Speaker. And Deputy
beautiful
Speaker, tonight
place called
I want to talk
Springfield
about
in what's
my
called the
friend
Southwest
Ken.
Corridor in Queensland, one
Ken
of the
lives
fastest
in
growing
Taronga
areas of
in
Queensland.
my electorate of
There
Moreton.
are thousands
Ken
of lots
is a long-term
which
resident
could be
of Brisbane's
built on
south side.
tomorrow,
Ken
which are stuck
raised his
in
family
the EPBC
on the south
Act
side in Brisbane,
process in
and
Canberra.
Ken
Some of
is
these
a bastion
thousands
of
of
our
lots
community,
have been
someone who has
stuck
been
in that
deeply involved
process
across
for
the community
years.
for many, many
For up
years.
to 5 years.
Ken
it is madness.
also one of the millions of Australians who relies on medicines every day. And that's what this bill
one
is all
owner
about.
of a property,
because those who relied on
I won't
medicines
provide the details to
deserve
protect
to
the
have
confidentiality,
accessible and
but
affordable healthcare.
I assisted one
And
owner of a
when I
property
talked to Ken
who wanted to build
about
a
what cheaper
childcare
medicines
centre,
meant
which was
for
also
him
desperately
and his
in
hip
need
pocket,
in the area.
he told me
and the
that he
rigmarole
saves $62
that they had to go
every
through
month.
in terms of dealing
That's
with the
not with
EPBC
this
Act was
legislation in
just
place. That is
extraordinary.
already,
I
he
mean,
saves
it made
$62
absolutely
every month
no
from
sense
Labor's
at all.
position,
on any
from
objective,
Labor's legislation
rational basis,
to already make
it
medicines
made
cheaper.
no sense.
And can I tell you that
And
people
it was a
across
question
Moreton
of the
are saving
bureaucracy
$9
simply
million,
saying no and being obstructionist
$9,700,000
until
has already
after
been saved
numerous
because of the Labor government
representations, a
when it
pathway was
comes
found.
to cheaper
But the
medicines.
system's got to work better than that.
The Albanese
It's just
Labor government's
ridiculous.
primary
Thousands of
focus
lots
is
which could have
providing
been built
cost of living
upon,
relief.
which
And
are
we are
still going
delivering
through an
on that
EPBC
promise
Act
day
process.
in and day out.
Absolutely absurd.
This legislation,
and so the coalition
the
was right
National
to take
Health
a
Amendment
policy
Cheaper
to the
Medicines
last
Bill,
election
will
with
implement a
respect to
cost of
that.
living measure that benefits everyone.
Deputy President, I commend
The
Senator Bragg
Pharmaceutical
on
Benefit
this
Scheme, or the
disallowance
PBS,
motion.
is the
I
mechanism
think
that
the vast
enables
majority
this.
of Australians,
All of
their
us here
dream
have
is to own
experienced
their
the
own
positive
house
impact
or own their
of
own
the PBS,
apartment. It is
from
not to be
cheaper,
renters for
everyday
life.
medicines to
You actually
life-changing
have
access
the most
to
control
very
over your
expensive
future
medicines,
destiny by being
to
an
60-day
owner
scripts,
of
saving
the
us
place where
both
you
time
live, owning
and
your
money.
own house,
And
owning
Deputy
your own
Speaker, in
apartment,
preparation
and I think
for
that
this
is
speech
the
tonight,
dream, the
I
Australian
decided
dream.
that I would
and it should
call
be a
my
realisable
dad,
dream. Every single
because
Australian
my
family
mum is
should
a
have the
diabetic,
opportunity
and my
to
dad,
own their own
who's
home
recently
or
been through
apartment,
cancer
to
and
own their
recovered
own
after
home.
a long bout of chemo,
And I
has
don't
also
want
been in a bit of
us
the
to
walls,
pass policy
having pneumonia
which
following that bout of
builds
illness.
this notion,
And what happened when I
contributes
talked to my
this
dad,
notion that we're going
is
to
he
become
said,
a nation
"Why
of
do you want to know?"
renters.
He then
I
said,
think it'll be
I
extraordinarily
take a lot of
unfortunate.
medicines and
and I don't know
if
what
that
they
is the Australia
But when we
become.
spoke for a little bit longer,
in relation to
he
the
eventually
mechanics
got to
of the relevant
the place
regulation,
where he started
can I
to
just
talk
say
about
this?
the
I'll give you my
medicines that he could
definitive
remember
legal advice with respect to
he
the
and Mum
regulation.
taking.
And
this is the
details.
list that he could get out.
It's complicated.
He said that they take Nexium.
It's extraordinarily
he said
complicated.
that Mum takes
Can I tell you?
Dimacron,
It's
Diabex, and Glyzambi.
It's a maze of requirements
And when we
you need
looked
to go
each of
through
those up, they
in
are
relation
all
to meet
PBS
the
medicines.
build to rent
So
development
despite the fact
determination.
that he couldn't remember what medicines they necessarily took, and this is something that many people in our community
the rent payable
face.
under the lease for the dwelling must be 74.9% or less of the market value of the right to occupy the dwelling under that lease.
Government. The formerly expensive medications, such as the ones that my mum and dad
something to be an
take,
affordable dwelling under this in a
are made
build-to-rent
affordable
development.
thanks to the PBS.
The rent payable
The current
has to
co-payment for a
be
PBS medicine
less than
is
75% of what
and
the
from
market's
the 1st
saying
of
the rent
January
should
2026, my dad,
how's that going to
you
work?
Deputy Speaker, my
How's that
mum,
going to work?
me,
And
everyone
the
sitting in
landlord
this
needs
chamber
to go out and test
tonight
the market
will
in terms
pay
of
no more than
demonstrating
$25
that a comparable
for a PBS medicine.
property
In fact, millions of Australians
same area
will benefit when they purchase their everyday medication.
would have a rent which
The
is
PBS is a crucial
25%,
part of
at least
Labor's
25%
ongoing
more
commitment to
than
making
what the build to
healthcare
rent
affordable.
dwelling
And its
is to have.
creation is central
And then we've got
to the
income
Labor
thresholds
story
for those
of
who are
social
renting.
care, fairness,
So
and
if the
equality.
tenant is a,
Because when
is
it
a single
comes to
adult,
PBS medicines,
the
when
income
it comes
threshold
to the
is
accessibility and affordability
120%
of healthcare,
of average annual earnings.
Is what Labor
which
does.
I found a bit curious. I'm
It's
not
in
sure
our
what the
DNA, it's in
policy,
our bones, it's in our blood.
reasoning is
and
behind
Labor
that
has
threshold,
always
but
taken
I find it a bit
very
curious if we're
clear
talking about
stance
affordable
that healthcare
housing.
should be
The income
affordable
threshold
and
for a single
accessible.
adult is 120%
The Curtin Labor government first
of average
attempted to
annual
legislate
earnings.
to
I'm not sure why
subsidise
that's the
various
case.
antibiotics in the mid
I would have thought that if
1940s.
you're providing affordable
But it was deemed
housing,
unconstitutional
your
by the High
target
Court.
market should be those
The Constitution
who
was subsequently
aren't
amended, paving
over
the way
average
for
annual
the
earnings.
Chifley Labor government
But
to
that's-
introduce an initial
that's my,
version of the PBS
that's my
in
thought anyway.
1948. And at this time,
And if the tenants
free
include
medicines
2 or
for
more
pensioners
adults but no
and
dependent children,
139
then it can be
life-saving
130%
and
of
disease-preventing
average
medicines
annual earnings.
were made
I
free
would
of
have thought
charge
what you're trying
to
to
the general
achieve is to
public.
provide dwellings
This
for
initiative
people
was
earning less than
reflective of
annual earnings.
core
So
Labor
I'm not
values
sure
and a
why
vision
the
for a
thresholds are
fairer
at that rate.
Australia. One
And
where every
then
person,
you need
regardless
to
of their
test
financial
the annual
circumstances,
earnings of your
could live with
tenants
dignity
on
and
a
with security.
basis.
In 1953, the PBS was established under the National
on the
Health
basis
Act,
of certain events
which this
which
bill
occur.
amends. And in
You've got to do that
1960, the PBS became more comprehensive, offering a wide range of
after
medicine.
each assessing event.
The legacy
And then
of
there's a
these
list of
decades
assessing
of work
events.
is that we cannot imagine
So this is
Australia
complicated.
without
This
a
is
PBS
complicated, and there are situations where the owner of these developments
medicines
can go and get a tax ruling.
Because the
There's
PBS
going to be,
is not
there's
only
got to
something
be
that is cherished
monitoring
in
and
this
supervision of this.
It
There's
is
going to have to
something
be
that is the
auditing,
envy
etc.,
of
etc.
the world.
Wouldn't it just be
Ensuring
simpler
that
to come
medication,
up with
ensuring
policy
that
parameters and
healthcare
settings
is something
which actually
that you don't have
incentivise
to worry about
builders
when
to
it
go
comes
and
to
build
your hip
dwellings?
pocket. It is our
Wouldn't that be
responsibility
simpler?
to uphold and build
Wouldn't
on
that be
this
simpler
legacy,
rather than coming
to
up
ensure
with this
that the PBS remains
complicated
sustainable and
scheme,
continues
which
to
is
support
giving tax
Australian
benefits
families.
to offshore
And we
investors?
talk about
it's quite
when we talk about
extraordinary.
threats
It's quite
to
extraordinary.
healthcare
And
in
this is just going to
the
be
biggest threat to healthcare
this
in
is
this
going to be a
country
tangle
has
of red
always
tape.
been those
A
sitting
tangle of red
opposite,
tape,
those
which is
sitting
going
on
to
the other side
add
of
to
this
development costs.
And when you
every step
compare
of
the
way.
legacies
A tangle of red
Labor
tape.
and the coalition,
So it'll be very
what becomes
interesting to see
clear
how this
is
works
that
in
Labor
practice.
has always
But on the
prioritised
face of it,
healthcare. And whether it's
I find it
PBS
difficult to
medicines,
understand
whether
what
it's
the
investing in
incentive would
Medicare,
be
whether it's
for
making
someone
sure
to build
that women's
a
health care
dwelling
is
for an investment
prioritised,
manager
it
who's
is
investing
Labor
the
that has
funds of
always
someone
led the way.
they owe duties to,
And when you
fiduciary
compare
duties
those,
to,
you
with
can
respect to
see
how their
an
funds are
incredibly
invested.
stark
I find it
difference,
difficult to
Deputy
see
Speaker.
how it can be in the
Because
best interest
while
of the
Labor
investors
was
to
creating
build dwellings which they
Medicare,
can only
we
charge
know
50,
that
less
the
than 75% of the
LNP and those
market
opposite
rate.
cut
How do you
from
justify
healthcare.
that?
While Labor
If I was investing a fund and someone was saying, I'm going to build a dwelling,
we know
but
that
I'm going
those
to
opposite
charge
tried
less
to
than
introduce
75% of
a
the market
co-payment.
rate.
And while Labor
question would be, well, why am I investing
ensures
in
that
your
everyday
fund?
healthcare
Why don't I go and
is
invest in
made
a fund that
accessible,
charges
whether
the
that be
market
through
rate?
urgent care clinics,
So I'm not
whether
really
that
sure
be
how
through
this is going to
increasing
work
bulk billing,
in
whether
practice,
that be through
and I'm not sure
making
how
sure that medicines are
the
cheaper,
withholding tax
those opposite
dispensation
continually
actually provides
cut
the
from critical
motivation
health
for
services
people to do
that
this.
Australians rely on every
But
day.
it is a tangle of
It's a
red
goal
tape.
echoed by the 2022 National Medicines Policy, which is the aim of providing equitable, timely, safe and affordable access to high-quality and reliable supplies of medicines and medicine-related services for all Australians. And medicine affordability is the foundation of Labor's approach and the objective of this bill.
Commend Senator Bragg,
as at the end of June
with respect
2024,
to
there were
his advocacy
930
in
medicines
relation
being
to housing
subsidised
issues.
by the government.
He has been a champion.
That is 930
Senator Bragg has been a
individual,
champion
accessible,
of the Australian
high-quality,
dream.
safe,
The dream of
and
every
affordable
single Australian
medicines.
own their own home.
In recent months, we've seen numerous
Thank you very
additional
much,
medicines
Senator
added.
Scarr.
And
Any
these
other
include
senators
medicines
that
for
want to make a
breast cancer,
contribution on this
diabetes,
disallowance
endometriosis,
motion?
and
There being
depression,
none?
to name
Okay,
just
so the
a few.
question is that
The financial relief
the disallowance
is
motion that's
significant.
moved by Senator Bragg on the
Around
disallowance of the tax assessment bill
8,500
to rent
Australian
developments
women
determination
suffering from
2024
endometriosis could save more
be agreed
than
to. Now,
$2,300
those of that
a
opinion
year
say aye.
from the listing of
Those
specific
against say
medicines
no.
on the PBS.
I think the noes
Similarly,
have it.
around
Is
50,000 women
a division
a
required?
year who use Yaz
Now,
and
being
Yasmin
after
contraceptive
6:30,
pills,
we will
which are
defer
now on the PBS, will pay nearly
vote
1/4
until the
of the
next day
original
of
amount
sitting.
annually.
Now we'll
from the
move
1st
to
of
government
January.
business. Orders of the day.
And Deputy Speaker, it's
Number one,
incredibly fitting the member for
Clerk.
Cooper is in the chamber today.
Government business orders
Because
of the
the
day.
member
Number
for
one,
Cooper
Fair Work
was
Amendment, protecting
absolutely
penalty and overtime
instrumental
rates Bill
in bringing
2025,
forward
continuation
a
of debate on the
$500
second
billion
reading and the
investment
amendment moved
in
by
women's
Senator
health.
Kovacic.
The largest
Thank you very much,
investment
Clerk, for that.
that this
I'm going to
country
do your job.
has ever
Now,
seen.
Senator
I had the great
Henderson,
privilege
you have the call.
of
Thank you very much,
hosting the
Acting
member for
Deputy
Cooper
President.
in my
It's
local
my
electorate
pleasure
in
to
Brisbane,
rise
in Fairfield.
and speak on the Fair Work
And
Amendment
what we
protecting
did in
penalty
Fairfield
and
was
overtime
we talked
rates
with people in their
Bill
homes.
2025,
We talked to them
and I
about
do join
what
with my
investing in
colleagues in
healthcare
raising
like that
serious
meant.
concerns
We talked to them
about this
about
bill.
the largest
In doing
investment
so,
in
I do
women's
want to
health.
commend
And
the
we talked to
excellent
them
dissenting
about
report
how life-changing
handed down
it
by
was
Coalition
to
Senators
invest
Kovacic
in oral
and
contraceptives,
Sharma
to
in the
invest
bill
in
inquiry
support for
by the
menopause,
Senate
to
Education and
invest
Employment
in
Legislation
making sure
Committee.
that women's health is
The
top
Coalition
priority.
supports penalty
And around
and
150,000
overtime
women
rates.
will save
That
up to
is not in
$370
question in
per
any
year
respect.
from next January.
But on this
with
side of the
listing
chamber, we
of
are
3 new
concerned
menopausal
about
hormone
the
therapies.
long-term impact.
Speaker, these are
of
just a
this
few
bill
of the
on
examples of the
employee
cost of living
choice,
relief that the PBS
flexibility,
and this reform
business
will
viability,
provide.
and particularly
For some, the PBS
the
listing is
viability
even
of
more
many
meaningful.
small and family
It is
businesses,
simply life-changing
as well as
and
national
potentially
productivity.
even life-saving.
As this
Under the PBS,
excellent
medicines that
dissenting
were
report
prohibitively
makes
expensive
clear,
become
this
affordable.
bill hits small
And this is the
businesses
case for patients
extremely
with
hard.
prostate cancer,
It
who without
risks
the subsidy for
retrospective
Talzenna
application.
and Standy
It does
would have
give
to pay
rise to
over
all sorts of
$100,000 per
uncertainty.
course of treatment.
It impacts
The medicine
employee choice,
Redivomo
and it also
is used to
imposes
fight a
risk
type of
to
non-small
work
cell
from home
lung cancer.
arrangements.
And under the PBS, patients
but from
avoid
my
a
perspective,
course of treatment that can cost
Acting Deputy President, I think the biggest concern with this
$280,000. And there are
is
many
the risk
such more
to small
examples.
and family
And
businesses.
my apologies,
Small
Deputy
businesses
Speaker,
are
I
being
definitely
hit with
have messed up the
new
pronunciation
compliance
of
burdens
that medicine.
almost
But
every
can I
year
tell you,
under the
you do not
Albanese
need to be
government.
able to pronounce what the medicine
Evidence
is
shows that
to
I
get
must
the
spend
25
15 hours a
cap
week on compliance,
cheaper medicines.
which
and
is
that's
time
important.
taken away from
The
running
PBS is
their
not an
businesses.
exclusive club. All
And the very
Australian
big
residents
difference, of course,
who hold
between
a
a small
current
business and a
Medicare
large
card
corporation
are
is
eligible
that small
to access
operators
the
cannot
PBS.
absorb
Citizens of
the
countries
extra
with reciprocal
costs
health
of
arrangements,
meeting
such as New
regulatory
Zealand and the
burdens,
UK and Ireland,
and of course,
are also eligible.
does
And the
lead
numbers
to
clearly illustrate the
real
scale of the
pressures
PBS.
on so
In
many small
2023-24, over
businesses and, of course,
226
business
million
closures.
subscribed,
And at a
subsidised
time
prescriptions were
in our
dispensed.
country,
The government
when
contributed
so many
17.7 billion, patients
so many
contributed
small
1.6
businesses
billion,
under
and the
pressure.
patient co-payment contributes to the
they do not need
sustainability
anything
of the
to
PBS.
make their job more
This
difficult.
bill is the Albanese
really
Labor government's fifth
don't
wave of
think
reform
the
to ensure
government
medicines
cares very
are
much
cheaper.
about small business.
It cuts the costs of PBS medicines,
And
the last time
if it did care
medicines
about
cost
small
no more than
business,
$25
there is a very,
was
very
in
good
2004.
case for an amendment
2004 was a long time ago. We know
small
it was a
business,
time
which
when
we
Shannon
put
Noll was
forward
on
in
top of
this
the charts,
debate to be
something that he
agreed
might
by
still
the
should
Senate.
be. We know that it was a
But I
time
do
for
wanna
me
make
when I was at
the-
university.
I do want to make this very
when I was
important point.
wearing
The
pleated
Fair
denim
Work
skirts
legislation already
and while
has
some things should come back,
adequate
Deputy
powers
Speaker,
to safeguard
not all of them should.
penalty rates through the Better Off Overall
In July
test.
2022,
So
the
this
Albanese
is
Labor
a
government
bill
implemented a
looking
$480 million reform. The 25% reduction in the number of scripts a concessional patient must fill before the PBS safety net kicks in.
The bill has arisen,
and this has seen pensioners
as a result of
save
the
over
retail industry
$500
wanting to pay
million.
their workers 35% more.
General patients also
Labor has
benefited
introduced
with a decrease of around $80 to their threshold.
This attempt to
a
pay
$625
more
million investment in January 2023 enabled the government to announce the largest cut to the cost of medicines
here we
in
have
PBS
sector
history.
In our economy wanting
and to start this year off, Labor froze the costs
and the
of PBS medicines
because
with
co-payments,
co-payments
as we know, every
not increasing
Labor
with
senator
inflation
in
for the
this
first
place
time
is a representative of a
in
union.
25 years.
And they
all
come in
of these
here
measures
and they undertake
strengthen
and
Medicare.
fulfil
all of these
their
measures
union's
stand
business
alongside
and
Labor
agenda.
initiatives to increase rates of bulk billing,
But
to
of
train
course,
more doctors and nurses, and
the
open
unions
more urgent
don't
care
care
clinics.
about small business.
At last count, there were
This
87
government doesn't care
across
about
the
small
country,
business,
and there are plans
and this
for an additional
bill is further
50.
evidence
I'm delighted,
of
Deputy
this.
Speaker, to have an urgent
So
care
the bill
clinic
would
in my
enable
patch
unions
in
to bring
Oxford,
applications
and one just
to
across the road
vary
at the PA
existing
hospital.
awards, placing an
These
unfair burden
are health
on employers
initiatives driven
trying
by
to
Labor
maintain
that help
stability
people
for their
every day.
businesses and their employees.
And they are health initiatives
so this
that make
adds
sure that people have
considerable red
access
tape
to more
small business,
affordable
which already
healthcare
faces
every day.
35
Speaker,
major Fair
the
Work
PBS
Act changes
is a trusted
under Labor,
and essential part
34
of our
them
national
which
fabric,
disproportionately
and it is a Labor
affect
invention.
small business.
It is Labor that
And the
has
other thing that
always
I would
prioritised
the other
healthcare,
really important point
and
that
whether
I would
it's
make
Medicare,
is that by
whether
constraining
it's
the Commission,
cheaper PBS
the
medicines,
bill undermines
whether it's
independence
expanding
and
bulk
risks
billing,
unintended
whether it's
consequences
making sure that
in
women's
award
health
variation.
is at the forefront of our
as
funding, whether it's
Coalition
making sure that
Senators
every day people
Kovacic
have
and
access
Sharma have
to
so,
health care
comprehensively
of who we
reiterated
are
in their dissenting
and part
report.
of what Labor
This
will always
bill
do for
could
this country.
operate retrospectively. Now,
I thank the member
committee
for
in its
Moreton. I must say
majority
your
report
pronunciation
denied
is
that,
so
but
good.
the
You clearly
evidence
will be a future
to
health
that
minister.
effect was absolutely clear.
The question is
and of course,
that the
this
amendment
creates
be
a
agreed
greater
to, and I
burden
call the member
for
for Leica.
businesses, particularly small
Thank you, Speaker.
businesses.
I rise
Greater
to speak in
uncertainty
support of the National Health
for
Amendment
them,
Bill,
and of course,
also known as cheaper
it
medicines.
exposes employers
Speaker, let me take
to
you back to
union-driven
2004.
variations
Unlike the
of
member for Hunter,
existing
my beard was
awards.
there, though less grey, and still remarkably
So,
patchy.
As I
had
say,
more
this
bounce. My
bill
favourite song was From the Sea by Eskimo
particular
Joe,
concern
and at
for
the
small
time I was still
business.
playing basketball in the
one
NBL.
of the amendments that's been
would
put
ask-
forward
I would ask the people of
is
Australia not to hold
that
this against
small
me,
businesses
but I was playing for
should
the
be
New Zealand
exempt
Breakers.
from the bill's operation.
If it makes you feel any better,
If Labor
we won
cared about small
significantly
business,
less
it would agree to
than
this
we
amendment.
lost. The other important thing about 2004, though, was that it was the last time PBS medicines cost no
is one
more
of
than
the
$25.
Key stakeholder groups,
Under this bill,
which has
the
warned
maximum
that
cost of
this
medicine
bill
on the
will
pharmaceutical benefit
discourage
scheme
employment
goes
and
down from
drag down
$31.60 to $25.
The Minister, in fact, has
When
no
these
idea
changes
how
come
many
into
small
effect on the
businesses
1st
will
of
be
July
impacted
2026,
by this
we will
bill.
be
So what we
delivering
really
on a
need
key
from this
commitment
government
made at the
is
last
a clear,
election.
focused plan to address
And I can
the
tell you
needs
this
of
will be
small
welcomed
business
by
and
many,
the
many
economy.
locals in my
We
electorate
need policies
and right
that make
across
it
the country.
easier for businesses
When I was
to
on the
expand,
doors, at the markets, and
hire
just talking
young
to people in the
Australians
street,
and
there
provide
was always people
opportunities
come up to me
for
to
them
talk
to
about
get
how
a
hard the
foothold
cost of
in
living
the
was and
workforce.
how that impacted
I have
their
to
health.
say, as a Victorian senator,
To many locals in my
the
electorate concerned
situation
about the
is
cost of living, let me
particularly
say this.
in Victoria.
We hear you.
Everywhere
I hear you.
I go,
The Anthony Albanese
because
Labor
of
government
the
hears you
regressive
and responds.
policies of the Allen
And this is why
Labor
the government's been
government in
working hard to
Victoria,
address some of the key
because
challenges
of
facing
the
Australian
massive
households.
debt and
We've already
deficit,
legislated tax
at
cuts
a
for all
state
Australian
level,
taxpayers.
combined, of course,
We've delivered cheaper
with the massive
childcare.
debt and
We've brought in
deficit
more
of
funding
this
for GP
government.
bulk billing.
Businesses
We've provided
are
help to
saying,
people
"We
to
don't
pay their
want to
energy
trade
bills.
anymore in
And
Victoria."
work is well underway to help more Australians buy or rent
Businesses
their
are
own
actually
home.
saying, we are looking
We've overseen
to
raises
go
to the minimum wage
to
for
other
workers
states.
across the country.
And I know
We're
of
protecting
multiple
flexible working
businesses
arrangements and
which
penalty rates.
have either packed up
And in the
shop
last sitting, we passed
or
a
are
20%
planning
cut to HECS,
move interstate
a change that I will
because
remind
they do
everyone the
not
Liberals
get a
didn't feel the
fair
need to
go,
vote for.
in Victoria.
There's also work underway to support more cheap and clean energy.
Small businesses make up
There's a commitment to
90%,
punish
97%
supermarkets with
of
price
all
gouging.
Australian businesses,
Delivering cheaper medicines
employing
is one
millions of
part of this
Australians
larger push
and driving
from our Labor
innovation,
government to help make the cost of
diversity
living
and
manageable.
resilience across every community.
It is also a change
They
that will make a
embody
lot
the
of
liberal
people
value
difference
of
to people's
enterprise,
lives,
where
their
hard
reliance
work,
on medicines.
risk-taking
So this is what the bill will
and
mean.
initiative are
There
rewarded
will be a
with
20%
success
cut in the maximum
and
cost of
opportunity.
PBS medicines, which
Small
will save
businesses
Australians
are
over
not
$200
just
million per
economic
year.
units.
4 out of
They
5
are
PBS
often
medicines will become
family-owned
cheaper
and
because of our
community-based
government's
businesses
$689
supporting
million
local
investment.
jobs and
pensioners
community
and
organisations.
concession card holders will continue
However,
to benefit
under this
from the
government,
freeze to the cost of their
small
PBS
businesses
medicines,
face
with the
record
cost frozen at its
insolvencies,
current level of
higher
$7.70
compliance
until
obligations
2030.
and rising operational
That's the cost
costs.
of living support Australians expect and deserve.
Unlike those opposite,
it's the Australian
we will
idea of
always
the fair
back small
go,
business,
allowing
not
people to
burden
live
them,
with dignity
so
and
that
not
they
be
can
afraid of the
create
fixed cost in
jobs,
their lives
build
that
prosperity,
medication can
and
represent.
keep community strong.
This bill builds on the important
Community
work the
strong.
Anthony Albanese Labor
And
government has
that
already
is
done
exactly
to
what
make
we are
medicines
trying
cheaper.
to do with
That's
this
right.
amendment,
We have four.
which, as I say,
In July
I don't have a high
2022,
degree of
we announced
confidence.
more free and cheaper medicines sooner, with a
but
25% reduction
Labor
in the
can
number of scripts
actually
a
try
concessional
and
patient
restore
must fill
the faith
before
of
the
small
PBS
business
safety
by
net kicks in.
supporting this amendment.
In January 2023, we announced the largest
The
cut
bill also
in the cost of
removes choice for
medicines in the
workers who
history
may
of the
prefer
PBS,
higher
with the
base
maximum
salaries,
cost of general
stability
script
in
falling
income, or
from
flexible
$42.50
over
to
fluctuating
$30.
penalty rates.
From September
The bill could
2023,
limit
we
work
started
from
delivering
home
60-day
flexibility with employers
prescriptions, saving both
first
time
forced
and
into
money to
intrusive
millions of Australians
monitoring
with ongoing
to
health
meet
conditions.
record-keeping rules.
And most recently, we
Many
of course
workers
announced
prefer
freezing the cost of
stability
PBS
a
medicines,
higher,
with
more
co-payments
consistent
not
base
rising with
salary.
inflation for all
This helped
Australians
with
for the first
budgeting,
time
growing
in
superannuation,
25
borrowing
years.
capacity.
In my
and
electorate
avoiding
alone,
income
this has meant that
volatility.
people in Leichhardt, as of the
Women
31st of
in
July
particular
2025,
highlighted
have saved over
problems where fluctuating
$8.8
penalty
million
earnings
under
make
our cheaper
Centrelink
medicine
and
policies.
child support estimates
And that is the
very
nitty-gritty of the
unreliable.
numbers. They make the
Employees
policy.
should have the freedom to
I don't live
choose
in a
pay
policy.
structures which
I live in
best
Leichhardt.
suit their
And
circumstances.
there are real-world
By
applications to
forcing
this.
a one-size-fits-all
So think about that for a moment.
framework, the bill
$8.8 million.
locks employees out of
That is money
arrangements
back in people's
which
pockets.
might better support
Money
them.
that people can spend.
Even
Take
if
the
the
family to the
majority
movies.
of employees
Make
want
sure
a
that the
particular
kids' Christmas
arrangement,
is a little better,
the
not
Commission,
dealing
and
with
this
that
is
stress.
particularly egregious,
Don't have to be afraid that something's going to, if something happens to the
prevented
car,
from approving
or the
it
hot water
if
system
any
blows up.
hypothetical
Or in the case of Cairns, the air
worker
conditioner goes on the
might,
fritz, which
at
is
some
much more
point,
serious.
be worse off.
It's reducing
So
stress
this
in life.
denies employees
And as we
the
know,
ability
if
to
your
strike
health
a
is
balance
poor,
between
money is tight,
financial security
this can make recovery
and
harder.
workplace
This bill
flexibility.
helps address
and this goes
that.
to the heart of denying
It's assisting people living in
proper
remote places,
choice.
like my
in
electorate,
the
only having to
workplace.
travel once every 60 days
It also
into town
undermines
to get rather
debates
than their
on
monthly
remote
pickup for their
work and
prescriptions,
flexible hours,
saving
issues
time
that
and
matter
money and
deeply
keeping
to
people at
today's
home longer.
modern workforce.
Spend any time in any
So
remote community
instead
and they
of
will tell you they live in the
empowering
best place on
employees,
earth.
the bill strips
This gives people more time
them of
where
genuine
they want
choice.
to be. It's
True
new
reform
medicines on the
should
PBS and a
expand
focus on
workplace
women's health that
options.
is an area that's been
True
ignored for far
reform
too
should
long.
drive
This is giving
the
women the
will to
care they need
invest.
and deserve.
True
New
reform
contraceptive
should
pills to fit the
excite
PBS.
young
Treatments
businesses,
for perimenopause.
small businesses to
Giving women
grow,
an ongoing
to hire
conversation
more
regarding
employees,
menopause, HRT, and allowing
not
further understanding of
to
issues
hamper
such as
their
endo.
growth, not to hamper investment.
People with complex and
in
chronic
many
conditions are
cases,
supported by
not
the
to
PBS
shut
safety
them
net
down.
kicking in sooner. This provides peace of mind that the bills won't keep
Of course,
piling
we've heard a
up
lot about
in what can be a
productivity
very,
in the
very trying
last
time.
few weeks.
Investments in
The
primary health
productivity
care, including
roundtable
community-controlled entities,
was nothing more
which
than a
deliver
cover
culturally
after
appropriate
Labor spent
care,
3
because we
years
know that primary
telling
health care
Australians that there
is
was
the
nothing
guardrail
wrong
at the
with
top
the
of the
economy,
cliff,
everything was
not
going
the
just
ambulance
fine.
waiting for you at the bottom.
So we get through the election.
This now includes a
And now,
commitment
of
to mobile
course,
cancer screening on the Cape,
the government,
and
at
a
least the
focus on
Treasurer,
work preventing
is admitting
FASD.
that reform is required
People's dignity
and much more
is at the
needs to be
forefront of
done
every decision made.
to address
People don't want to feel
a
punished
rapidly
for having a health
declining
condition,
productivity,
because you should never have to choose
rapidly
between your meds
skyrocketing
and a meal.
costs of doing business.
These are the real-world
and
outcomes
a
that are
very
benefiting
depressed
people right
investment
now, benefiting them
framework
physically,
for so many
emotionally,
businesses.
and financially.
So Australia
And it's
and
work like
Australian
this that shows why
businesses need
Australians trust Labor
policies
to make
which
Medicare
boost
stronger.
output,
Labor
not
built Medicare.
entrench rigid,
Labor protects Medicare.
one-size-fits-all
Now Labor is
arrangements.
expanding Medicare.
Business groups warned that the
$8.5
bill would
billion
make
committed to ensure more
rostering
bulk billing,
more rigid
cheaper medicines,
and
heaps of
complex,
hospitals funding
diverting
urgent care clinics
resources
right
into
across the country,
compliance instead of
including a new
productive
one
work,
for my area in the
existing
northern parts of
above-award
Cairns.
arrangements that deliver higher pay
Better access to health
and
care for women,
stability community could be
those from the
invalidated,
LGBTQI+
leaving some workers
community,
worse
people
off.
living in regional,
And
rural,
again,
remote
that goes
communities,
to the
and
lack
of course
of
Aboriginal
flexibility
Torres Strait
and
Islander
employee
people.
choice.
Better health
And we
care.
know in the climate where
This is
Australia's
what Labor
productivity has
governments
gone
mean.
backwards.
This is what they've always meant.
Under Labor, in just
It's who we
3
are.
years,
It's
it has
also what we
fallen
continue to
by
fight for.
more than 5%.
But let's not forget the alternative, though.
And this is the last
There is a reason
thing
the
that
public
so many
don't believe the
businesses
LNP when they say they
need.
support Medicare.
Since
It
the
might be that there
coalition
have been
left,
massive funding cuts to
office
hospitals
living
under
standards
previous
have
LNP
plummeted
governments.
by around 6%.
It might be that previous LNP
Australians
governments
are
in
working
Queensland
harder,
decimated the public
but
service,
they are
including
getting less
frontline
in
health workers.
return.
It might be that every time we have an
government needs to
LNP government, they
understand
always have the same
that it's
fever
not the
dream
government
and seek to
that creates
privatise
jobs.
Medicare.
but it's businesses.
Leaving the LNP in charge of Medicare is akin to leaving Jason Voorhees in
medium,
charge of summer camp.
small and family businesses.
Just like Jason, the LNP
and in
acquired,
this depressed climate
give them
that
a
we
chance
are
and they will
currently
cut
in,
and slash
where
everything
our
they can.
economy is whimpering
In both
along,
cases, I'm very much doubt whether the
businesses
Australian public
need
wants to
every
clean up the mess left
possible
behind. The LNP have shown
and
time and time
encouragement
again
to invest.
Medicare and our health services are not
As I say,
something
in
they are
Victoria,
willing to support
so many
or value.
businesses are struggling
As
just
Maya
to keep the
Angelou
doors
told us,
open, looking
when someone
further
shows you who they are,
to
believe them the
states
first
like
time.
South Australia and New
Australians are
South
fools.
Wales, where
They know
they
the
see
LNP
a
is
much
not
more
focused on their health.
investment-friendly climate.
I couldn't believe during the campaign how many people would
So,
come up to me worried
Acting Deputy President,
about what might happen if the
this
LNP
is
had
a
won, what
disappointing
they might do to
bill that is
Medicare.
before this
If you're in an
Parliament.
emergency,
As
you
the
want a
Senate
well-funded
Committee
and
inquiry
high-quality
heard,
health system.
this
If you
government
have a
did
chronic
not want to
condition,
have
you want
confirmed
high
the Fair
primary
Work
health
Commission
care
has both
when
the
you need
power
it.
and
And if you're
proven track
comparing the
record to
pair,
safeguard
there really is no
penalty
choice.
and overtime rates.
Only a Labor government will make
The
Medicare
important point
stronger
to
and
also make is
healthcare
that the
more
Commission
affordable.
is not only empowered but
Like I said
required
before, there are a lot of ways
under
we are
Section
doing this and will continue to
134
do
of the
this.
Fair Work Act
Be it the urgent
to
care clinics,
maintain
which
a
have been a
fair
roaring
and
success,
relevant safety net
or if it's more funding for bulk billing,
employees. I mean,
whether
the
it's more
Fair Work
support
Act
for the
is several thousand
LGBTQIA+
pages. It is an
community
enormous burden
to allow them access to
on
healthcare,
particularly small
whether it's
businesses.
making sure
This
culturally
is gonna
appropriate
make
care is
things
available to Aboriginal
so
and
much
Torres Strait Islander
tougher,
people.
and frankly,
All of these
small
things
and
and
family
so much
businesses
more
deserve better.
build up a
Thank
better
you.
healthcare system and a stronger Medicare.
Thank you very much, Senator Henderson.
This bill is to deliver more
Minister.
cheaper medicines.
Thank
And
you,
really,
Acting Deputy
it's just
President.
the important
I'd like to
next
thank
step.
members for their contributions
Cheaper
to the
medicines are
debate
good
on the
for your
Fair
hip
Work
pocket
Amendment
and good
protecting
for your
penalty
health.
and overtime
Your
rates
health
Bill
is the most valuable
2025.
thing you will
This
ever
bill
have.
is a clear, simple and
The
practical
PBS has
amendment
always sought
to
to ensure
protect
that medicine
penalty
you
and
need is
overtime
available at the
rates
price you can
as
afford.
fundamental
And
entitlements
now this
relied
bill
on by
ensures that
millions
ideal
of
moving forward.
award-reliant
That
Australian
quintessentially
workers.
Australian ideal
The Albanese
of
government
the
is
fair
committed
go
to delivering
continues.
workplace relations reforms
This bill is
with a
critical to
clear
help deliver
goal
cheaper
in sight
medicines and
to
more
get
cost of
wages
living
moving
support
for Australian
Australians.
workers.
This bill
We've
will
heard
ensure
strong
that people are
support
able
for
to
this
maintain
bill
dignity
and the fundamental
and that they
importance
never
of penalty and
have to choose
overtime rates for
between meds
employees,
and a meal. I
particularly
commend this
from
bill
some
to
of the
the House.
lowest paid workers in our country,
thank the member for
those who
Leichhardt.
keep
The
Australia
question is
running
the
on
member be
weekends,
agreed
public
to,
holidays,
and
early
I call
mornings
the
and late
member for
nights.
Petrie.
We prioritise this
Thank you,
bill
Deputy
as one of
Speaker.
the first legislative acts
I
of
want to
this
begin
government
with a story
because we will
about Mary,
always act
a
to
single
protect
mother
the
of
pay
two
and
living in
conditions of
Kippa-Ring.
Australian workers.
Mary manages a
Currently,
chronic condition
penalty and
and fills
overtime
4
rates in modern
PBS
awards can be
prescriptions a
rolled
month.
up into a single
One
rate
for
of
herself
pay,
and the others for
leaving
her
some
children.
employees worse off.
Under the current system,
And
that's
in
over
fact, we're actually seeing attempts by some employer
a year
groups to do
just
that
for
at this
essential
very moment in
medications.
time, particularly
With the
in the
new
retail,
$25
banking
cap,
and clerical
she'll save
industries.
$300 annually.
This should not be
That's the
possible to
difference
do.
between covering the medicines her
Award-reliant
children need
employees who
and
rely on their
stretching her
penalty
already
and
tight
overtime
budget
rates
even further.
deserve steadfast protection
I
of
met a
those
veteran
entitlements
in
in minimum
Brackenridge
safety
named
net.
Joseph, who had a
This
concession
bill
card and had
introduces a
been
new
paying just
principle into the Fair Work
$7.70
Act
per script.
to protect
That
penalty
rate
and
has been
overtime
frozen
rates in
until
modern
2030,
awards.
protecting him
Specifically,
from
it
rising
ensures
costs,
that
allowing
these
him to
rates
plan his
cannot be
finances
reduced
without
or
fear
substituted
of
in ways
unexpected
that
raises.
do not fairly compensate
These stories show
employees
how policy
for the penalty
translates
and
into
overtime rates
genuine
that they would
relief,
otherwise
and
receive.
how savings that might look
This bill
small in
enshrines
isolation can
protections
add
for
up to
penalty
real
and
freedom,
overtime rates
peace of
in
mind,
modern
and
awards,
financial stability.
while not affecting individual flexibility
I'm proud to champion
arrangements,
this reform
the
in
bargaining
Parliament.
framework,
It
or the Fair
reinforces
Work
what I've
Commission's
always
ability
believed,
to correct
that
errors
healthcare
or
should not be
clarify
a privilege
award
for the
terms.
well-off, but a guarantee for
This
all,
amendment
regardless
sets out
of
the
income.
important principle
Starting from
that
January
penalty and
1st,
overtime rates
the people of
cannot
Petrie
be
will be able to
reduced.
fill their PBS
It does this
prescriptions
by adding
for
a
less.
new section to the
A
Fair
change
Work
that will
Act,
make a real
which
difference for
says
people
in
with
exercising
diabetes,
its powers,
high blood pressure,
the Fair Work
chronic
Commission
pain,
must
mental health
ensure,
conditions, and
firstly,
so much more.
the specified penalty
Imagine
rate
walking
or
into your local
overtime rate
pharmacy,
in modern awards
like Terry
is not
White
reduced,
in Margate,
and
where Chris
secondly,
Campbell and his
modern
incredible
awards do
team
not
have been
include
serving the
terms that
community
allow
for
employers
years.
to roll up penalty
They know
or
their
overtime
customers
rates
by name.
into a single
They
pay
know the
rate
medications
that
that
do not
patients
fairly
rely on,
compensate
and they go
employees for the
above and
penalty
beyond
and
to make
overtime
sure
rates they would
everyone
otherwise
receives
receive.
the care and guidance
This
they
bill
need.
introduces a simple amendment
I had the
to
pleasure of
ensure that
visiting Chris
penalty and
and the team
overtime rates
recently,
in the modern awards safety
and I was
net are
truly
protected.
impressed. They walked me through their
I'd like
pharmacy,
to thank the Senate
showing
Education
me
and
not just
Employment
the
Legislation
prescriptions,
Committee
but
for
the
their
personal
report on the
connections
bill.
they've built with their
I know
patients.
that recommendation 1
Community
and
pharmacists
the only
have tough
recommendation of the
conversations
committee
with their
is
patients
that the bill
every
be
single day.
passed. The committee
Patients that
process
are having
provided
to choose
stakeholders
between
with an
filling their
opportunity
scripts
to share their
or paying
views
for
publicly,
groceries.
and it clearly
I saw
demonstrated the
firsthand
importance
the
of
care
the
and
bill
compassion
and the
of
strong
Margate Terry
support
White
it has received.
that they show their patients,
I thank the
explaining
Australian
dosages,
Greens for the
offering
support of the
advice,
Chair's
supporting
report,
families
the
in
intent
ways
of the
that
bill
go far
and the
beyond filling the
recommendation from the
script.
committee to pass the
Their
legislation.
dedication is
I note the
incredible,
Australian
and their
Greens
passion for
additional
helping the community
recommendation
is
1
clear in
that
every
the Australian
interaction.
Government consider amending
It's
Regulation
moments like this,
3.34
in meeting local
of the
heroes
Fair
like
Work
Chris and seeing the
Regulations
human side of
2009
healthcare
to make
that
it
make
an
policies like
explicit
the
requirement of
$25
employers
PBS
to keep
cap
time
feel
and
even
wage
more powerful.
records, even if
Because it's
exemption
not just numbers
rates
on a
or an
page.
equivalent is in effect.
It's about being able to.
The
It's
government's
about people
view
being
is that
able
an
to
amendment
afford the
of this nature
medications
is
they
not
need,
necessary.
and about local
The new
pharmacies
principle
continuing to
requires
provide
the
the
Commission
exceptional
to ensure
service
that any
without
rolled-up
compromise.
pay arrangement must fairly
I
compensate
left feeling
employees for the
inspired and
penalty and
excited
overtime rates
to work
they would otherwise
further
receive.
with them and to hear
It will
more
be
of
a
the
matter for the
stories about
Independent
the
Commission to
difference
satisfy
affordable medicines
itself
are making to
that
their
this new
patients,
standard is
and
met.
to keep advocating for
In
initiatives
contemporary
that support both our
considerations
local
of terms
healthcare
that
providers
substitute
and the
penalty and
families they
overtime
serve.
rates, the Commission
This
has
is
required
community
record
in
keeping
action,
as a
and the
means of
savings
assessing
are
whether an
remarkable.
employee is
Australians
less
will
worse
save
off.
up to $6.60 on
Annualised
each
wage
prescription.
arrangements, for example,
Collectively,
contain
over the
a
next 4
record-keeping
years,
requirement
the cut will
to
put
ensure an employee receives their full entitlements
$689
for their
million
actual hours
back into the
worked.
pockets of patients.
If an employer does not
The
meet
money
their
being saved
record-keeping
isn't going to the
obligations under the
checkout
Fair
counter
Work
at the
Act
chemist,
or
but is
applicable
instead
modern
helping
award
people pay the
term,
bills,
the Fair
cover
Work
their
Ombudsman
mortgages.
is there to take enforcement
These
action.
savings will quickly
In
make
relation
a
to the
difference,
Coalition's dissenting
especially for
recommendations,
patients with multiple regular
recommendation
prescriptions
1
for
from the
essential
Coalition
medicines. These
mentioned
are the
that the
people
Australian
that need
Government
it
should be
most.
required to prepare a
For every
comprehensive
script
regulatory
filled
impact
under this
statement
policy
assessing
is a
the
small
costs,
act
benefits
of
and
relief.
productivity effects of the
But
bill
when you
before
add
its
them up,
passage.
millions of scripts,
Let me be clear.
millions
The
of
Government is
dollars
firmly
saved,
committed to
it paints a
evidence-based
clear
policy
picture.
development and decision-making.
This
reform,
is a government
as is
that's
the case with all
delivering
reforms,
meaningful,
was
practical
assessed to
change.
determine the appropriate
Not
level
slogans,
of impact analysis
not
required.
empty promises,
The
but
Office
real
of Impact
relief for
Analysis
millions of
determined
Australians
that
right
an
when they
impact
need it
analysis
most.
was not required for this
This
reform
is what good
because it
policy
does
looks
not
like.
impose new
Real,
obligations on
tangible
employers,
savings,
nor
millions
introduce
of
any
millions
new
of times
regulation
over
or
for people who
processes for
need
them
it
to
most.
comply with. It's
In
actually
Petrie-
about sticking
in Petrie,
with things
where
as they
hardworking
currently
families,
stand, rather than
pensioners,
imposing
modest
new
income
obligations.
households make up
To
a
address
large part of our
concerns about the
community.
bill's impact on
This
productivity,
policy
it
will
has
put
never
healthcare
been and
within
never
reach.
will be the
Whether
solution,
you rely on one
at least for this
medication
government,
or
to
several,
make
the new
workers
cap
do more for
ensures
less.
that you are not going
This
without.
government is committed to improving
afford,
productivity
you are not-
and enhancing
the new
economic
cap ensures
resilience,
you're not going
but we
without
do not
to afford the
accept that
medication
setting
you
hard-working award-covered workers backward, sending hard-working
PBS medications
award-covered
have not
workers
cost
backwards
$25
through
since
reductions to their penalty and
2004.
overtime rates is the
Now,
way to do
I
this.
don't know about you,
The
but I
path
was
to
10
achieving
years old
flexibility and
back
productivity
then,
gains
and
can be
life
found in
looked
cooperative
a
and
little
good faith
different.
enterprise bargaining rather than by undermining
In
award
2004,
entitlements.
my
Our
mum would
bargaining
yell at me,
reforms
"Get
increased
off the
access for
internet,
workers and
I need to make
employers,
a phone call."
including small business, to
We
negotiate
were still
agreements
burning
with
our
their
favourite
employees
songs
and
onto
unions.
CDs,
This
and most
includes
of us were
greater
still on
access to
MSN
multi-employer
Messenger,
bargaining,
poking our friends with
reducing the
nudges.
cost and effort of the
If
bargaining,
you had a mobile
and
phone,
changes
it
to
probably
improve
flipped open and
clarity
you had
and
to press
certainty for
the
agreement
number
approval.
7 once,
We're now seeing
the
record
number
enterprise
2
agreement
twice,
coverage with
and the number 7
significantly
again
improved
4
wages
times just to
outcomes
type
for
out
workers.
PBS. 2004
There's a number of
feels
points
like
that
a
have been
lifetime
made
ago.
about the role of the
But that's
the
also
Fair
how
Work
long
Commission,
Australians
and
have
we
been
respect
waiting
the
for
Commission's
medicines to be
role
this
as the
affordable
independent
again.
industrial tribunal.
And thanks to
The
Labor's
Commission will
reforms,
continue to interpret
from
and apply
January
the Fair Work Act,
2026,
including
we're
the new
winding the
principle
clock
introduced
back.
by this bill.
Not on technology,
This
thankfully,
process will be
but
guided
on the
by
price
its
of
usual
PBS
consultative
medicines.
approach,
Back
ensuring
to
all
the cheapest
interested
they've been
parties
in more than
have the
20
opportunity
years.
to present their
And this
views.
time, you won't
This
need
bill
dial-up
also
internet
preserves
to
the
access
Commission's
this benefit.
existing powers to remove an ambiguity,
It is very
uncertainty,
rare
or to
that you see
correct an error
prices
in a
go
modern award.
backwards. Year
We've
after
listened
year,
to concerns
year after year,
raised
costs costs
following
usually go up,
introduction that this
not
bill
down.
could require the Commission
That's
to
true for
review
most
all
things in
modern
life,
awards
whether
for
it's
compliance
rent,
with the new
groceries
principle,
or petrol.
or to review
And for
penalty and overtime
decades,
rates,
the cost of
even
filling
if
a
beyond the
script has
scope of a
kept
specific
crept
application.
higher and higher.
This has never been the intent
That's
of
why
this
this
bill.
reform is so
We are confident
remarkable.
that the bill as introduced
Labor
would
isn't
not
just
have
slowing the
operated
rise,
in this way.
we're turning it
However,
around.
this
We're
government
bringing
is
the cost of
committed to genuine
medicines down.
consultation,
That
including
means
with
that for the
employer
first time in a
representatives and
generation,
unions, and we
Australians will
amended the
walk
bill in
into
the
their
House for
pharmacy
the
and
avoidance
pay
of doubt
less than they usually do.
and to further provide
Think about
certainty
that
to
for a moment.
stakeholders.
At a
The bill
time
is
when
unequivocally
families are
clear.
under pressure
It will
from the
not
cost of
require the
living,
Commission to
the
undertake a
Albanese
review of
Labor
all
government
modern
is doing
awards,
something
initiate a
unusual,
review of any
something
award
that goes
terms
against the
outside the
grain.
scope of an
We're making
application
medicines
before
cheaper,
the Commission,
not more
or exercise
expensive.
its powers under Part
This is
2
one-
to 3
this
of
is
the
one
Fair
area
Work
where the
Act
government has
to
delivered
make, vary or
concrete
revoke
relief
modern awards.
where it matters
In conclusion,
most,
for many
right in
award-reliant
your medicine
employees,
cabinet.
Penalty and overtime rates are a critical part of their take-home pay.
The PBS is deeply
As we know, it's
important
low-paid
to both our
workers,
government
women
and
and young
Australia.
people who are more likely
It is one
to
of
be
Australia's
reliant
most
on awards,
important
as well as
health
those working
programs.
in retail and
It ensures
hospitality
that every
who often
Australian
work
can access
unsociable and
essential
irregular
medicines at the
hours.
price they can
This bill
afford.
is about fairness.
Without the PBS,
it's about respecting the
Australians would
millions of
face
Australians
full
who work
costs
public
of
holidays,
life-saving medications,
weekends,
costs
late
that could be
nights and early
hundreds
mornings.
or even
And if you get your
thousands of
penalty
dollars
rates, you
each
deserve
year.
them. This
Why is
bill
this
is
so
about making
important?
sure the safety net does what it's
Because
meant to
medicines
do,
aren't a luxury.
protect those who need it most. And on that
They're
basis, I
often the
commend
difference
the bill to
between
the Senate.
full, long, healthy life and suffering.
Thank you very much,
The
Minister.
PBS is the cornerstone of fairness in our healthcare system.
Is that the second
It
reading
doesn't just
amendment
treat symptoms.
that is moved
It
by
protects
Senator
families,
Kovacic be
reduces
agreed
stress,
to.
and gives Australians the peace
Now,
of
those of
mind
that opinion
knowing that
say
help is
aye.
there when they need it most.
Those against,
Australia
no.
is fortunate to have
No.
the PBS
I think the
because
noes
many
have it.
countries without a system like
The
this
ayes have
struggle
it.
to make medicines
Now, it's been
affordable.
after 6:30.
In so
we'll
many
have
other
to defer
countries,
this vote
patients
until the next
often
day of
pay
sitting.
hundreds of dollars for a single prescription.
Clark.
And it's not uncommon for people to skip or ration their medicines simply because they cannot
Just to be clear,
afford
we'll
them.
move into the next bill.
Families are
Clark,
forced to
you
make
have
the
call.
impossible choices
Government business
between
orders
medicines
today,
and other
number
essentials.
2, aged care and other legislation
The
amendment Bill
PBS
2025
protects
and
Australians
related bill,
from that harsh
second reading
reality.
debate.
It guarantees that whether you live in Narangba, Woody Point or Deception Bay, you can get the medicines you need without breaking the bank.
I rise to speak
It's
on
not
the
just a
Aged Care and
safety
Other
net.
Legislation
It's a
Amendment Bill
lifeline,
2025
a guarantee
and the
of
associated
fairness,
levy bill,
and a reason
which
why
is
Australians
integral
can
in
stay
delivering
healthier
the Aged
and live
Care
longer.
Act of 2024.
In short, the PBS
and
is
hence
more than a
is
scheme.
absolutely essential
It's a
to
commitment
delivering
that
the
healthcare
recommendations
is a
of the
right,
Aged Care
not a
Royal Commission,
privilege, and that
which was
no
instituted
Australian
under
should
former
ever be
coalition
left
government.
behind when it comes to medicine.
We will not be standing in the way
The
of the
PBS
passage
supports
of
Australians
these bills.
and has for close
But
to
let me
8
be very
decades
clear,
now. We
the
are
Aged Care
proud of
Act
our
of
track record of
2024
not
was a
just
package of
maintaining but
reforms
strengthening this
of the
system,
Labor Party's
delivering
making.
Australians
And it was
access
not a
to
co-designed
the
act
best medicines
alongside
available
the
from around the
coalition.
world at affordable
That's
prices.
why
Prices that we're making even more
in the first week
affordable.
of the 48th Parliament.
The PBS
this
isn't the
government
only
has
healthcare
introduced
initiative we're
this
strengthening.
bill
We've
particularly
tripled the bulk billing
to amend
incentive, ensuring that more families can see a GP without worrying about the bill.
items of the Aged Care
We're building
Act
more
2024
Medicare urgent
that they
care
pushed
clinics
through
so
this
Australians
Parliament,
can get care
refusing
close to
pass
home
any
instead of
sensible
waiting for
amendments
hours in a
proposed by
hospital emergency
anybody
department.
in this chamber.
We're investing in the biggest
Many of
expansion of
those
our
could have
health
been
workforce in
rectified
history,
during
training the
the
next
debate on the
generations
Aged Care
of doctors, nurses and
Had
midwives.
the government listened to the
These
sector
aren't
and
just
to the people
policies.
in this chamber.
They are practical,
Because
lasting changes
the
that mean when
coalition
you and your
always
family
knew
need
a
care,
reform of this size
you'll be able
could
to
not
get
be
it.
implemented in
Affordable,
just a matter of months.
accessible,
And that's
universal.
why during the debate
That's
on the
Labor's
Aged Care
vision
Act, the coalition
for
moved
healthcare,
amendments
and
to
it's a
ensure
vision we
that
are
the home
delivering.
care package program particularly
Accessible healthcare is
could
who
not,
we are.
could
In my
exist on a
electorate, Peninsula residents
transitional
will
basis
shortly be able to
without
walk
the
into the
need
Medicare
to
Mental Health
actually
Centre
amend the
and
Aged
get the
Care
mental
Act,
health support
nor
they
delay
need
its enactment.
without spending a cent.
This
All you need
amendment
to access
mitigated the
this
risk
local mental health support
of the
is your
department
Medicare
and
card.
sector readiness by creating transitional provisions to ensure
One of the
Aged
most
Care Act
important protections
2024
we've delivered
could come
is for
into
those
effect
who
on the
need it
1st of
most,
July
our pensioners,
2025,
our veterans
as the
and our
government
concession
had been
card holders.
promising.
Right
And ensuring
now,
that the
they
new
pay just
supported home
$7.70
with
for
the
a
promised
script
additional
under the PBS.
83,000
And under
home care
Labor, that
packages
cost will remain
could
frozen
commence
right
on
through
the
until
1st
the
of
end of
July
the decade.
2025.
That
But
means
those
no matter what
voted
pressures hit
against it.
household budgets,
And now,
the most
as a
vulnerable
result of
in
their
my
failure to
community
actually listen
can
to
fill their
sensible
prescriptions
reforms
knowing that the costs
to
won't
provide
go
the
up.
flexibility to
For someone
implement
living on a fixed
their
income,
reform,
that certainty
older
is
Australians
priceless.
have been denied their
I
rights
think of a pensioner
for
in
many
Bald Hills
more
living on a
months.
fixed income,
And
or the
they've been
carer
denied
in
the
Mango
care
Hill
that they've been
balancing
assessed
household
as
bills,
needing by this government.
or the veteran in North
Because of their
Lakes
failure
managing
to actually
chronic
be
pain.
prepared to put the
For each
transitional
of them,
provisions in place.
this freeze is
Senator
peace
Ruston.
of mind.
Now being
In
7:30, I
Petrie,
propose that the Senate
more than
be
40,000
now
people
adjourned.
hold a concession card. That's
Senator
tens
Whittaker.
of thousands
Thank you,
of
Acting
pensioners,
Deputy
seniors,
President.
veterans,
Western
and people of
Australia
low
has
incomes who
long
rely
been
on
the
affordable
engine
medication.
room of Australia's economy.
For
Our
them,
iron ore
the
industry
Labor government's decision
not
to
only
freeze
built
the
our
cost of the
economy, but it
PBS
has
concessions
underpinned
groups
our
at
nation's
$7.70
export
until
strength
2030
for decades.
isn't
Last
just
year alone,
good
WA
policy,
mined more
it
than
is a lifeline.
860 million
It means
tonnes
security.
of iron ore.
It means certainty.
And behind every tonne
it means that they
are
can go to the
thousands of
pharmacy knowing that
workers.
the price of their
Miners,
medication
train
won't
drivers,
creep year
engineers,
after year.
maintenance crews,
And when you
port
add it
operators
all
and
up,
contractors,
that's
and many more.
tens of thousands
Many of the union
households
members
in
whose
Petrie
labour
who will be
has
healthier,
built our nation's
more
prosperity.
secure, less stressed.
Behind
because
them,
Labor is putting
families and
people
communities
first.
in Karratha, Port
Take
Hedland,
Rose,
Newman,
a
Tom
Red
Price,
Cross pensioner who
Parraboo
wrote
and
to my
Onslow
office.
that
She fills
depend on the
six
stability
scripts a
of
month
this
for
industry.
arthritis and other health issues.
But as the world moves to net zero, the way we make and use steel must change. That is why green iron is a great opportunity for our nation. It's an opportunity that will safeguard our economy, create secure jobs and help us cut our emissions.
Deputy Speaker,
An opportunity to create a new multi-billion-dollar manufacturing industry.
community and to the Australian
If we
economy
stand
on the
still,
table.
we risk our
And that is
largest
access to
export
small and medium
industry
business
being left
financing.
behind.
Because it's
That
not
would mean
working
fewer
in this
jobs
country. It
and a
needs to be
much
much better.
harder
And this
path
is an issue
to
that
net
we
zero.
just have not been discussing
And frankly,
enough
a weaker
in this
economy.
chamber, and I believe needs
My
serious
union,
attention
the Australian
from across the
Manufacturing Workers Union, has
So
been
let's talk
clear
about why
about
this matters.
what is at
We know
stake
that small and medium
and
businesses
what
employ
is possible.
42% of the workforce
The
in the private
AMW has
sector.
been clear
There
about
are
how
2.5
we can
million
do
small
this right,
businesses in this country, and they
guaranteeing
contribute
secure union
$500
jobs
billion
and
to the
strong
economy.
collective bargaining
Now, I know
with
from
all
my own
green
community
iron
how
projects
important
receiving the
small and
support they
medium
need for
businesses
enterprise
are.
agreements
But the truth is,
and
when you talk to
unions
them,
along
whether
the
they
journey
be
from day
in family
one
shops that
to
have been
ensure
passed on
decent
between
wages,
generations,
safe
or whether that
workplaces
be
and
innovative
secure
businesses that are going to be the next big
Investment
or medium
in TAFE
businesses, they are
and
not
clean
having access to
energy
capital
training,
that they
particularly
need,
in the
and we, I
Pilbara
think,
and hubs like
collectively
Karratha
need to
and
turn
Port
our minds
Hedland,
to
so
it.
that locals,
Now, I don't have all the
apprentices
answers. I
and
want to
young
put this on the
workers
issue on the
have the
agenda.
pathways
Let's
they
start with
need
bank
into
lending.
the jobs of the
So
future.
around in the sort of
Consulting
early
with
90s
First
or late
Nations
90s,
communities with
around
genuine
two-thirds of
co-ownership
bank
stakes
lending
or,
went to
and
business,
agreements
one-third went to
for
mortgages.
projects built on their land.
Forward for all these few
Commitments
years
for
now,
local housing,
around
childcare,
two-thirds
health and
of bank
community
lending
services
goes
so
to
that the growth
mortgages,
in these
and
towns
only one-third
doesn't
to
repeat
businesses.
the housing
Australian
crisis of the
businesses
past.
are struggling to access capital.
Support
from
for onshore
banks.
processing
We
and
demand
green
high
steelmaking, so we're not just
more
exporting
likely to,
green
ask you to
iron,
put your house
but
on the
building
line if you're going to get a
domestic
small business
manufacturing
loan,
jobs
than
in
other
WA
countries.
and across
And what
the
happens
country.
when small businesses can't access
That's why the
loans
Albanese
from the
Labor
banks?
government
They
is
just go to
investing
other
$1 billion
providers and
through
just
the
have to be
Green
charged
Iron Investment
much higher
Fund
rates.
to help
And so
set
my
up new
question is to
facilities
this
and
House,
supply chains.
is this a good idea?
This is a
Is it a good
priority for our
idea that our
government
small
under the
businesses
Future
are not able
Made
to
in
access
Australia
capital so
plan?
easily? Is
Our
it a good
government is
idea
committed to
that
working
on
with
aggregate
industry,
we're seeing
unions
lending
and
to medium and
communities
large
to see
firms
this
growing around
future
about
come
30%
to
in
reality?
the last 5 years, while
Labor
small
will
business
always be the
hasn't
party
even
of
budged.
the worker
These
and
are
the
issues
only
that
party
face our
that has
economy. They
taken
are
real
issues that I
action
hear
to
about
work in
constantly
partnership
from
with
Wentworth,
industry
including
and
from people,
workers and
that I
community
recently
for a
surveyed on this
transition.
issue. And I think this is an issue that
When
I
those
want to see the
opposite
Economics
rather
Committee
us
address
ship
and
it out,
investigate.
ship the jobs out.
The second type of business I wanted to
Labour
talk about in terms of access to
is
capital
doing
are those
the
venture
work
firms,
that we
those,
need to
those
build
firms
the
that are
industries
expected to grow fast
for the future
and
right
could make,
here
could be the
under
big
our Future
businesses
Made
of
in
the future,
Australia
those really
plan.
super innovative firms.
WA has
and what we
always
have seen is
built
that
the
Australia's actually
industries
pretty
that power
good
our
at
nation,
building
and
those
we
firms.
can do
Actually,
it again.
Australia has more
Thank you,
unicorn
Acting Deputy
companies
President.
per unicorn meaning $1
Senator
billion
Antic.
valuation per dollar
Thank you,
invested
Mr.
than
Deputy
anywhere
President.
else
Back
in the
in
world.
1990, the media landscape
despite our
was quite
success
different.
at building these
And the
companies,
only
we actually
media
don't have a lot of
channels
capital
which
that flows into
existed
this
then
sector.
were
We have
mainstream
around a
television,
third of the
radio
capital,
and newspapers.
in the
So
venture sector,
control of the narrative
compared
was
to the
limited to a
US per
few
capita.
select
We
outlets,
have around
meaning it
half
was
of the
easy
venture
to control.
sector capital
Now,
of
the connections
the
between
UK.
the security
And what we're
state,
seeing
intelligence
in the big
community and the media
institutional
are
areas of
well
investment,
established.
like
I think it's made
superannuation,
up.
they're actually
Look no further than
reducing
Operation
their
Mockingbird in the
allocation
US in
to
the early
venture,
years
high
of the Cold
innovative
War.
firms
I
than
think
they
it's just
were
in
in
the
the past.
US.
It's actually
Well, rest
around
assured that
halved.
the mainstream
super funds have
media
around
all over
halved
the
their
world is
allocation
replete
to
with
venture in
friends
the
of the
last
corporate
10 years.
sector,
And I've heard
Five
from
Eyes
industry
intelligence
sources
sharing
that
network
no
between Australia,
big super
Canada,
fund
New Zealand,
has
the UK and
invested
the
in a
USA, and
new
the administrative
venture
state. In
fund
the USA,
over the last
this
5
has been
years.
called
Basically,
the blob.
the door is closed.
The mid-90s
And I come
then
back to
brought
this
about the
question
mass
of
market adoption
of the internet,
and supporting
which
our
spread
most
across the
exciting
globe,
and
and the
innovative
blob
businesses,
championed
and
this
saying,
new tech with
if
the
they are
establishment
struggling so much on
lauding
finance,
the information
how can we be
superhighway
sure that
with its
we're backing all
potential
the
to
businesses
boost
that we
education
can
and
for the
spread
future?
free
I think we
speech.
can be sure
It's hard to
that
imagine
we're
anyone
not.
predicted the
Now, how to
enormous shift in
investigate
the
this? I
media
held a
landscape,
roundtable
though, as
recently with a
smartphones
bunch
and social
of
media
venture
allowed
firms, and I was
the
grateful
rise
that
of
the Minister
independent media
of Industry,
returning real
Tim Ayres,
journalism to
also
our
attended.
screens.
And there
before
were
long,
really
people started
important
to
discussion,
switch
I
off
think,
the
in terms of
mainstream media,
regulatory
and today
hurdles.
people like
Things
me
like
have begun to
RG97
understand
and Future
what we
Super,
get
the
from these
structure
outlets
of those
basically
two
is bread and
programs,
circuses
which disincentivises
at best and
access,
outright
investment
propaganda
in venture
at
firms.
worst.
Now,
I
let's
actually
be
have
really
to say
clear.
I barely
This isn't
bother
about
with a
trying to
single
give money,
word written
you know,
in mainstream
from super funds
newspapers
to
and never
dud
switch on the
investments.
radio
private
or the
equity
TV,
and venture
because now you can get your
has had
news
on
from
average
people
a
who are free
15%
from the
return
corporate
over
media
the last 10
landscape.
years compared
And this
to
has dented
10%
the
for the
control
ASX.
the blob
So
once
if
had
there
over your
is
life.
more responsible
Twitter's
investment
internal
in those
files
sectors,
released
we could
between
actually
March
expect to see
2022 to December
increased retirement
2023 in the
savings
United
for
States showed the
Australians,
cosy
which is
link
what super
between the
should
US
all be
intelligence
about.
services, big
So
tech
as I said from
and
the
government.
start,
And
I
US
don't have all the
journalist
answers
Michael
on this, but I
Schellenberger
know that
described
there is
what
a
he
problem.
found
I know
as
that
the
some of the
censorship
super fund
industrial
regulation
complex.
plays into that.
They were
But
creating
there's a much bigger
blacklists and
question
pressuring
of
social
how can we
media
get access to
platforms
capital to
to
venture
censor,
firms, and that's
de-amplify
why the
and even
Economics
outright
Committee and the
ban
government
people
need to be
from free
pursuing
speech.
this issue.
And that's just
I'll be
happened in
pursuing
the
it.
United States, right?
The question
well,
is, the
it wouldn't
House
be happening in Australia, would it? Well, think again. The Department of Home
Thank you,
Affairs
Speaker.
here in Australia got
I want
caught
to pay tribute
red-handed
to
dobbing
David
in
Stratton.
Aussies to
David
big tech
Stratton
during
was
COVID.
much more than
the
a
effect
film
of the
critic.
new media has
He was a
been
committed
quite devastating
champion
for the
of
blob
Australian
who've swung
cinema
into full
and a trusted
censorship
guide
mode to shut
to the
down
world of
inconvenient
cinema beyond
political
our
narratives.
shores.
They've
He was also a
infiltrated everywhere
constituent,
across the country,
a Blue
including this
Mountains
building, and they're
local
pouring
since
their ideas into our
1991,
legislative
and a
chambers by
valued
presenting
member of our
arguments
community over
which are
the
all
following
about
decades.
safety online for
From
children
his
and hate
18-year
speech. But the truth
stewardship
is,
of the
it's
Sydney
all
Film
about
Festival,
censorship and
bringing
control and
international
returning the
cinema
media
to
landscape
Australia,
to the digital form
to his
of where they were
thoughtful
up to back in
reflections on the
1990.
movie show and at
By
the
year's
movies,
end,
he
it won't
helped
just be
shape the
social
way
media
we think
platforms
about
asking
film.
to verify your age.
With his
Age
collaborator
verification
of 28
requirements will
years,
also
Margaret
extend to
Pomerantz,
search
he
engine
modelled
accounts,
the
and age
art of
verification
respectful,
will be proven to be
intelligent and
basically a
constructive
vector for
disagreement.
identity verification. Now,
Above
last
all,
year,
David
I
Stratton
opposed the
backed our
government's hate speech
filmmakers,
laws and the
often
under-16
before the
social
rest of
media
the world
bans for
caught
these
on.
and other
He made
reasons.
sure that our best
The mainstream
stories, our
media is
landscape
cheering
and
these
our
laws on.
voices
They
were
don't care about
celebrated
the
as
children.
part of
What
the
they
great
care about is
global
their market
tradition
share.
of cinema.
And just by the way,
In
how
announcing
come
his
the
passing,
same
David's
censorship
family
dragnet is
invited
being
people
played
to
out
celebrate
across
his
the
life
Western
and
world
legacy
at exactly
by
the same
watching
time? How
their
come
favourite
the
movie
intelligence
or
community in the
his
US,
favourite movie
Canada,
of all
UK,
time,
Australia and New
Singing in
Zealand
the Rain?
all use the
Glenbrook
exact same
Cinema
language of
presented a special
disinformation and hate
screening of that
speech
film in
and
his
demanding
honour. It was
legislation for
sold
governments
out.
to curb
Mount Vic
real-world harm
Flicks in Mount
online.
Victoria
I suppose
also
that's
remembered
just a
David
coincidence.
recalling
National
that
leaders,
he introduced the
representatives
first
of
film
international
the current
organisations
owners
and
screened there 12
philanthropists
years
have
ago.
expressed their commitment to
Singing in the
fostering
Rain.
free speech
And
and open
since then,
societies,
they
but
said
sadly,
he continued to
their
be
actions
generous with
tell
his
a very
time and
different
knowledge,
story.
never
Now,
tiring
Five
of us
Eyes
asking
Intel
his
gives
thoughts on
Australia
new films
high-level
or
intel
being a special
capabilities,
guest speaker
but
at
does
many
the
events.
alliance's
In
secrecy
that
and
time, we came
US-centric
to know
focus
David as a
expose us to
lovely,
external
funny
pressures?
and generous
Who
person,
checks on this
and we're
unchecked
incredibly
surveillance?
lucky to
What's
have
the
had
real
him
agenda?
as part of our
The Blob's
journey.
leaders,
The Edge
frankly,
Cinema
are
in
driven by the
Katoomba,
fear
which
that the
he often
internet and
visited,
social media
recognised
platforms
that his
empower
deep
populist
knowledge and
alternative
passion
views which they
inspired
regard as
generations.
unhelpful.
I extend our community's deepest
Senator
condolences
Steele,
to
Thank you,
his family,
Acting
friends
President.
and colleagues.
Tonight
And a special
I bring
envoy for the
to
arts,
attention
I acknowledge
an
David
issue that
Stratton's
is being
lifetime
raised
of
loudly
service to screen
by
culture.
the Western Australian
Speaker,
community.
in my first speech
The
to
health and
Parliament, I
longevity of our
recognised and thanked
environment
an
cannot
absolute
be
Labor stalwart
sacrificed
and a
to
supporter
a
of mine
further
from my first
mining
foray into
development.
federal politics in
Many in
2010,
the community
Susan
hold a
Elfert.
deep appreciation
Today, I want to
for
again pay
WA's
tribute to her,
beautiful
honour
Yarra
her
Forest.
life and mourn her
What
recent
many
death.
don't know
Susan
is that a
mentored and guided
US-based
me and so
mining
many lefters in
corporation,
the Blue Mountains and was
Alcoa,
the most loyal
has been
comrade as my
clearing
Vice President
WA's
of our
Yarra
Macquarie
Forest
Federal
for
Electorate Council
60
and then became
years.
President when I was elected.
If this
A
wasn't bad
Winty
enough,
and
this
Bullabara
corporation
resident, Susan was
is now wanting
passionate
to
about
clear
social
an
justice, the
additional
law and the
11,000
environment. As a founding and ongoing member of the Labour Environment Action Network, LEAN, Susan
forest.
played a key role in
Alcoa's
educating
proposed
branch
expansion
members about
could
environmental
could
policy
impact
and building
over
support for ambitious climate
100,000
change action and
potential
protection for the
nesting
environment.
trees for
I think
black
outgoing LEAN
cockatoos
co-convener
and
Felicity
clear
Wade
critical
described
quokka
her perfectly
habitats.
when she said,
Cockatoo
fierce,
nesting
sharp
committed, loved the environment, and she backed people.
Of years
Susan
to develop.
certainly did back people.
But
In a
Alcoa
membership
wants to
movement,
clear them
she backed
away
people and
with
supported
one
them to find their
devastating
voice.
sweep. This
I feel very
project not
grateful to
only
have had her
puts our
backing.
vulnerable wildlife at risk,
Speaker,
but for the
the Blue Mountains
2.4
has
million
lost an
residents
arts
in
champion
Perth,
with the death
there
of
is
Mary
a high
Catherine
risk
Travis,
of
an
contamination
irrepressible,
to
witty
our
and warm
water
person
supply.
with a huge
If the
understanding of
serpentine
arts,
pipehead
advocacy
dam
and administration.
is contaminated
Among many
by
things, she was
these
theatre
operations,
officer and youth
over
and puppetry officer
100,000
at the
Perth
Australian
households
Council,
could be
theatre board in the
consuming
1980s, a
contaminated
business
water
manager for the Sydney
within
Dance Company,
hours.
and an independent consultant.
These
She worked
kinds
with theatres,
of
writers,
hard
visual
lines
artists and arts agencies.
Mary
are
was a
precisely
pioneer of arts advocacy.
those which must
She was the
not be
founding
crossed
executive director of
under
Arts
any
Action Australia,
circumstance.
establishing the
Our
first
community
Arts
will not
Advocacy Day
take this
in 1990.
lying down.
On spending time with Mary at an arts forum I held in the Blue Mountains many moons ago, the then Shadow Arts Minister said to me, "Wow, you really do have people who know about the arts."
EPA in
Mary was
opposition
tough to get
to the
that feedback.
expansion of Alcoa's mine.
And Mary gave generously
Greens,
her time
including
and
my
energy to the
Greens
Blue
WA
Mountains East
colleagues,
Timor
are
sisters,
with you
helping to fundraise
and
to
will
repair cyclone
passionately
damage at a
campaign
primary school in
alongside
Timor-Leste.
you in
Not long before she
opposition
died,
to this.
Mary was celebrated in a glowing portrait by
I
Dr.
want
Janet
to
Sanders
highlight
at the Blue
the
Mountains Cultural
incredible
Centre,
engagement
and I'm so
and
proud that she
advocacy
got to
and
see herself
dedication
glowing on
of
that
tens of
beautiful
thousands
painting.
of people in WA and across Australia who
The
are
question
pushing
is the
back
House to now
against
adjourn
these
and give the call to member
destructive
for Hinkler.
environmental
Thank you,
projects.
Mr Speaker. My
Thank
electorate
you
of Hinkler
to
is
everyone
hurting due to a
who
worsening skills
recently made a
shortage
submission
and inaction
to
from
the
this Labor
EPA
government.
regarding
While a
Alcoa's
hand-picked
expansion.
few met here in
Thank you
Canberra
to the
with the Treasurer and
organisations
Prime Minister
like
for
the
a three-day
WA Forest
roundtable,
Alliance and other
the
environmental
predetermined outcomes are
campaigns
simply
who have
more
organised
spending,
across
more
the state
debt
of WA
and the threat of more taxes.
to ensure that people's
While the
voices
Canberra meeting
are
unfolded,
heard.
I spent 2 days with the Honourable Scott
Now, we
Buckles,
know
the
that
Shadow Minister
WA
for Skills
has
and
a
Training,
deep
to
history
hear the real
of mining
stories directly
companies
from
coming into our
manufacturers,
regional areas
business owners,
and leaving
Chamber of Commerce
when
and
the
training
money
providers
has been
in the
made.
Hinkler electorate.
Mining
I thank the
developers
member
like
for Wright for the
Alcoa
time that he
have a
took to
poor
listen to
track
my
record
community.
of environmental
Together we
clean-up
hosted a series
and
of meetings,
rehabilitation.
visited manufacturers,
Indeed,
and yes,
according to the WA
regions like
Department,
Hinkler are delivering and
Alcoa
driving
has
the
failed
nation's
to
productivity.
rehabilitate
But, Mr Speaker, the
to meet its
skills
very
shortage
own
continues to
rehabilitation
bite
targets
badly.
for over
David Coe recently purchased a
27,000
well-known
hectares
mechanics in
of
Bundaberg,
native vegetation.
Trolson's Mechanical.
Already,
Mr Coe simply can't find enough
Australia's
trade-qualified
lands
people
and
to work on
oceans
vehicles and
are
teach
being
new
mined
apprentices
and
the
trawled
trade.
and exploited
These
for
teachers,
corporate
the
profit,
skilled workers,
with
are
little
understandably
given
chasing
to our
higher
communities.
wages in the
We
mines,
have over
leaving a shortfall of experience in our
5.7
regional
million
communities.
tonnes of
Mr
material
Speaker,
in
the
our
Brisbane
oceans
Olympic Games is less
from
than a
the
decade
gas
away.
and
Queensland
oil
now more than ever
from
needs
the
a
gas
strong,
and
skilled
oil
workforce to
infrastructure
deliver
that
infrastructure
is the product
and
of the
services.
industries.
Yet instead of tackling
It
the
is
skills and
equivalent
training
to
crisis
110
head-on, Labor is
Sydney
presiding over
Harbour
a 60-year
bridges
low
worth
in
of steel.
productivity. The Treasurer
All of
has
this
simply run out of
material
ideas.
in our oceans
When the
because
Coalition left
of
office, we had
these
more than
polluting
400,000
industries.
apprentices
And
and
this is an
trainees in the system.
opportunity
Today,
to
there are
create
100,000 fewer.
a truly
This is leaving
circular
Australian
economy
businesses high
by
and dry.
salvaging this
Labor is
material
failing both
and
employers who
making
are
it
desperate
new
for skilled
again.
workers and the young
The
Australians who
recently
deserve opportunities.
released WA
Under
Cart
Labor, the pipeline of
Weight
skilled workers
report
just isn't
cast
there.
a
The
clear
Hinkler
way
region has
forward
some of the
to
hardest working
resolving these
businesses in the
issues.
country,
Labor
just like Trolson's
must
Mechanical.
Senator
Steele, John.
These operations
Senator
must be
McKenzie.
supported to expand, to grow and to teach the next wave of
President,
tradies the art of the trade.
last week
But
I
instead,
stood in a
like so many
tiny
regional employees,
town,
they're struggling to
Marnoo,
find the skilled staff they need.
population
It's holding them
99
back, and it's holding back
in
my region
the
of
heart of the
Hinkler.
Mallee.
Labor
I
has no
stood
real
with
plan on
Anne Webster,
productivity
their
or
local
training.
federal MP,
Australia needs more than
local
words and a meeting behind
councillors
closed doors in
and
Canberra.
hundreds of
That doesn't help
farmers and their
Bundaberg and Harvey
families
Bay businesses.
who are standing up
What we need
for
is a
their
proper
future.
plan to build a skilled workforce
They'd asked me
and back
to
regional
bring their
communities.
fight to here to
Mr
the
Speaker,
Australian
Monday,
Senate
the 18th of August, is an
to make
important
sure
date for many
particularly
locations
the
across
Labor
Australia,
Party
including
and
my
the Greens
region of Hinkler.
understand
Vietnam Veterans
the
Day is
impact
commemorated on the anniversary of the
reckless
1966 Battle of
race
Long
to
Tan.
100%
Major services were
renewables.
held in Harvey Bay and Bundaberg,
It is an
and I had the
absolute
privilege
case
of laying
out
a
of
wreath and
sight,
speaking in the
out
country
of
town
mind
of Childers.
when it comes to
The
Chris
service was
Bowen
held at the site of a World War
and
I
indeed
210mm
Jacinta
howitzer
Allen's
cannon. You
energy
can't miss it,
policies.
right in the middle of town.
And it is rural and regional
The
communities
ISIS RSL
who are
sub-branch invited me to
paying
pay tribute
the
and thank
price.
those who served
The
in
desecration
Vietnam.
of our
The
land,
ones who fought for the
our
freedoms we enjoy
livelihoods
today.
and of our very
As the federal member for
communities.
Hinkler,
And similar
I'm forever proud to
protests
represent
are
a region
happening
with a rich
right
history of standing
across
up
not just
and
the
fighting for
Wimmera Mallee,
Australia.
but across
Childers
regional
has always
Australia.
had stories to tell.
Because
from all
government
conflicts.
is now
So many men and women
pushing
from the
this
rural community have
project onto
served
these
with pride.
communities.
And while the trauma is
That
very
day
real and the
we
pain lives
burnt
on,
the
it is
draft
in moments of
plans
commemoration we come
for the
together to
VNI
pause and
West
reflect on the lives
project,
lost
a
and the
500
immense life-changing
kV double
sacrifices
circuit
made.
transmission line
The
running
Department of Veterans
approximately
Affairs nominal rolls
240 kilometres
records
across Victoria,
255
then
Vietnam
north
veterans
into New
from the
South
Hinkle
Wales to
electorate.
link with the
According
Energy
to
Connect
these
project.
accounts, there were
The
32
Victorian
veterans who came
section
from Childers.
alone
4 from
likely
Howard,
need
2 from
around
Quailba, 2 from Bargara,
600
215
transmission
from Bundaberg.
towers.
But 32
Every
from
single
Childers.
one
Again,
as
such
tall
high
as the Parliament
representation
House
for a
flag,
country town.
mask that
the
is
Vietnam
above
Veterans
us
Day
at
Service
80
in Childers
metres.
honoured the role
And
that
the
nurses
cost,
made in the
AEMO's
Vietnam War.
own figures show
The service of female
nurses
nurses in the conflict is largely
$3.9 billion,
forgotten. This is despite their
with some
significant
estimates now having
contribution.
hitting
Locally in England, as a
$11.4
community,
billion.
much is and has been done
Net
to rectify
zero
this.
does
We are
not
fortunate to have the
mean net
Bundaberg
zero
War Nurses
cost.
Memorial
That's been the
near the Bundaberg-based
hoax
hospital.
from the start.
While it honours those who served in
Someone
the First and
has
Second
to
World
pay.
Wars, in July
And
of
it turns out
2022,
it's
the
rural
Bundaberg
and
District
regional
Women's Veterans Group
communities.
ensured the names of
And
nurses
this
from my
community
region
in
who served in
Manu
the
were
Vietnam
very,
War
very clear
were added.
last week. They
Aussie
will
nurses
be
saved
locking their
thousands of
gates
lives from both sides,
They
routinely working
are
12-hour
prepared to go
shifts,
to jail
6 days a week, despite
against
earning
a
only
government
two-thirds
that
of
is
what the equivalent male
determined
officer
to
earns.
override their
Mr.
private
Speaker, I'd
property
sincerely like
rights,
to thank the ISIS RSL sub-branch for
determined
hosting
to
a
enter
memorable
their farms
commemoration
without
service
permission,
and for ensuring that all who served in the
with the
Vietnam
inherent
War are
biosecurity
remembered
risk.
now and
this
forever.
project
Thank
has
you.
not only caused economic harm with property values plummeting on intergenerational
Speaker.
assets, on
When
food
I was
security,
16 years
food
old,
production, and it
that was
is
a long time
also
ago,
having environmental
I
and
have
social
to leave
costs,
school because my family
with
did not have enough
families
money
torn apart
to pay for
as
my
a
school
result.
fees.
This
But a few
Victorian
days
Labor
later,
government
my
has
maths teacher,
formed.
Mr.
It's the
Lee,
same government
helped
that
to
sent
pay
police
for my school
into
fees.
people's home during
I was
COVID,
lucky
that
and
locked up
returned to
citizens
class.
without a second thought,
Mr. Lee
that now
paid
gives itself
both my
new
Form 4
powers
and Form 5
to
school
force entry
fees.
onto private land,
Without his
silence
support, I would
objections
not have finished
from
my
farmers
high
whose
school.
livelihoods are at stake.
When I first learned about
It's a
Mr.
government
Ted
with the
Powell,
worst instincts of
donation
authoritarianism,
of
zero
$100
care for its
million
citizens
to Murdoch
when it wants its
University.
own way.
I,
Net
like many
zero
others,
is
could
just
not
a
believe
marker
it.
in time, a date on
This
a
is the
calendar.
largest donation
Measures
to a
neither the
university in
path
Western
taken,
Australia.
nor the
And it is
fairness, the
one of the largest
reliability,
ever
the
donations
affordability
to Australian
of the transition.
universities.
And remembering this
But
is
what
a
also touched my heart was
95%
how
renewable
TED had
target
before
by
this donation
2035.
supported
They're in a
150
hurry,
students to go to Murdoch
and it is to
University
appease urban
through his
voters
Red Door
in
Foundation.
the middle of Melbourne, who
These
don't have
students
to
were
put
like
up
me,
with the
facing
social,
financial
economic and
hardship
environmental
and
costs that
in
this
need of a
project
helping
brings.
hand.
Right now, we're
Like my maths
intent
teacher did
on
for
creating
me,
two
TED
classes of
stepped
citizens in
and
Australia.
helped
Those
these
who
students
advocate
obtain
for
their
and
education.
benefit from the
Education
national
changes
emissions
lives.
reduction efforts, and those in
This
the regions who are
$100
paying the
million
price for
gift
falling property
will completely
values,
transform Murdoch
loss of amenity,
University's
and in some cases the
veterinary school
broken bonds of their communities
and
and
the
families.
education Australia
If we want to keep the
veterinarians
faith with the
receive.
people that actually feed this
Along
nation,
with the school,
before
there
those
is
first
animal
600
hospital,
towers start,
livestock,
the Victorian
and large
government
animal
needs to
centres,
stop this project
working vet
and go
farms
back
and
to the
other
drawing
research
board.
centres.
The National Party stands with
Many of my
those farmers and
constituents
their
have
families
used
in
the
Manu,
animal
just like we
hospital
stand with
for
every
much
single
loved
rural
members
and regional
of their
community
families.
that is putting up with
The
Labor's rush to
veterinary school is a
renewables.
major part of life at Murdoch and
Thank
in
you, Acting
our
Deputy
community.
President. At
Soon
estimates
that
earlier
school will
this year, I
completely
asked for a breakdown of
redeveloped
gifts
with a
from Salesforce to
9,600 square
NDIA
metre
officials, of which as many as 100 had gone
facility, new
undisclosed,
facility.
contrary to
The new
NDIA's
school
own
will support
finance
50%
policies.
more vet students.
Now, I want to start by
This
thanking the
new school will
Minister
form
for
the
responding
heart
so
of a
quickly
new
to the order to
conservation
produce
and
documents
life
made
science
in the last sitting
regimes
fortnight.
that
I also
recognises the
acknowledge the
link between
interference of
human,
the election,
animal
ministerial
and environmental
changes,
health.
and the
It will
NDIA
expand
machinery
on
of government
important
change
biomedical
that no
research.
doubt
It will
complicated the
attract
process.
top
However,
global talents and
it
experts.
should not take 6 months
Our next generation
plus a
of
warning
veterinary
from me
professionals
that I would seek an
will have a
explanation
world-class
from the
opportunity
Minister
right
after
here in
question
Canberra.
time for the Minister's
The
office to
Red Door
finally
Foundation was
deliver
founded
answers.
in 2010
And even then,
by
with just
Ted
9 minutes
and
left
his
to
late
question
wife,
time, they scrambled
Dee,
to drop
to
a
give to a
flimsy,
worthy cause.
inadequate response to what was a
Ted
serious
was
and
a very
extensive
successful
line of
business
questions.
and he ran a
That
good
Acting
business
Deputy
from
President
Hong Kong
is
and
not good
Southeast
enough.
Asia.
The documents
Before
tabled were
he
quite
and Dee
revealing
migrated
as to the
Australia
scale of
in
Salesforce's
2005.
whining and dining of
Dee
NDIA
was
officials.
a
The
animal
document
lover.
referred to as
And
confidential
the Red Door
Annexure
Foundation was
E
named
paints
after
a
Red
particularly
Door cats.
concerning picture. And it is
Together,
no wonder that
Dee and
Salesforce
Ted Ted
requested
started
in
a
a letter to the
scholarship at
Chair
Murdoch
of the Joint
and
Committee
supported
of
programs
Public Accounts
like
and Audit
Leadership
that the document
WA,
should be kept
Kundana
confidential and not
College,
published.
and the Salvation Army.
The annexure shows
When Dee
23
passes away
NDIA
last
officials
year,
accepting
Ted
gifts and
thought about
hospitality
what he would
worth
do with
over
his assets.
$15,000 between
In supporting the
2019 and
redevelopment and
2023.
expansion of
One
Murdoch
senior
Vet School,
executive service
Ted is supporting
Labour
both
hire
education
employee
and
alone
health
racked up
for
more
years
than then $9,000 in hospitality before quietly leaving the agency. Let's go through a few of these gifts for the benefit of the Senate and the public out there who deserve transparency, and I note that I'll be referring to the total cost of the gift rather than the value per NDIA attendee as is listed in the document. 7th June 2019, golf and lunch at Kingston Health Golf Club valued at $172. 18 June 2020, lunch at Cicciolina and taxi $231. 19 January 2022, dinner at Matilda and taxi $357. 13 December 2021, lunch at Supernormal $494. 3rd December 2020, dinner at Blue
Mr.
de
Speaker,
Monde and
in
taxi
triumph and tragedy, there's someone who always
26 May
turns up
2021,
for
dinner
regional
at
Australia,
Tonka
and that's the local
$646.
newspaper. Across towns
and
and
finally,
regions throughout
18
Australia,
January
the local
2023,
paper
dinner
weaves the
at
threads
French
that hold
Brasserie and
communities
taxi
together. It shares in the triumphs,
$1,170.
grieves in
There
the
are
losses,
111
and tells
more
the
entries
stories
on that
truly
list, so
matter
you can
to
imagine that the
everyday
relationship
people.
between the
It's where a
NDIA and
teenager reads their
Salesforce
name in
during
print
this
next to a
period
goal they
was
scored
quite
for the
friendly.
first time
During
in
the
sport
same
pages.
period,
Everyday
Salesforce's
volunteers are
contracts
celebrated,
with the
and the
NDA
births,
ballooned
deaths
by
and marriages of the town are
500%,
enlivened
from
with photographs,
$27 million in
congratulations
April
and
2020
condolences every
to
week.
$135 million
keeps
in
people
October
connected,
2023.
not just to
This
events,
matter has
but to
rightly
one
been
another.
referred to the National
There are an
Anti-Corruption
array of
Commission,
senior
so I
Australian
won't ask
journalists
the
who
government to
started
speculate
in
on
regional
individual
media,
culpability.
like Sunrise
But
co-host
what the government
David
must
Boywood
confront
at-
is
from,
how they will
Win
address
News
the
in
culture
Gippsland
of flouting
and the Age and
disclosure
Sydney Morning
requirements
Herald's
within the
correspondent
NDIA.
Rob
They need
Harris,
to
who
ensure our
started at the
integrity
Latrobe
framework
Valley
is
Express.
effective
In
in
my
not
electorate
just
of Monash,
rooting
we
out
have the South
corruption,
Gippsland
but also
Sentinel
acting
Times,
as a
the
deterrent.
Warragul and Druin
When the
Gazette,
NAC
the
in
Latrobe
July
Valley
chose not to
Express,
name
the
the
Phillip
senior
Island
Home Affairs
Advertiser,
official
the Trafalgar
found
News,
to
the
have
Foster Mirror,
corruptly
the Murray
promoted
North
her
Times and the
sister's
Bass Coast
fiancé,
Post.
what
They
message
are
did that
locally
send?
funded. They
That
are
even if
professional
you get
journalists.
caught
They
doing
are
the wrong
important
thing,
to the community
you won't
fabric
be
of
held
our
accountable.
region.
If
Above
findings
editor
of corruption are
Brand's
made,
desk of the
particularly
Warragul and
against
Druin
the
Gazette
SES
hangs a plaque
official
that
who
reads,
accepted
"A good
nearly
local
two-thirds of
newspaper is one of
Salesforce's
the
gifts
best
by
public
value,
assets
then
that
those
any
names
district
must
can
be
possess."
published.
It's a
And
quote
it
by their
needs to be
founding
set
owner
as
and
an
editor,
example
Albert
that if
Harvey.
you betray the
The
trust
Warragul
of
and
the
Druin
Australian
Gazette is more
people,
than
you will pay a
127
heavy
years
price.
old.
Because
the
at
Latrobe
the end
Valley
of the day,
Express is
it's in the
celebrating
name,
60 years
public
this year,
service.
and editor Liam
You're
Durkin
not
has
there
been
to
running
play
6
rounds of
decades in
golf.
6
You're
weeks.
not there to
The South
gormandize
Gippsland Sentinel
$1,000
Times
dinners.
has been going
You
for
are there to
51
serve
years.
the Australian
So
public.
seriously does
And
editor
if you
Michael
can't
Giles
remember
take the
that,
role of the local
you have
newspaper.
no place
He
in the
trekked to
service of
Canberra
our
for the
nation.
maiden speech of
Thank
my
you.
predecessor 25
Senator
years
Askew.
ago and came back up
Thank
again
you, Acting
last
Deputy
month
President.
for mine. The Phillip Island and
I
San
rise
Remo
tonight to pay my
Advertiser
respects to a
newspaper
remarkable
first appeared
Tasmanian,
in
the Honourable
1896
Sir
as
Guy Green,
titled
AC,
called the San Remo
KBE,
Times and Phillip
CBO,
Island and Bass
a
Valley
distinguished
Advertiser,
statesman who
making
lived a
its
life
first
of service
edition
and commitment
over
to
128
Tasmania.
years ago. Eleanor
Sir
Mackay
Guy, who
is
passed
the
away
editor.
earlier this month at the
Regional
age of
journalists
87,
show
led a
up
life
to
of
meetings
exceptional
no one else
service,
attends.
which was driven
They
by
ask
his deep
tough
passion
questions.
and love for our
They
island
cover
state
the
home.
bushfire alerts and they stay
Throughout his
to
many
report
roles in
the
arts,
aftermath
law,
long after the
education
flames
and
are gone.
governance, he will
We've
be
seen
remembered as
some
a
recent
passionate
threats
and
to
determined
local
leader
newspapers,
who had a great sense
from
of
teal
humour and
donors
love for his
astroturfing
community.
online newsletters
One of his
to
most
skew
notable
readers across
positions was
to
as
common
Tasmania's
causes and
47th
candidates
governor,
through to
a role
the
that
move
he held
online
between
for the gazetting of
1995
government
and
publications.
2003.
Support has been
Significantly,
committed
he was the
by the
first
federal
Tasmanian-born
government, but it's
person
been
to
slow
hold
out
this
of the gates
prestigious role.
in securing the future
As
of
Governor,
regional
Sir Guy will be
journalism.
remembered for his
The government's own
dedication and
website
devotion to
states
Tasmania,
the News
often
Media
going
Assistance
above and
Program
beyond his duties.
sets out a framework and measures to support public
Sir Guy was
interest
born in
journalism
Launceston in
and media
1937 and attended
diversity
Launceston
in
Church
Australia.
Grammar School.
On the 12th of December
He graduated with a
2023,
Bachelor of Law
the
from
Department
the
of
University of
Infrastructure,
Tasmania's Hobart
Transport,
campus in
Regional
1960.
Development, Communications
After
and the
a career
Arts
in private
opened
practice, Sir
consultation
Guy served
on
as
the
a
News
magistrate
Media
from
Assistance
1971
Program.
and was
Submissions
appointed
closed
Tasmania's
back in
Chief
February
Justice in
2024.
1973.
The news map design
As
is
Chief
still
Justice,
awaiting
awaiting
pioneered modern
finalisation,
judicial
and the
processes
successful
and
funding
presided over
applicants are
important
still
cases
waiting
while upholding
to
the
hear
integrity
from
of the
the
law.
government. The mandated
Tasmanian Liberal
minimum
Premier
commitment
Jeremy Rockliff
of
remembered
$3 million
Sir Guy
per year
Green
for
as
2
an
years
exceptional
from
statesman and
2025
true
to
leader with a
26
passion for
for
Tasmania,
regional newspaper
summarised with this
advertising
tribute,
across
and
the
I
total
quote,
Commonwealth media
Sir Guy's life
advertising
reminds
spend
us
has
that
gone
true leadership is
nowhere.
measured by purpose
We are
and
now
service.
going on over 2
Tasmania
years
is richer for
after
his
the government said
contributions,
it
and
would
he will be
address
remembered
this
with deep
issue.
respect and
It
gratitude.
was back in early
End quote.
March 2024
Sir Guy
when
was
Meta
heavily
announced it would
involved in
not
community,
renew its deal
including his
with Country
10-year
Press
tenure as
Australia
Chancellor
and
of the
other
University
Australian
of Tasmania
publishers.
between
The
1985 and
bargaining
1995.
incentive is a
During
solution
this
that
time,
enjoys
he navigated a
broad
difficult
industry
period in
support.
history of the university,
Consultation
when the
has yet to
southern-based
begin,
UTAS
let alone
amalgamated
the
with the
draft
Northern
legislation.
Tasmanian State
I am
Institute
calling
of
on the government to
Technology.
finalise this
He was
process
closely
by
involved
the
with
end
the
of
amalgamation
2025
process,
to ensure
helping
that
to
Meta,
draft the
TikTok
enabling
and other
legislation
platforms
which invented
join the
the new
negotiating
University
table
of
in good
Tasmania.
faith.
His
Country
leadership
Press
guided the
Australia has
university
confirmed that
during a
regional and
tumultuous
local
time,
news industry
transforming
outlets will
UTAS into
strongly
the
oppose
institution it
any
is
changes
today,
to Australia's
assisting many
world-leading
Tasmanian,
copyright
national and
laws
international
to allow
students
AI
to get the
companies
modern
to
tertiary
further access
qualifications
and
they
use
require
copyrighted
to enter the
content
workforce
without
in an
permission
ever-changing
or
world.
payment. There has never been a more
In
important
recognition
time
of
to
his
support our
outstanding
regional
career,
and
Sir Guy
local
was made a
publishers.
Knight Commander
I'm
of the
calling on
Order
the
of the
federal
British
government to get its
Empire
act
in
together and
1982.
come good on
He was
commitments
appointed
made
a
which are
Companion
well
of the
past
Order
their
of
due date.
Australia in
Thank you.
1994,
The
made a
question is the
Companion of
House
the
to now
Royal
adjourn the
Victorian
calls
Order
on the
during Queen
precaution.
Elizabeth II's
Thank you,
visit to
Speaker.
Tasmania
I rise
in
in support
2000
of paid
and
parental
awarded
leave.
the Centenary
I'd like
Medal
to thank
in
the member for Canberra for
2001.
raising this motion in the
Sir
House
Guy
earlier
had an
today
eminent
and
career
take this
deserving
opportunity
of
to
this
congratulate her
recognition.
on her pregnancy.
And even
I
after his
represent
formal
an extremely
retirement, Sir
fast-growing
Guy's commitment to his
community in
community
Melbourne's West.
continued as he
Our
served on
parks always
several
have children
boards,
playing in the
particularly
playground,
around his interest
parents
in
taking
arts
their
and
babies for
cultural
a walk in the
institutions,
pram, and
including the
extended families
Tasmanian
having a
Museum and
barbecue
Art
to celebrate
Gallery, or
birthday.
TMAG,
The
and the
suburbs
10
of
Days on
Rockbank,
the Island
Aintree and
event.
Truganina have the second
The
highest
depth of his
birth rate
engagement and
in Greater
commitment is
Melbourne.
evidenced by the
In the
length
city
of
of
tenure with
Mountain,
each.
58 babies
For
are born
example,
a
he
week.
served as
That
chair
is
of the
58
TMAG board for over
families who are
11
navigating
years.
life
And
with a
during this
newborn
time, he
each
oversaw
week.
significant
Whether
projects
you're a
at
first-time
TMAG,
parent
including
or this
the
is your third child like the
redevelopment
member
of the
for
Hobart
Canberra,
City site
the first year of a
and the
baby's
creation
life
of the
can be both
collection and
incredibly
research
joyful
facility,
and incredibly
as well as many
challenging.
important
And
acquisitions and
specific challenges
bequests.
for women come alongside it. As
Interestingly,
mums are more
the
likely
many
to take
tributes published
significant
noting
breaks
his
from the
passing
workforce,
also
lowering their
highlighted the
projected
personal
income,
side to Sir
as
Guy,
well as the household
reflections of
budget.
his wicked
We
sense
know
of
that when
humour,
families are
profound
given the time
intellect
to
and
adjust
deep
to life
commitment to
with a newborn,
Tasmania
the entire
highlighted how
household
he will be
benefits.
remembered most
That's
by his
precisely
family,
why we're
friends
giving
and
all
former
parents in the
colleagues.
Gorton electorate and around
Sir Guy
Australia
was a complex and passionate
two additional
individual
weeks of
whose
paid
legacy
parental
will be
leave.
felt in Tasmania
My sister
for
Emily,
decades.
my sister-in-law
I extend
Stephanie,
my
my cousin
condolences
Hayley
to Lady
are all
Green
on
and
paid
Sir Guy's
parental leave
family
at the moment.
and thank them
It's
for
an
their part
incredible
in
busy
Sir Guy's
time for
journey
my
of
family.
service to all
I'm really
Tasmanians.
proud of the Albanese Labor government increasing paid parental leave to 24 weeks from the start of July
Productivity
this year.
and
And we're
AI.
upping
They're
it
words
again, Speaker,
everyone
to
in
26
this place
weeks in
is
July
obsessed
next
with.
year.
But no
This
one
change
seems
will
to know
make a
exactly what they
significant
mean by
difference to
them.
so
Maybe
many
it's
families
the
in my
vibe or
electorate,
something.
including my
Well, let me
wonderful
tell you what
cousin
I
Hayley,
think
who
they
lives in
mean.
Taylor's Hill.
When this government
Hayley
talks
and her
about
fiancé
productivity,
Joshua welcomed
they
their
mean
beautiful baby
squeezing
Reed
more
into the world
output
late
from
last
fewer
year,
people.
and Hayley is currently
When they talk
on
about
parental
AI,
leave.
they mean
Hayley and
replacing
Joshua
human
are
workers
a
with
part of their
machines
local
that
parents group,
don't need
facilitated by
inconvenient
the
things like
Melbourne City
wages,
Council.
sick
It's such
leave
an
or human
important group
dignity.
where they can
And
meet
even
other
if the
locals with
government
babies of
doesn't
similar
think that's
age,
what they
compare
mean,
milestones,
the
and stay
corporations
connected.
flogging
An additional
AI
2 weeks of paid
certainly
parental
do.
leave will make a tangible difference to
Clankers
Hayley
are
and
being
Joshua's
rolled out
household budget.
across our country
Speaker,
with
it's not
virtually
easy
no
adjusting to
oversight.
parenthood, whether
And
baby
it's telling
number
that
one
our
or three.
youngest generation
It's
has
not
already
easy to make
given
those
AI this
sacrifices
new
in both
slur.
our careers and our
Generation
family life
Alpha can
to
smell
navigate
the
the fog
false
of those
promise of
very early
technology
days.
that won't
Women
actually
know it
benefit
best.
them,
On this side of the House,
but will
we
likely
believe that women
impoverish their
shouldn't have to
lives and
abandon their
devastate
careers and
the
income
planet
stream
they'll
to give their
inherit.
kids the best
The
start
Prime
in life.
Minister promises
But
this
too
will make
often
us
women
a
do. The
productivity
national gender pay gap is
powerhouse.
sitting
Well, I
at
call bull on that.
11.5%.
It's
Women
workhouse,
historically
more
earn
like.
less.
And the
Women are
lesson
more
of the
likely to
last
take
decades
significant
is
breaks in
clear.
their
We need
careers,
more
putting them on the
humanity,
back foot
not
when they re-enter
less.
the workforce.
When robots
Women
decide
are less
entitlements,
likely to be
people
promoted
die under
into
robot
high-paying
debt.
management roles.
We need to stop
And women
just
have less
asking
savings in their
billionaires
super
to
when they
please
retire.
be nice
The
to
gender
us with their
super-
rapacious
the gender super
extractive
gap is about
technology.
$50,000
And the choice is
for
clear.
Australians nearing
We can have
retirement.
technology
That's why
that
it's
serves
so important
humanity
that we've
or
legislated
humanity
paying super
that serves
on paid parental
technology.
leave.
And we must
Paying
act now,
super on
before the
Commonwealth parental
clankers
leave
have
pay
become
will boost a
so
mother of
embedded
two's
that
retirement
we lose
savings
control
by
of our
about
own destiny.
$14,800.
The future of work, of
It will narrow
creativity
the gender
and
super
human
gap by
dignity
about a
hangs in
quarter.
the balance.
And this is what happens when we elect women.
Deputy President,
Women's issues become the
Ayman,
forefront of the
a
government's
proud
agenda.
Palestinian
And I couldn't
Australian,
be
reached out to tell me
prouder
this
to be
today
part of a
about
Labor
his family in
government made
Gaza.
up of
My
over
family,
56%
my father, my
women.
siblings, my cousins who
Because
live
when
in
we elect
Gaza
women,
City,
we
in one of the old
legislate
neighbourhoods in
women's
Palestine, are facing
and these
two
reforms
choices:
are for the
to be
betterment of
killed
the
or
entire family
displaced.
union.
We are seeing
Because
Israeli
when we,
tanks 15 minutes from my
because when
family.
both parents have
There has
access to
been
parental
total
leave,
destruction
everyone
of the northern
benefits.
neighbourhoods in
By
Gaza
increasing
City.
the amount
People
of
are
leave
witnessing
parents can take at the
unimaginable
same
bombings.
time from 2
The
to 4
family, the
weeks,
people have
we
been
are
pushed to the
making
heart
sure
of
that both
Gaza City,
parents bond
and that
with
is where my
baby
family
and
is.
support each other
Now, I've
through
heard
this
from my
very
cousin in
challenging period.
Gaza City
And
that
it is
random missiles
challenging.
and tanks are just hitting
Research
constantly
shows that
where all
since
the people are.
former
The
Prime
random
Minister
bombing
Julia
is
Gillard
paving the way
introduced
for
paid
troops to
parental leave
occupy
scheme
Gaza.
in
And I want to
2011,
say to the
the
media and
likelihood
Australian
of mothers
politicians, you are
experiencing
talking about
postpartum
2 million
depression
people
has
in
decreased.
abstract.
The
But these are
research
people
also
I have
found
hugged,
that this improvement
eaten
was
with,
particularly
laughed
significant
with.
for
They are trying to
first-time
survive,
mothers
live
and for
through this
mothers who did not
unbelievable
have
suffering.
access to paid
Israeli
parental
troops are now
leave
asking
through
people
their
to be
employer.
displaced again. Likely,
At the
as
Caroline
they did
Springs
at the start
in
of the
Caroline
genocide,
Springs,
they are
at
doing
Caroline
this,
Chisholm Society in
starved
Caroline
after witnessing
Springs,
loss and
I've
being
spoken
displaced
to
so many times.
caseworkers
Many are not
who
able
have
to walk.
intimate knowledge of
People are
these
staying
challenges
home,
as
not
they
just
care
because
for
of
our
the bombs
local
falling, but
families.
to conserve
It's an
energy because
incredible
there
local
is no
service
food.
which
We
aims to
need to
assist
act
vulnerable
now.
families,
We, yes,
empowering
Eamon,
them
we
to
do.
live their lives
In fact, we
with
needed
dignity
sanctions
and
against Israel
independence,
yesterday.
and allowing parents to feel equipped,
While the
supported,
genocide
and
in
ready to
Palestine has
handle
impacted
challenges.
all, I
These
spoke to
parental
Christian
leave reforms
Palestinians this
mean
week
that
who have
every
relayed some
family,
horrific
no matter the
information.
income or marital
The compound of
situation,
St Porphyro's
are
Greek
supported through
Orthodox
this formative
Church and the
period
compound of the
to
Holy
bond,
Family
to
Latin
grow, and
Church
to heal.
in Gaza City. They sit
Speaker,
side by side,
this is why on
have
this side
become
of the
shelters
House,
for
we will
hundreds of
defend and
women and
strengthen paid
children and
parental
the
leave,
elderly.
because
And
parents,
like the rest
those
of
in my
Gaza City's
electorate, are
residents,
counting on
the people
us.
who are sheltering within these walls
It being
are listening
8
to the
p.m,
bombs
the House
drop
stands
around them,
adjourned
fighting
until
off
9 a.m.
starvation.
tomorrow.
Members of the community told me that today in Gaza, fewer than 1,000 Christians remain from what was once a vibrant community. And in their words, leaving Gaza City and trying to flee south would be nothing short of a death sentence for them. For this reason, the priests and sisters have decided to stay and continue caring for all those who remain within the compounds. We do not know exactly what will happen on the ground, not only to our faithful but to all residents. We can only repeat what we have said before. There can be no future built on captivity, displacement or revenge against Palestinians. Well, thank you for those words. And Israel's attack on the Christian community in Palestine is not just in Gaza. In Jerusalem, they have frozen the bank accounts of the Greek Orthodox Church, crippling the church's ability to serve their community, whilst priests and nuns are assaulted and spat on. The wall around Bethlehem, the birthplace of Christ, and I've been there, it has turned into an open-air prison. While in the West Bank, Israeli settlers are attacking Christian villages like Tabor. They're uprooting ancient olive trees, seeking to erase the Christian presence and more than 2,000 years of history. Regardless of faith, regardless of age, regardless of history, Gaza has become a killing field and occupied Palestine, a prison and a place of fear and displacement. This is the reality, and this is why the world is crying out to free Palestine and ensure equal rights for all.
Senator Tyrrell.
You know, it's a cliche to say that we all get here on the back of hard work of others. It's literally
When it comes
true.
to civil construction,
Everyone who
travels
travels here has a team of civil
Everyone who
construction
travels
workers
here
to
has a
thank
team
for
of
making
civil
it to
construction
Canberra in
workers to
one
thank
piece.
for making it to
And
Canberra
yet, when
in
was the
one
last
piece.
time you thought about the people
And yet,
who built
when was
the
the
road
last
you're
time you
driving
thought
on?
about the people
Or the
who built the
airport
road
your
you're
plane
driving
is
on?
landing in? Or the airport your
Last
plane is
Friday
landing
evening,
in?
I had the privilege of
Last
attending
Friday
the Civil
evening, I had
Contractors
the privilege
Federation
of attending the Civil Contractors Federation It was
Earth
their
Awards in
night of
Tasmania.
nights. It was
one
their
evening
night
each
of
year when
nights.
over
The one
2,000
evening
civil
each
construction
year when over
workers swapped their
2,000
steel-cap
civil
boots
construction
for dress
workers swapped
shoes
their
and
steel-cap
celebrate
boots
the
for
best
dress
of the state's
shoes
big
and
builds.
celebrate the best of the
You can
state's
tell
big
they've been
builds.
looking forward to it.
You can tell
The
they've
people
been
in the
looking
room,
forward
representatives
to it.
of
The people in
businesses
the
big and
room,
small,
representatives of
all through the
businesses
sector,
big and small,
all through the supply
all through the
chain,
sector.
and you'd be
All
forgiven
through
for
the
thinking
supply
there'd
chain,
be some
and you'd be
tension.
forgiven for thinking
Supplying
there'd
a
be some
table of
tension.
business rivals,
Supplying a table of business rivals,
and a
a
bar
night
to
tab,
cut loose,
and to be forgiven
and
for
a bar
expecting
tab,
some frostiness.
and to be forgiven for
But the
expecting
vibe in the
some
room
frostiness.
didn't feel like
But the vibe in the
competitors
room
in a crowded
didn't feel
field
like
fighting for
competitors in a
supremacy.
crowded field
It felt
fighting
like a
for
room of
supremacy.
colleagues.
It
People
felt like a
happy
room of
just to
colleagues.
not be at work,
People
just
happy
to get
just
a
to
chance to
not
hang
be at
out
work,
and let their
just
hair
to get a
down.
chance to hang out.
Friday's
and let their hair
ceremony
down.
was particularly moving
Friday's
because it
ceremony
honoured the
was
late
particularly
Ashley
moving
Cooper,
because it honoured
with a
the
new
late
award
Ashley
established
Cooper,
in his name
with
for
a new
civil
award
apprentice or
established in
trainee
his
of the
name
year.
for civil apprentice
On
or
the night,
trainee
I
of the
heard
year.
one story
On the
remembering
night,
Ashley
I heard
that I
one
loved.
story remembering Ashley that
Back
I
in his
loved.
university days at at Swinburne.
Back at his university
days at
noticed his
Swinburne.
grade slipping.
The university noticed his grade
with minimum
slipping.
grades to
And he was on a
maintain.
scholarship with
They
minimum
brought him
grades
in-
to maintain.
brought him in for it, please
They brought him
explain.
brought him
So
in
in
for
he
it, please
shuffles tail
explain.
between his legs.
So in he shuffles
Where had he
tail
been, they
between his
asked?
legs.
Uganda.
Where had he been, they asked?
Doing what, they asked?
Uganda.
Building an orphanage.
Doing what, they asked? There aren't
Building
many
an
people who
orphanage.
can walk into
There
a
aren't
meeting
many people
about
who can walk
losing
into
your
a
scholarship
meeting
and
about
walk out with a
losing your
second,
scholarship
even
and
bigger
walk out with a
scholarship.
second, even
But that's
bigger
exactly what Ash
scholarship.
did.
But that's exactly what Ash did. It was beautiful to hear the way that Ash and his wife Tash together made such a massive contribution. Together made such a massive contribution. And personally to so many lives. And personally to so many lives. I heard about a man who had backed his abilities. I heard about a man who had backed his abilities. Problem solving. Project management. Building something problem from nothing. Building something to genuinely change the world. And use them to genuinely change the world. So I'm really excited to see what the inaugural winner of the Ashley Cooper Civil Apprentice or Trainee of the Year, Civil Apprentice or Trainee of the Year, a lovely woman, Lynette Richards, backs herself to deliver. No doubt she will do the honour proud. No doubt the awards themselves showcased extraordinary achievement. The awards themselves showcased Hazel Brothers, a family-owned Tasmanian Hazel Brothers, a family-owned Tasmanian company of over 5 awards. Their projects from the Blackman River Superstructure replacement to the Devonport East Key Link works. To the Devonport East demonstrate the local companies can demonstrate the local companies can deliver world-class infrastructure hundreds of while employing hundreds. Tasmania's $786 million has been shortlisted for the 2025 Australian Construction Achievement Award. This is the biggest transport infrastructure project in our state history. And it's been delivered by Tasmanian workers. And it's been delivered by Tasmanian workers for Tasmanian communities. What struck me most at Friday's celebration wasn't just the scale of these projects. This industry doesn't just pour concrete and lay asphalt. It enables our businesses to compete globally. And build the platforms on which Tasmania's entire economy stands. As we consider Tasmania's future, the message from Friday night is clear. The message from Friday night is clear. Civil construction is more than $2 billion a year. Or the over 2,000 people it employs directly. Civil construction is shaping what the next 30 years of Tasmania will look like. I want to thank the Civil Contractors Federation for the invitation and congratulate all nominees and congratulate all nominees and witnessing the skill, dedication and quiet. I'm genuinely heartened to know Tasmania's future infrastructure is in such capable hands. These are the Tasmanians who, without fanfare or recognition, are quite literally building our state's future. They deserve our respect. Our investment, and at least once a year, our investment, and at least once a year, our applause.
Senator Sharma.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Thank you, Acting Deputy President. The Australian public and the Australian Parliament heard alarming news about the hostile acts of the hostile power directed against Australia, foreign power and Australian national interests. And in comments by the Director General of Security, he made clear that ASIO's formal assessment is that the Iranian government directed and quite possibly more, quite likely more, on Jewish interests in Australia. This has included the attack on the Continental Kitchen in the Continental Kitchen that I know very well in Bondi, and also the Adas Synagogue in Melbourne. Overstate the severity and the gravity of what has been unfolding here in Australia over these last several months. I cannot overstate the severity and gravity of a foreign nation acting like this on Australian soil. We have all been alarmed in Australia. We have all been alarmed about the deterioration in social cohesion and social harmony. We have all been alarmed in Australia about the rise in anti-Semitism. We have all been alarmed in Australia about increasing hostility turning into increasing hostility directed against a particular group of Australians. To now learn that a foreign power was orchestrating those, directing those, supporting those, directing those, doing all it could to fan the flames of social discord in Australia is a shocking discovery. I wanted to commend the work of our security officials, the work of our security officials, ASIO and others for their painstaking investigation to uncover this, and I do want to uncover this, commend the government for the firm steps they have taken, at least in the response to this. Initially, it is right and proper. Initially, it is right and proper be the Iranian ambassador declared persona non grata from Australia, declared persona non grata. It is right and proper that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, state arm of the Iranian regime and state, added to our sanctions list and designated, and it is only prudent and designated, and it is Australian officials stationed in Tehran, Australian officials stationed in Tehran are evacuated for their own safety, are evacuated. But let's be very clear about the sort of government we are dealing with in Iran. Not regime more properly in Iran. Repress their own citizens at home. Do they repress their own citizens at home? Minorities. Not only do they persecute. Not only do they execute gay people. Not only do they execute gay people. Not only do they civil society to the point of extinction. Society. This is also a regime in the country that has destabilised the world, that has been responsible to destabilise the world, that has been responsible for across its region, and now we find across its region, and now we find as far away as Australia. Country, a regime and ideology. Country that a regime and ideology created, funded and supported terrorist organisation that has basically rendered Lebanon in a state of chaos for the past 2 decades. This is the same country that funded, supported, armed and trained country that the Houthis in Yemen, again having rendered now Yemen ungovernable state, threatening commercial shipping, ungovernable state all across the Red Sea. It is the same across the Red Sea. The same country rather that funded, and egged on Hamas, including Hamas's terrorist attacks on the 7th of October 2023, which have done such awful damage to the Middle East, which have unleashed unbelievable chaos, and unbelievable suffering, including on the Palestinian people of Gaza, including on the Palestinian people of Gaza in all of this. And now we learn that Iran's tentacles have spread even as far as Australia. We have maintained diplomatic relations with Iran for several decades. No, we have not agreed on any number of things. No, we have not agreed on any number of things, but I thought we were at least Vienna Convention on diplomatic relations and other underpinnings. To learn that Iran has perpetrated hostile acts on Australian soil, directed against the Australian community is shocking indeed. Now, I would say that I commend the government for the strong steps it has taken, but I think more needs to be taken. But I do believe the government should be orchestrating condemnation and making sure that the rest of the world knows, and making sure that the rest of the world knows. Because if they're doing it in Australia, you can bet they're trying to do it, or perhaps you can bet they're trying to do it, or perhaps are already doing it in the United States and countries like New Zealand, countries like New Zealand, all across Western Europe, and Australia needs to make sure that this terrible regime is held to account for their aggression against our nation.
Senator Roberts.
The New Zealand Royal Commission of Inquiry into COVID-19 invited several former ministers in New Zealand responsible for their damaging, inhuman and fatal COVID response. These were Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister. Jacinda Ardern, former Health and COVID-19 Response Minister. Former Health and COVID-19 Response Minister. Grant Robertson, current Finance Minister. Grant Robertson, former Finance Minister. Aisha Verrill, former Health Minister. All four refused to provide the Hollywood version of their actions in writing. Jacinda Ardern went so far as to call the Royal Commission. One Nation calls it accountability. One Nation refused to be held to account for their actions. Is a signed confession Australia and New Zealand reacted to COVID with measures designed to force mass vaccinations, designed to force mass vaccination to pharmaceutical companies. A huge financial benefit. This money flowed through to shareholders, who are the world's predatory billionaires. It's terrifying that this entire thing, from development of the COVID virus to the development of the COVID virus, the vaccine to the COVID measures, was one giant fundraiser for the world. Is the truth. Yet that is the truth. We know COVID itself is a man-made virus. With funding from the United States NIH, that's the administered through Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Administered through Peter Daszak's. The research was conducted first in the USA. And then moved to the Wuhan Institute of Virology from 2014, where it escaped in a lab leak in September 2019. Documents released through the FBI and others approved. This is why the amazing United States Secretary of National Intelligence announced the opening of a criminal investigation into Anthony Fauci and his cronies. I wonder if Mrs. Ardern considers Wheels of justice turn slowly, though they do turn. Ms. Ardern can stare down the Royal Commission now. Ms. Ardern can stare down the Royal Commission now. Yet it's important to note that in its 2020 press release, Australia's own CSIRO confirmed it was involved in this gain of function research. Last February, a new paper was published through CSIRO Publishing. Impacts of long COVID on disability function and quality of life for adults living in Australia. With long COVID reported worse disability than 98% of the general Australian population, almost 100%. The general Australian population, almost 100%. A total of 86% of those with long COVID. A total of 86% of those with long COVID met compared with 9% of Australians compared with 9% of complex areas overall. Housework and socialising were badly impacted. And socialising people badly impacted. Basic needs. People could often contribute to their homes, workplaces and quality of life is badly affected. Quality of life and social life for the most impacted. Energy levels and social life for the most impacted. Fatigue and brain fog affect activities, relationships and community. It's without a hint of irony that the CSIRO published a study showing the health they helped create from the virus their support for gain of function research. Through their support for gain of function research, all the evidence we have at the moment suggests long COVID can come from the vaccine, the injections, the shots, from the vaccine, some batches more than others. This is because for the first year the COVID shots were not made using good manufacturing process. So batch almost immediately the virus appeared. Almost immediately the COVID was the product of gain of function research. We knew that COVID was the product of gain of function virologist Luc Montagnier. Nobel Prize-winning virologist COVID in April of 2020 and found unmistakable including the inclusion of a large segment of the HIV virus. And Luc should know. He won his Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus. He won his Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus. Spliced in to confuse the human body's immune system into producing the wrong immune system into producing the wrong immune response more deadly, to make the virus more deadly. And then for good measure, they sliced in most of the HIV virus to make the virus Let me be clear. More contagious. Those who died from COVID died from a man-made virus. Those who died from COVID died from a man-made virus. Research to be more deadly and more contagious than the original SARS virus, which was the starting point for the development of COVID. Which was the starting point for the development of COVID. Then the virus was sold to the public. Then the virus was unfortunate outcome of human interaction with pangolin animals in a wet market in Wuhan, China. In a wet market in Wuhan, that so many believe that fanciful story. That so many believe that fanciful story, resulting in a medical tragedy that continues to unfold in a new peer-reviewed, continues to unfold in a new peer-reviewed. Here are the latest published articles. Here are the latest Chen et al. mRNA injections cross the placenta and reach mRNA injections mRNA 1273 crosses within 1 hour. 1273 crosses within 1 hour. Organs translates into spike protein and fetal organs translates into spike protein and persists after CDC FDA safety signal threshold. CDC FDA safety signal threshold events following jabs in pregnant women, including miscarriage, stillbirth and fetal arrest, including miscarriage, stillbirth and fetal arrest. mRNA shots destroy 60% of a woman's egg supply, 60% of a woman's egg supply, known as primordial follicles. On a sample set of 1.3 million women, 1.3 million women found 33% fewer successful pregnancies in women who had the shot. On a sample of 493,000 people, almost half a million, found a 23% increase in autoimmune disease post-shot. Found a 23% increase in autoimmune disease. And did anyone hear about this study conducted from the United States Centers for Disease Control epidemiologist published in the Pediatric Infectious Disease Journal and Oxford University Press? Peer-reviewed publication. Oxford University Press. Among children aged 6 months to 4 years, among children aged 6 months to 4 years, those who received the Pfizer BioNTech mRNA shots were 159% more likely to get infected, and 257% more likely to develop symptomatic COVID-19 compared to unvaccinated COVID-19 without unvaccinated children. This study from the US Department's own CDC from the US shows that a COVID shot in young people has negative COVID shot in young people has negative children more likely to get COVID, children more likely they experience worse symptoms. And when they do, they that study has resulted in the FDA, and now Australia's FDA, and now Australia's announcing the end of COVID vaccination for children. Announcing the end of COVID vaccination for children. After they told us it was essential. Add that to the mental health damage, development delays, and academic damage, development delays, and academic damage lockdown and the picture children during COVID. This is criminal. This is inhuman. This is criminal. This is inhuman. Keith Media's recent hidden camera video. Johnson & Johnson's hidden camera video. Johnson & Johnson's lead scientist admitted the typical clinical process was abandoned for the COVID-19 vaccine. J&J knowingly bypassed standard testing protocols under pressure from the Biden government. Under pressure from the Biden government. This was just, Joshua said, let's test it on some lab animals and just throw it into the wind and see what happens. He acknowledges that the public was not informed about the shortcuts. That the public was not informed about the shortcuts. Not acknowledged. Did the TGA know that there was no proper safety testing on the J&J product before it was given approval in Australia? Before it was given approval in Australia. Public officials claimed the vaccines were safe and effective. Reece pushed back. Safe and effective. There's no proof. None of that stuff was safe and effective. There's no proof. End of quote. None of that stuff was safe and effective. Adding that the industry relies on a benefit to risk trade-off. The industry relies on a benefit to risk trade-off. What this means is that the product is justified. What this means if it helps more people than it harms. Justified if it helps more people than it harms. Harm is tolerated. In that scenario, if the pharmaceutical company has their thumb on the scale, and benefit more, harm than the faulty product benefit more than the faulty product. That's exactly what happened with the COVID products. That's exactly what happened with the COVID products, remdesivir, and 20 other products like remdesivir. Now the latest instalment of Frankenstein science. Now the latest instalment of Frankenstein science. Listen to this. Self-amplifying RNA vaccines are being tested. Self-amplifying RNA vaccines are being tested. These are shots which replicate the human body. These are shots which replicate the human body inside the human body after injection. Turning our bodies into genetic material. Turning our bodies into genetic material production units. Shedding on those around us. Consent to vaccination taken to a whole new level. Consent to vaccination taken to a whole new level. Peer-reviewed Journal of Clinical Medicine found that COVID-19 replicon found that COVID-19 replicon caused severe RNA abnormalities in 93% of trial participants. Symptoms include increased risk of internal bleeding and suppressed immune cells, which raises infection risk, which raises renowned American cardiologist Dr. Peter McCullough last week commented on vaccinologists have made a critical error in the design of genetic vaccines. Injection of the genetic vaccines for any foreign protein, including parts of viruses, for any foreign protein, including parts of viruses, respond with an immune attack against its own cells. With an immune attack against its own vaccine injury syndrome, intense vaccine injury syndromes. All through the human body. Giving the vaccines their own life. He says, giving the vaccines their own life is inhumane, reckless, and from the outset should be flagged as dangerous and potentially lethal to the recipient. COVID vaccines were released without proper testing and caused 1,200 deaths. In testing alone in Pfizer alone. In testing alone in Pfizer alone. Killed tens of thousands of Australians. Pushing COVID shots killed tens of thousands of Australians. If saRNA shots are pushed, it will be genocide. Shots are pushed, it will be genocide. Those responsible for COVID have not been held to account. Those responsible for COVID have not been held to account. Every person and every animal every person and every animal into a genetic material production. I've now given 7 of these COVID updates. I've now given 7 of these 70 minutes of proof, 70 minutes scientific proof, medical proof that we must investigate this criminal enterprise. That we must investigate this criminal enterprise. This next generation of Franklin.
The police decided, though, quickly, much too quickly, if you ask me, that Eden committed suicide. But the Westbrooks and I and many others are convinced that Eden did not take her own life. Eden's mum and dad, Jason and Amanda Westbrook, Eden's mum and dad, Jason and Amanda Westbrook, have fought for over 10 years to get to the truth. There are just too many facts that Eden's sister saw her body before the cremation. Eden saw her body on her face and neck, and her teeth were bruises on her face and neck, and her teeth were absolutely shattered. The Westbrooks have repeatedly asked the Tasmanian coroner to release They also want an inquest and they want an independent coroner. They also want an inquest and they want an independent fresh evidence. Unfortunately, for the fresh evidence have been frustrated by the refusal of the Tasmanian's chief magistrate to release the damn photo. Thanks to the Tasmanian Attorney General Guy Barnett, the Tasmanian Attorney General Guy Barnett, on the 19th of August, the first day of Parliament, on the 19th of August, tabled a revised bill to compel the provision of the autopsy photos to the Westbrooks, of the autopsy photos to the Westbrooks. Those autopsy photos are key to unlocking this case. Those autopsy photos are key to unlocking this case. What do Eden's autopsy photos show? What do Eden's autopsy photos show? A fractured cricoid cartilage in the lower neck, inconsistent with hanging. Damaged teeth, inconsistent with hanging. Bruising to the neck or face, inconsistent. Bruising to the neck or face, inconsistent with a blunt form of trauma. With ligature marks on the wrist, or any other undocumented injuries or signs of sexual assault. What was signs of sexual assault? Why was the autopsy not undertaken by qualified in a NASA-accredited mortuary? In a NASA-accredited standards that met national pathology standards. Why were samples like material from beneath her fingernails taken for DNA testing? taken for DNA testing? Underneath a food phenols taken for DNA testing? Underneath a food phenols taken for DNA testing? The West Collins are restricted independent forensic pathologist to review the available forensic pathologist to review the available forensics issues like the manner and cause and consider issues like the manner and cause of death and Dr. Collins produced a preliminary report in March 2025, and now there is an independent expert evidence of a possible homicide. A copy of the report was provided to the Chief Magistrate in April this year. The West Brooks believe Eden died on the 18th of February, not the 17th of February, 2015, because in the days after Eden's death, the trusted police officer told the West Brooks police officer told the West Brooks Eden at the skate park at 2 a.m. on the 18th of February 2015. On the 18th of February 2015, his viewing of the relevant footage is confirmed under the ITI. And that officer unfortunately noted Facebook posts by a person of interest, including recent ones, which have not been investigated. Which have not been investigated. Importantly, Dr. Collins' written report found that there was no determining the time of death. To assist the evidence provided by police and affidavits, the evidence provided by police and affidavits concerning body temperature and rigor mortis was a little or no supported value. Dr. Collins and myself for the release of the autopsy photos has been refused, essentially on the basis that there was no legal proceeding on foot, that there was no legal proceeding on foot, and it was not appropriate for any third party autopsy photos. It seems that early requests of Tasmania's Coroner's Office did not include disclosure of the autopsy photos. Did not include disclosure of the autopsy photos. Is there any on the coronial file? So does this mean that those photos were never even considered by the coroner? Good question for her to answer tomorrow. And the content of the autopsy photos and the final expert opinion from Dr. Collins' absolutely critical to reopening of the investigation. The Chief Magistrate recently responded to another request for the photos on the 14th of April 2025 after she had been provided with Dr. Collins' report, saying that she was considering the issues and would respond, she was considering the issues and would respond, and I quote, in due course. Well, 4 months later, still no respect for the family. Still no respect for the family. And I still haven't had a response from you or anyone else. And Dr. Collins' report is out in April 2025. By the way, there are 6 million people following this podcast. By the way, there are 6 million people following this podcast. Evidence of possible blunt Collins found evidence of possible and a second injury to the voice box or lower neck, inconsistent with hanging or lower neck, inconsistent with hanging, have rung alarm bells. The type that should have rung alarm bells. Contrary to the Chief Magistrate's comment, there was no sign of any trauma to Eden. That there was no sign of any trauma to Eden to not reopen the matter. Several years ago to not reopen the matter. He was considerably, and I quote, he was considerably, and I quote, ill at ease, concerning the adequacy and the completeness of the police investigation, and the completeness of the police investigation. The pathologist who undertook the autopsy didn't even check to see whether Eden had been sexually assaulted. I mean seriously. Whether Eden had been sexually assaulted. I mean seriously. That the completion of the autopsy that the completion of the autopsy should have been appropriate cause of death should have been. Dr. Collins is frustrated and disappointed like we are, and in his 50 years as a practising forensic pathologist, he is unable to remember such a denial. Two additional crime scene photos have recently been discovered after the coroner's office forwarded a complete set to a road expert in Canada who is assisting the family. One item, a hairband, could have been useful. One item, a hairband, could have been useful that night. Why wasn't it seized as an exhibit? Why wasn't it seized as an exhibit? Not seized as an exhibit, not seized as an exhibit. More pain the West most have endured. Struggle to understand how the most. They struggle to understand how can be so hostile. Coronial system can be so hostile in their families. As if their grief wasn't enough. They and their family intimidation and harassment, gaslighting and intimidation and harassment in days and months following Eden's death. Particularly in days and months following Eden's death. Amanda and Jason's resilience and determination is remarkable. They shouldn't have to go through this. They need answers. I want answers and so do the people of Tasmania. They need answers. I want answers and so do the people of Tasmania. Suicide. Eden's death within hours. Minimal forensics within hours. Undertaken. Minimal the evidence available under the RTO and on the evidence available under the RTO was been collecting. 10 fingerprints exhibit was a set of 10 fingerprints. Police did not seize. They did her fingerprints, but they couldn't do under her nails. They did her fingerprints, but they couldn't do under her nails. Go mobile phone. Police did not seize Eden's mobile phone to ascertain her movements that night. They didn't check her social media movements that night. They didn't check her social media witnesses. They didn't even check critical witnesses. They didn't even check past records of grooming. by persons in authority to young women, and similar events in St Helens area involving violence. What inquiries were conducted given allegations of paedophilia activity and other inappropriate behaviour by police in St Helens around that time? I certainly hit a nerve with the Commissioner of Police in Tasmania when I raised this issue in Parliament last time. Upon recent inquiries with her, I was advised that one officer of interest was still the subject of an ongoing professional standards investigation. I was very worried about the involvement of Senior Sergeant Paul Reynolds as a coroner's associate in the investigation of Eden's death. The coroner, in delivering her three-page finding, without inquest, stated in 2016 that the late disregarded pedophile Senior Sergeant Reynolds had provided regular oversight and direction to the investigation. Section 13.1 of the Tasmanian Coroners Act 1995 of the Tasmanian Coroners Act 1995 states that a coroner may delegate all powers associated of a coroner other than the power of a coroner other than the power prescribed by the regulations. What powers, if any, were delegated? What powers, if any, were delegated by the Sergeant Reynolds in Eden's case and in other cases? And in other cases, and in other cases, and in other cases, Senior Sergeant Reynolds may have been exercising significant powers on behalf of the coroner. We can only hope that Reynolds had no role in drafting the findings in Eden's case, which failed to list forensic science and autopsy evidence, taking into account and determining suicide, taking into account and outlining suicide, and which failed to outline the reasons for occurring on the 17th rather than the 18th of February. Occurring on the 17th rather than the 18th of February. The Commission by Tasmanian Police failed to examine Reynolds' in Eden's case despite comprehensive written and oral submissions from the respondent and their then lawyer. In fact, the Wise report failed to even mention Eden's case. It failed to even mention Eden's case. It failed on a findings also state that there was no available evidence as to the origin of the rope, as to the contradicting origin of the rope. Investigative findings, which were never followed up or confirmed, which were never followed up or confirmed. Across the road, I mean, how lazy are you? You didn't consider the nature and configuration of the rope. You didn't consider the nature and configuration of the rope, and what that lazy about its investigation documents indicate the rope was never seized. Documents indicate the coroner's office advised in writing the coroner's office advised to have been destroyed as a result of the 2016 disposal order under the Act. Which account is accurate? Which one? Which account is accurate? Which one? Supposed to mount a case for reopening? Supposed to mount a case for reopening with critical information. There are wide-ranging and possible systemic issues involved and possible systemic issues, and there is concerning lack of NATA accreditation by Tasmanian Police Forensic Services, by Tasmanian Police Forensic Services, and Montreal crime scene investigation within the hospital and forensic medicine environment within the hospital and forensic Tasmania is well behind. Tasmania is well behind when it comes to adopting and following accepted best practice and following accepted best Police Manual is as bad as pathetic. The Tasmanian Police Manual is as bad as pathetic as a wide standards providing information when it comes to wide standards criminal investigation police powers. That's probably where you need to start where you've gone wrong. That's probably where you need to start where you've gone wrong. Without any doubt needs to be established. Effective immediately to address systemic issues. Effective immediately in this case to ensure ethical and best practice investigation. In this case to ensure ethical and best practice investigation and forensic science by coroners and the development of much-needed trust and confidence in the Tasmanian much-needed trust and confidence in Tasmanian police system down there. I will have lots more to say over the next week. I will have lots more to say over the next week.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Take note of the shocking revelations today. Take note of the shocking revelations today of the Iranian regime, terrorist acts in Australia, terrorist acts. The firebombing of the Adass Israel synagogue. First, I'd like to acknowledge the contribution that my dear friend Cinder Sharma made and his advocacy in relation to matters involving the Iranian regime, matters involving the Iranian regime of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a prohibited terrorist organisation over quite a period of time. My thoughts are with Australia's Jewish community at this point. Australia's Jewish community. My thoughts are also wonderful members of the Iranian diaspora, of many Iranian came to Australia on humanitarian visas, or are still going through processes, refugee, to have their status resolved, refugee, who have been so courageous, in standing up publicly against the human rights abuses regime of the Iranian regime. On a number of occasions in this place, following representations from Iranian community, Iranian community. I've made statements calling the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to be listed as a prohibited terrorist organisation. I did it on 27 March 2024. I did it on 27 March 2024. 1 July 2024. I did it on 1 July 2024. 8 October 2024. I did it on 8 October 2024. 9 October 2024. 9 October 2024. I did it on 21 November 2024. 21 November 2024. Conference room in Parliament. Conference room where I met Parliament. Representatives of the opposition. Representatives of the opposition in this place. The Iranian regime. Now, acting deputy president. Now, acting deputy president on 21 November 2024. When I again put on the record. When I again put on the record at the human rights abuses, atrocities, the human rights are being committed in Iran. And I called for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to be listed as a prohibited terrorist organisation. To be listed as a prohibited terrorist organisation. That it is. For the simple fact that it is a terrorist organisation. I received a letter. I want to quote from that letter today. 4 December 2024. 4 December 2024. Senator the Honourable Paul Scar. And the writer of this letter. And the writer of this letter, the parliamentary session I attended on 21 November 2024, and quote, among other things, there are also some accusations against Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a recognised sovereign armed force. As a recognised sovereign armed force. IRGC does have a brilliant record in safeguarding the Islamic Republic of Iran's territorial integrity. The writer of this letter, who happened to be the ambassador, who was today declared persona non grata, and expelled as he should have been expelled months before. As he should have been expelled months before. When he made egregious anti-Semitic slurs on social media. The Islamic Republic of Iran's ambassador said this. I would be more than glad to meet you. I would be more than glad to meet you informative discussion fair and balanced different subjects of your interest on different subjects of your Republic of Iran, on the Islamic Republic of Iran, friendly and our bilateral relations, friendly with the Commonwealth of Australia, with the Commonwealth of Australia. Ahmed, sincerely yours, Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. 2 days later. 2 days later, after the Iranian ambassador wrote me that letter, Israel synagogue, the Adass Israel synagogue, with the direct involvement of the embassy of Iran. What a disgrace! What an absolute disgrace! What an absolute disgrace! And it is fit and proper that he be declared a person and be expelled from our country. And he be expelled from our country. On 19 August 2025, I was delighted to attend Multicultural Career and Job Expo multicultural career which I consider to be one of the most successful in the whole of Australia. And I take this opportunity to commend the Mayor, John Raven, and his whole team in relation to the great job they do. Multicultural Career and Job Expo was held by Multicultural Mailer Inc., which is a wonderful organisation. And this was the fourth time in which this event had been held. There were more than 1,400 job seekers. There were more than 1,400 job seekers from a whole raft of multicultural communities. From a whole raft of 60 potential employers. More than 60 potential employers actually in attendance at the jobs fair. And I have no doubt that the many obtained jobs, many through this wonderful multicultural jobs fair. I'd like to place on the record my heartfelt thanks to the Executive Committee, thanks, Dr. to the Executive Committee, Amen, Dr. Travis Windsor, Peter Hodges, Paul Bailey, Simon Nichols, Peter Hodges, Paul Bailey, Simon Nichols, thank you so much for everything that you did. Thank you so much for everything that you did. I'd also like to congratulate the Expo team, who was the Expo coordinator, who was the outstanding leadership and commitment was central. Also, Nazreen Expo, Narudin, also Stephen Gangyu, Narudin, Stephen Gangyu, Narel Gitias, Amber Anjum, Sajid Hossan Neem, and Samira Hossan Neem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You did. Thank you so much for everything that you did. An amazing event, and it just shows positive things that happen. It just shows the grassroots multicultural communities are empowered. multicultural communities are empowered. So thank you very much for everything you do. So thank you very much for everything you do. On 12 July 2025, acting Deputy President, I was delighted acting Deputy President, I was delighted St Michael to attend the St Mary and St Michael Eritrean Orthodox Church annual for a very successful ninth grand opening of the renovated church and grand opening of the renovated church. And this is a congregation that has grown. And this is a congregation that has grown 60 to originally 60 to this congregation of the St Mary and St Michael Eritrean Orthodox at a great rate, has been growing, and it was a wonderful event. It was a wonderful event. It was, and we were blessed with the presence of His Grace, and we were blessed with the presence of His Grace. We were also Bishop Shinoda. Blessed. We were also the presence of the senior faith leaders, the senior reverends, the senior faith leaders, the senior reverends. Of the church, Reverend Reverend Paul Basaya, and I just want to thank all the members of the building. I just want to thank all the members of the building committee. An amazing job raising the church. Nearly $500,000 nearly $500,000 to build this church. Nearly $500,000 to build this youth centre, to renovate the church, and the youth centre, to renovate the church, which is doing really important work in the community. So I want to place their names on the record. So I want to place their names on the record. And Dr. Mikal, Mr. Kibreb Abraham, Mr. Kibreb Abraham, and Dr. Michael Walday, and thank you so much for everything that you do for the Eritrean community. Our Eritrean community, our Eritrean community is a great blessing for our beautiful country. On 19 July 2025, I was delighted to attend the opening of the Miskay opening Tigrayan Orthodox in Ipswich Church. Now, we have a wonderful Tigrayan community. We have a wonderful Tigrayan community. Many members of that community have been through a great ordeal, and the church is so important. And the church is so important, and they obtain their well-being, spiritual support, and sustenance, spiritual from the church. And I heard stories from the church, and I heard stories of how important the church is to their lives, of how important the church is to their lives. And at the church opening, and I should say first, Salam Mariam. Thank you to Father Salam and his congregation for inviting me to the event. His congregation for inviting me to the church. We had His Grace Archbishop of the Church. We had His Grace Archbishop Tewahedo Church, the Grain Archbishop Tewahedo Diocese of Europe, Archbishop of the Archdiocese. We also had Archbishop Shinoda. We also had Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church, and a number of other special church. And there are a number of people who were recognised. And there are a number of people who were recognised in the Tigrayan Church. And I want to place the Tigrayan Church names on the record here this evening. Names on the record here this evening. And Deacon Tespa Michael Desta, Deacon Tespa Desta, and Deacon Tespalam recognised, and they were all recognised certain titles, and they were all recognition of the wonderful contribution they've made to the wonderful contribution. And I would like to again place on the record, and I would like to again place on the record what a blessing is to my home state. Community is to my home state.
Senator Scarr, Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much.
Senator Scarr, Senator Hanson.
We are locked in and all or nothing fight for Australia's
On one side are the Australians who built this country. On one side are the Australians who built this country. The people from the bush, the battlers, the people who contributed to this country, the people who contributed to this country, and their blood, with their hard work and their blood, the diggers who fought to defend the rights and principles on which this nation was founded, now left disenfranchised, as their country has changed for the worse right in front of their eyes. On the other side are the rabbit. On the other side are the rabbit, Marxists, far left, the communists, the Marxists, the socialists, the communists, the toxic Labor Party, and the toxic Labor Party, and the hypocrites who bring hordes of people here, the hypocrites who bring hordes of people here in the middle of an unprecedented housing and rental crisis. Who flood Australia with people who mean us deliberate harm, who despise our values, who laugh at our complacency, who laugh at advantage of our leaders, and who take advantage of our leaders. Today it's been revealed the hideous Iranian regime actively organised Australian territory against Australian people. What is absolutely certain in this space is that Iran is that had fertile ground to plant and grow its hatred This is because current immigration policy allows people to come here and to commit these
Labor
crimes.
has given 3,000 people from Gaza permission to come here.
Potential agents.
That's 3,000 potential agents for the Iranian Revolutionary
We should immediately
Guard.
and permanently ban immigration from any country prevails.
Where this hatred
We cannot afford to take any risk.
We cannot afford
with the
to
safety
take
of
any
the Australian
risks
community.
with the safety
of the Australian community. Immigration has gotten so out of control that many Australians no longer recognise
This isn't just about housing or jobs.
This isn't just
This
about
mass
housing
migration
or jobs.
is tearing at the fabric
This mass
of who
migration
we
is
are.
tearing at the fabric of who
When
we
I
are.
see our flag flying, I see the
When I
sacrifice
see our
of
flag
those who
flying,
built
I
and
see the
defended our
sacrifice of
nation.
those who built and defended our nation.
It should unite us all.
But Labor's
should
agenda
unite us
is
all.
to divide us.
But Labor's agenda
to
is to
destroy
divide
our
us.
culture, to
Our
destroy
identity,
our culture,
our
and
identity,
our love for our country.
our love for our
If we
country.
lose that unity,
we
lose that
Australia
unity
itself.
we lose Australia itself.
This is the true cost of mass
immigration,
of
the slow destruction of our nationhood.
Labor told us they were going to bring the numbers down.
Labor told us they were going to
lied.
bring the numbers down.
They lied.
They brought about 1.5 million people here since they were elected. Today, Labor is bringing 544 people. That's more than 560,000.
That's more than 560,000 a year.
Where are they supposed to live?
Where are
Where are struggling Australians supposed to live?
Where are struggling Australians
In the
supposed
past
to
3
live?
years, Labor has effectively
In the past
dumped
3 years,
1.5
Labor
million
has
people
effectively
into
dumped
our
1.5 million
market,
people
into
onto
our
our
housing
health
market
and education
onto our
systems,
health,
our
and
roads,
education systems,
our waters,
our roads,
even adding
our
12
waters,
million
even adding
tonnes
12
a year
million
to
tonnes
our emissions.
a year
To our emissions.
Australians are left in the cold while
Australians
Labor
are
just
left
waves
in the
more
cold
people
while
through the
Labor
gate.
just waves more
And make
people
no
through the
mistake,
gate.
this is no
And make
accident.
no mistake,
This is
it's
no
deliberate.
accident.
It's
intentional.
deliberate. It's
It
intentional.
isn't about a skill shortage.
It isn't about
or
a
education
skill
exports.
shortage or education
It's about
exports.
importing voters and keeping Labor.
It's about
in
importing
power.
voters and keeping Labor.
It's about
in
Labor
power.
remaking Australia.
It's
in
about Labor
Labor's
remaking
perverted
Australia
image.
in Labor's perverted
It's not the
image.
politicians and the bureaucrats
It's not the
paying the
politicians
price.
and the bureaucrats
It's
paying the
ordinary
price.
Aussies paying the price.
It's ordinary
higher rents,
Aussies paying the
lower
price.
wages,
Higher rents,
homelessness,
lower
poverty,
wages, homelessness,
and a unique
poverty,
culture
and a
envied around the
unique
world
culture
being chipped away,
envied around the
piece
world
by
being
piece.
chipped away piece by piece.
If you want to end,
If you want an end
to this
to
crime against Australia,
if you want an end to this
if you
crime
want
against
an
Australia,
end to out of
if you
control
want
my
an end
immigration,
to out of
then you
control
stand
my
with one
immigration,
nation,
then you
and
stand with one
me.
nation, and you stand with
If
me.
you want a safe and united Australia,
If you want a safe
one
and
people
united
under
Australia,
the Australian
one people
flag,
under the
you stand with
Australian
one
flag,
nation.
you stand with
We
one
must
nation.
make sure immigrating to
We
Australia
must make
is
sure
a privilege
immigrating
to be earned,
to Australia
not
is a
an
privilege to be
entitlement.
earned, not an entitlement.
Immigrants must have fluent English.
Immigrants must
and
have
definitely
fluent English,
no burqas.
and definitely no burqas.
We must enforce the law and deport
We
the
must enforce the
75,000
law
people
and
who
deport the
breached their
75,000
visas
people who
and the
breached
100,000
their visas
failed
and the
asylum
100,000
seekers
failed
who were told to go
asylum
home,
seekers
but
who were
haven't.
told to go home. No
But
excuses.
No endless
No
appeals,
excuses,
no loopholes,
no endless appeals.
We must cut
no
the
loopholes
numbers drastically.
We must cut the numbers.
One nation's
drastically.
policy is to cap immigration.
One nation's
to,
policy is to cap
immigration
approximately
to
about 130,000 per year.
approximately about
Numbers we can
130,000
actually
per year.
accommodate.
Numbers we can
And when
actually
we can,
accommodate.
then we can look at
And when we
increasing
can,
those numbers
then
over
we
a
can
period
look
of
at
time.
increasing those numbers over a period
We
of
have
time.
no problem with immigration.
That
We have no
serves
problem
the
with
national
immigration
interest.
that serves the
We
national
acknowledge
interest.
this is a country built on
We
immigration.
acknowledge
This is a
and
country
we
built on
acknowledge
immigration.
the immigrants who
and
have
we acknowledge
adopted
the immigrants
our values
who have
and
contributed
contributed
to our
our values and contributed
We must
to our
shut down the
country.
rorts and the backdoor
We
channels.
must shut down the
We
rorts
must put
and the
Australia
backdoor
back in
channels.
charge.
We must
of
put
who
Australia
comes
back in
here.
charge of who
We
comes
must
here.
withdraw from the UN
We
Refugee
must
Convention,
withdraw from the UN
reintroduce
Refugee
temporary
Convention,
protection visas,
reintroduce
and
temporary
refuse
protection
entry
visas,
from nations that
and
foster
refuse entry
extremist
from nations that
ideologies
foster
incompatible
extremist
with Australian
ideologies
life.
incompatible
It's basic
with Australian
common
life.
sense. It's fairer. It's basic common sense. And it's what most Australians want. Yet our politicians tend to forget about that. And I think they're living in their own world and don't really understand how Australians are struggling out there with the cost of living. High immigration is a cause for it. High immigration is a cause for it. And yet they are on about these renewables and to put carbon emissions. Why would you bring so many people into the country? Why would you bring so many people into the country if you worry about the carbon emissions and the Paris Agreement that you've signed? 1,500 people bringing over 1,500 people a day into the country. It doesn't make sense. As I said, a year, you're adding to it. Why would you bring such numbers? Why would you bring the housing and rental accommodation, services, rental accommodation, services, health, nursing homes, roads, infrastructure, everything. And yet you know the Australian people are fed up with it. They've had a gutful of it. Fed up with it. And yet you keep bringing it in. You have no regard for the Australian people. You have no regard for the Australian people. And to hear you go on about the housing issue in this Parliament and say you're going to put 1.2 million houses. What an absolute joke you are. What an absolute joke you are. I cannot believe an absolute joke. And you believe the rubbish that you're telling the Australian people. The rubbish that you're telling the Australian people. I cannot. You actually believe it. To listen to the Labor senators, to listen to and how they get up and espouse all this, and how they get up and espouse absolute ridiculous joke. It's just an absolute ridiculous joke. They've been stripped of their own identity. They've been stripped of their own identity. You know that they're ashamed, ridiculed by even their own councils. If you fly the Australian flag, if you fly the Australian flag, the Palestinian flag, it's all right to see the Palestinian flag out in these protest rallies, even Hamas flags, all these other terrorist flags, even Hamas flags, terrorist flags. People just feel, people just feel flying the Australian flag. On Sunday, flying the Australian flag. On Sunday, there is supposed to be this march for Australians out there. For those who want to go out there and have their same way to go out and have their same way at the Australian flag. I congratulate you because you're standing up for the values that you feel have been stripped for the values that you feel have been stripped from you. Whether it's this government, or previous governments, this government, former governments, previous governments, you just feel that you're not being listened to. You just feel that this country is not the country that I grew up in. This country is not the country that I grew up in. I'm ashamed of where we're headed. The escalating crime, the cost of living, the escalating crime, the cost of living, the decline in our moral values, all this transgender rubbish, all this what's going on with rubbish spaces, and what's going on with women spaces. It's just absolutely disgusting here. And so many of you supported here. Your principles and your values. Where are your morals and your principles and your values? I can't understand it. I can't understand it. We're supposed to represent the Australian people. That we're supposed to represent the decline that I see in my decline that I see in my and I feel sorry for those men and women that have fought and sacrificed their lives and give us fought and sacrificed their lives and give us a nation that we should be all so proud of. And give us a nation that we should be all so proud of. All I can do is keep fighting for the Australian people to the best I possibly can. Fighting for the Australian people to the best I bring awareness of raising these issues, bring awareness. And I stand by my fellow Australians with pride and dignity, with love for this country, and I will continue to fight for the Australian people to the best of my ability. To the best of my ability.
The Senate stands adjourned and we'll meet again tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Ladies and gentlemen, this video is being recorded in August of 2025. And right now we're in a fascinating time in the chess world. We've got the youngest ever reigning world champion, that's Gukesh. But we also have the country of India as a whole totally dominating chess in a way that we've really never seen before. And one of those players in particular is named Pragnananda Rameshbabu. And Pragg, after the game I'm going to show you in this video, is up to number 3 in the entire world. The world rankings are Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, and Pragg. Pragg is on a mission in 2025. He previously played in the Candidates Tournament. That tournament was won by Gukesh, but then went on to challenge for the World Championship and obviously win it. We could be looking at a future where Pragg and Gukesh play an All-India World Championship the way that this is going on. And in this video, Pragg beat Gukesh in a literal perfect game of chess. And the craziest thing about this game is, if I removed the name tags and showed you just a game where white is anonymous and black is Gukesh, you would think white is Magnus Carlsen or Stockfish or Magnus Carlsen using Stockfish. Like, this was an unbelievable game, and what this game shows is that as the world champion, you always have a target on your back or front or wherever. Like, they are out to get Gukesh, and he's gonna have quite a title reign. All right, he's really gonna be, you kind of went from being the hunter to the hunted. So, we're in Singfield Cup in St. Louis, in the United States. Pragg opens with the move d4. Gukesh plays knight to f6. We have a very normal opening. Nowadays, everybody is putting this pawn forward to support the center and open up the bishop so that you can play the Nimzo Indian defense, one of the most popular openings in chess. Doesn't particularly matter. White chooses e3. This is called the Rubinstein system, named after a keeper Rubinstein. Again, completely meaningless for you. Maybe at your level, there are still scholars made happening. Don't worry about it. Where this game gets interesting, for me, is right here, okay? So, Gukesh's bishop is under attack. Most people here, they just take the knight. And then oftentimes what you do is then you attack the center with c5. Gukesh plays in a very interesting way. He takes this pawn first, okay? And then Pragg takes back. And then instead of taking, the bishop, the knight with the bishop, he moves the bishop all the way back to e7. Now look at the time. Why has Gukesh spent 20 minutes in the open? What could he be thinking of? I mean, these are easy moves, right? So where did he spend his time? I think he spent his time, first of all, castled in this position, which I suppose that, this move confused him a little bit. Not that he doesn't know what to do, but he has to think about what Pragg has prepared for him. And maybe this is not a move that Pragg plays all that often. But what's interesting about this position is that the opening shifts. It does what's called a transposition. It's like taking two different roads but ending in the same destination. It's almost like they played a Queen's Gambit to straight up begin the game, and then white captured, and we got, knight c3, knight f6, e3, e6, bishop c4, bishop e7, something along these lines. With the move a3, castles, and then knight f3. This is kind of what we have. I know it looks ridiculous, but watch, I'm gonna click into the game. You see that? No, you didn't? It's the same thing. They took a different path, and now Gukesh plays this move c5, and then on the very next move he plays a6. So we have a Queen's Gambit accepted position. Now from this point forward, Gukesh makes a couple of inaccuracies, and Pragg literally plays a perfect game of chess. So in every chess game, you depart the opening stage, meaning the stuff that you know in advance, that you've memorized, or that you just know the ideas of. You don't really have to think. Look at Pragg's time, he hasn't thought at all. Pragg takes on c5, clearly still, in his preparation. And the best move for black here is to take this pawn. You don't want to take this queen, because then white will take with the rook and replace the control of this file. Clearly Gukesh, understands that, and he still makes this trade. He's totally happy to do that. He probably just thought that Pragg would move here, and then there would be no queen trade, and so he does this and this. Now, this is a very, very marginal advantage for white compared to the previous position. But Pragg just plays breathtaking chess. So first of all, he plays bishop to e2 after a few minutes of thought. To explain this move to anybody watching this video is difficult. This move is nonsensical for 99.99% of chess players. Like, what? We are taught when we develop our pieces,
we keep them there. It's not even threatened. And even if it's like, you go bishop here or in the corner, why would you go here? Well, after the opening, this bishop is clearly eating rocks. It's not doing anything useful. So you move the bishop to e2. And the idea of this move is to actually put it here, not by capturing your own knight, which is illegal. But by the way, that would be a really cool rule if it wasn't illegal. And then from this square, it would have a lot more scope. And this knight will transfer to the c4 square very often. So the knight will go there, and we see the position, right? It's got a lot of future access to certain squares because black puts so many pawns on light squares. Fun fact, if you have 5 out of 6 pawns on light squares, it means your light squares are rock solid, but your dark squares could be vulnerable. You see? Right? Okay, so bishop to e2, Gukesh plays knight c6, normal move. And now, you see how Gukesh didn't have time to retreat his bishop? Now we use it as a piñata. Otherwise, the position is almost symmetrical, right? It's like almost symmetrical. Now we go b4. So now the bishop has a difficult decision. Do we go back to a7 where we end up putting pressure on this diagonal? Or do we go back to e7 for a second time? Can you imagine you play bishop to b4, bishop to e7, bishop takes pawn on c5, and then bishop back to e7 again? Is that normal? That doesn't feel normal. Gukesh certainly doesn't think so, and he plays bishop to a7. Look at the time spent. 16 minutes, right? That's a big decision. And the funny thing is, it's the wrong decision. Previously, the position was 0.2, 0.3. That shows who has the advantage. It triples. It goes up about, 2.5x, right? It goes from 0.2, 0.3 to 0.5, 0.6, approximately. And the reason is this bishop is not going to be as useful as this bishop if this bishop repositions to the squares. Now, the move bishop b2. Again, the position is symmetrical. Both guys have traded D and C pawns. There are no queens on the board, okay? So you look at this, this is not the most fascinating stuff. There's no queens being sacrificed. There's no, crazy attacks. There's no ripping open of the king or whatever, pushing pawns. Like, this is not chess from the 1950s and Mikhail Tal is playing. This is modern day chess. Gukesh plays rook d8. Gukesh is a half a step behind Prague. If he got his bishop out and got his rooks in the game, you trade all the pieces, and at the end of the day, you're looking in the mirror. Okay, you have the exact same position, and it would be a draw. So how does Prague make progress here? That was not intentional. Pretty sure I've done that one before, but I can't remember. Anyway, I'm so funny. Oh my goodness, I'm hilarious. Okay, knight to e5. He makes progress like this. It's a great move. Knight e5 works for 2 reasons. Number 1, the knight needs to guard the rook, so it can't take. Number 2, you can't even take the rook first, because if you take the rook first, and then you take the knight, you're back rank checkmated. That's the problem of this bishop, the curse of the bishop on the c8 square.